A colossal, winged monstrosity crashes into a burning city, ready to slaughter the screaming civilians, until a hooded stranger steps into its path and erases the apocalypse from existence. The system confirms the nightmare, a level 4 Dark Angel, a catastrophe capable of wiping out an entire country. Mary orders her blonde colleague to evacuate the civilians and steps up to face the beast alone. A warning blares that backup is on the way, but as the monster looms over the flames, help is still miles away. Mary braces for death, but the monster's earth-shattering roar is violently cut short. The hooded stranger steps between her and the beast, his voice slicing through the chaos with a single command, "Get out of the way!" Before she can even process the words, the Dark Angel simply dissolves into thin air. The stranger's authority is absolute, his face hidden in cold shadow. Mary looks up in pure terror at the monster's glowing red eye, but the beast never gets the chance to strike. In a brutal flash of black feathers and violent force, the level 4 threat is utterly obliterated, leaving the two women staring in stunned silence. The stranger brushes the ash from his shoulder with effortless nonchalance, leaving the two awakeners frozen in shock. He turns to reveal striking red eyes and a faint, knowing smirk, murmuring that it has been a while since he saw a human. His gaze drifts upward before locking back onto them with a bizarre question. "What year is it?" Mary stammers a terrified question, but the stranger only demands the date again. When she whispers that it is October 2020, a dark smirk plays on his lips. He reveals he spent hundreds of years trapped in another realm, yet only a single year has passed in this world, his glowing red eye promising a sinister homecoming. The stranger realizes his miscalculation time moved much faster than he anticipated. Standing on the exact spot where he was cast into the Ryu demon realm, he reflects on an unimaginable ordeal that ended in his absolute victory. He has finally returned, and the earth shakes beneath his feet. A national intelligence agent watches from the rubble, his cold gaze analyzing the impossible situation. He deduces their unseen companions were lost to a different timeline, the air crackling with dark energy as he rises. With a dismissive glare, he hurls a figure backward through the air, commanding them to get out. Backup finally arrives as team leader Kim Jong-woo strides in, barking orders and apologizing for the delay. He immediately asks where the enemy is, expecting a massive fight. Mary stammers out an explanation about the level 4 Dark Angel, only to trail off in awkward silence. The monster is already gone. The stunned silence shatters when a hot-headed awakener storms forward, screaming insults at the hooded stranger. Mary panics, desperately grabbing Jung-woo and begging him to stop the fool. The aggressive awakener gets right in the stranger's face, only to be met with a deathly calm ultimatum. He has 3 seconds. The fool draws his blade, but Jung-woo snaps into full panic, screaming the truth. This stranger just one-shot a level 4 enemy. The aggressive awakener freezes as the reality crashes in, but it is already too late. Taehyung stands motionless, wreathed in living shadow, as the fool's mind spirals into raw survival instinct and he launches a desperate attack. The attacker hurtles forward with his ultimate technique, but Taehyung doesn't even flinch. With a single brutal motion, the awakener's face erupts in a spray of crimson and shattered bone, his body crumpling to the rubble exactly 3 seconds later. Taehyung coldly notes that his time is up, not even bothering to look at the corpse as the remaining team freezes in terror. The gate ruptures once more in a violent explosion, a mocking voice booming from within that their power won't be enough to stop him. A single, massive red eye snaps open in the shadows, pulsing with malevolent energy. Taehyung and Mary are thrown to the ground, completely overwhelmed as the world crumbles around them. A colossal red-skinned monster with a massive horn smashes through the rubble, sending shockwaves through the ruins. Jung-woo screams into his comms that a level 6 enemy codename Redhorn, capable of slaughtering 30 million people, has arrived, begging Central to summon every awakener in Korea. As the beast roars, Taehyung's dark energy stirs in cold response. The cataclysm escalates as the gate explodes open again, the monstrous Redhorn smashing through the remaining debris. Taehyung and Mary are thrown to the ground by the sheer force of the emerging apocalypse. But amidst the crumbling world, Taehyung's dark energy flares to life, a calculating presence standing against the beast. The blonde woman screams in desperation, begging Taehyung to help them against the apocalyptic threat. Taehyung doesn't even look at her, his tone utterly dismissive as he asks why he should care. His gaze hardens, demanding she give him at least one reason to save them while the colossal monster looms. Mary shouts at him to fight, but Taehyung stands motionless, declaring that those with power must make the hard exceptions in life. He doesn't move to defend them, but instead launches himself directly at the colossal beast. His fist drives forward with devastating force, obliterating the monstrous threat in a single, violent impact. With the monster dead, Tae-young turns his back on the devastation and asks a jarringly mundane question: where is the chief's office? The blonde woman collapses to her knees, stunned into silence by his sheer apathy. As he walks away, Mary scrambles after him, screaming in frustration at his complete disregard for the apocalypse they just survived. Nuri is on the phone, her face tight with stress as she spots something terrifying. Mary whirls on her, screaming that powerful people don't just run away, before Nuri is suddenly grabbed from behind. Mary shouts the command, and Nuri surges forward with a desperate burst of speed, throwing herself into the fray to protect the powerless. Nuri hurls herself into battle, her massive sword blazing with energy as she screams her ultimate technique. Tae-hyung watches from below, a quiet murmur of amusement escaping his lips as she brings the blade down in a vicious arc. The steel cleaves deep into the beast's skull, leaving her standing victorious atop the writhing monster. Nuri braces for the aftermath, but the colossal beast isn't dead yet. A sharp command echoes as Red Horn surges forward, its enormous jaws splitting open in a savage roar. Jungwoo and Mary stare in absolute horror, frozen by the sheer scale of the counterattack, with Nuri still perched directly on top of the thrashing nightmare. Battered but unfazed, Tae-hyung looks down at the stunned Nuri and murmurs that he likes her. He introduces himself, his form wreathed in shadow as demonic horns subtly emerge from his head. His voice turns cold and absolute as he delivers his true title: he is the Demon Lord, and he will be her master. Nuri whispers in disbelief, but her shock is swallowed by a deafening roar. The battered red horn bursts from the rubble with killing speed, its massive maw of teeth descending directly toward her. Tae-hyung stands unmoving in the chaos, watching as annihilation closes in on the girl he just claimed. Tae-hyung's eyes glow with cold fury, disgusted that a lowly being would dare open its mouth in his face. He moves faster than the monster's swing, his palm connecting with devastating force as he commands it to shut. The world erupts in a blinding explosion of crimson light, obliterating the colossal threat and leaving Tae-hyung completely unscathed. Standing over the ruined corpse, Tae-hyung sneers at the arrogant beast, asking if it can finally bow down. His hand ignites with dark energy, unleashing a cataclysmic blast straight through the monster's skull. The level 6 threat is utterly annihilated in a spray of gore, its dominance broken by absolute power. Tae-hyung stands amidst the ruin, a faint smirk touching his lips as he notes they are finally at eye level. With a casual fluid motion, he plucks the glowing crystalline core of his defeated enemy from the air. He catches the prize neatly in his palm, his absolute dominance on full display. Tae-hyung examines the massive magic stone, ignoring Jungwoo's stammering disbelief at its size. He rises, dangling the crystal casually as Nuri asks what is wrong. His gaze shifts to her, cold and commanding, as he gives a single order to follow him, leaving her frozen in shock at his absolute authority. Nuri stammers in confusion, but Tae-hyung's voice cuts through, making it clear she has no choice in the matter. Her confusion instantly snaps into furious defiance, tears of frustration welling as she outright refuses his command. Mary steps in to thank him, but her lingering gaze on Nuri shows this battle of wills is far from over. A suited agent steps forward, grabbing Nuri and shouting that Tae-hyung can't just drag her away. Tae-hyung doesn't even blink, his voice like ice as he states he never asked for permission and tells the man to get out of his way. Before the agent can react, Tae-hyung's fist connects with devastating force, shattering him and dismissing him as nothing more than a pesky bug. Tae-hyung decides he must get rid of the remaining agents, but Nuri throws herself into his path, begging him to stop. She offers a desperate trade: she will follow him willingly if he spares the others. Tae-hyung tilts his head, a dark smile spreading across his face as he praises her righteousness, while glowing system notifications materialize around her. Tae-hyung realizes she possesses a rare dual class, comparing her to a gemstone hidden in the rubble despite her terrible stats. He extends his hand, telling her she has been chosen and to take it. The moment their fingers touch, agony erupts, crimson energy tearing through her body as he coolly tells her not to worry. He is claiming her. Tae-hyung holds the convulsing Nuri close, calmly explaining it is just an awakening ritual. A monstrous pillar of blood-red light erupts from them, vomiting into the sky and sending the agents flying with its shockwave. The city is engulfed in a swirling crimson storm, leaving the surviving agents stammering in raw terror at the scale of the power. Team leader Sung-ho kneels over a wounded agent, listening as Serena recounts the impossible battle. She explains that a single Awakener beat multiple level 4 and level 6 enemies with his bare hands. When she finally drops the name Tae-hyung, Sung-ho is left utterly stunned, the weight of the revelation hanging in the air. Sun-ho grips Serena in fury, demanding to know why she didn't mention the stranger was looking for Sion's office. Serena just smiles coldly, telling him it is impossible to catch a monster like that. Meanwhile, Taehyung walks through the desolate streets with a trembling Nuri scrambling to keep up, her mind racing with panic over what to say next. Nuri stares at her phone, sweating as she hesitates to send her location for backup. Taehyung's voice cuts through from directly behind her, calmly explaining that reporting their location is pointless. He warns her that any reinforcements will only end up as food, chillingly reminding her that she cannot escape because she already belongs to him. Taehyung's patience snaps as he grabs Nuri's wrist with iron force, ordering her to just show him the way. She stumbles forward in terror, leading him through the ruined streets until they suddenly stop. Taehyung's cold mask cracks as his gaze locks onto an old photograph of a woman, whispering the word "grandma" with raw, human emotion. Taehyung vows to the photograph that he is finally coming to see her, driven by a centuries-old ache. Nuri watches in terrified confusion as he snaps back to reality and asks if they have arrived. She points a shaking hand at a completely shattered building, whispering that this ruin is Xian's office, the target he sought for hundreds of years already destroyed. Inside a black SUV, an agent reports his findings on the Demon Lord's human identity. Mary reads the file, discovering he was an orphan raised by his grandmother, before reading his full name aloud, Byung-tae Taehyung. The grim tension instantly shatters as the team bursts into laughter, realizing the terrifying monster's name literally means pervert. Mary's laughter quickly fades into serious concern as Serena confirms the Demon Lord is just an ordinary university student. Song-ho reviews the file, noting he only has an aunt, which triggers a grim memory of a past guild incident. His face twists with cold fury as the ridiculous name feels dangerously real, while another agent screams in dawning horror. An agent demands to know what happened, and Mary stammers out an explanation about a catastrophic dispute between Awakener guilds. She pulls up holographic data showing collapsed buildings and people buried under the rubble. Mary stands alone in the destroyed city, staring at a colossal, claw-like structure under the setting sun. Taehyung stands frozen, the cold Demon Lord persona cracking wide open as a warm memory takes over. A young Taehyung is engulfed in his grandmother's loving hug, her face beaming with pride as she thanks him for helping her buy a nice home. The pure adoration in his eyes stands in brutal contrast to the cold, ruined reality he now walks through. As the warm memory fades, a cold, palpable sorrow bleeds into the present, and Nuri whispers that she can feel his deep sadness. But the moment of vulnerability is violently interrupted by a sudden, ominous rumble shaking the ground. Taehyung's head snaps up, his softness instantly replaced by lethal alertness as he growls, sensing a new threat closing in. Taehyung stares at a fresh splatter of blood in the ruined office, his grief curdling into pure, incandescent rage as he demands to know which bastards did this to her. His dark energy explodes outward just as Kang Sung-ho steps into the room with Mary. Sung-ho identifies himself and his White Tiger team, his tone tense as he asks to talk. Sung-ho tries to explain they are investigating the Awakener Society, but Taehyung cuts him off with a cold dismissal. Before the agent can finish a single sentence, Taehyung moves in a blur, leaving the room entirely. His chilling declaration hangs in the air. He is heading straight to the Awakener Society to deal with them himself. Sung-ho screams in disbelief at the sheer scale of the suicide mission, asking if Taehyung really plans to take on the entire Awakener Society alone. Mary whispers in stunning realization that he actually might be able to do it. As Sung-ho orders his team forward to block the path, Mary mutters in horror that they are trying to stop a one-man army for absolutely no reason. The assault begins with an agent being smashed back into the rubble, followed by a massive shockwave tearing up the street. Taehyung walks calmly out of the epicenter, completely untouched with his hands in his pockets. An excited agent grins, declaring he looks strong, and launches himself into the air for a final deafening strike. Taehyung answers with a brutal kick to the chest, sending the agent flying before effortlessly dodging a desperate sword swing. The remaining agents unleash a cascade of failed assaults, their energy blasts and lunges deflected or dodged with casual flicks of his wrist. Taehyung stands completely untouched throughout the barrage, his boredom palpable. Taehyung's rage finally explodes as he looms over a fallen agent, ready to finish him. Mary leaps between them, desperately screaming at him not to attack, but her plea is meaningless. With a casual, brutal gesture, Taehyung swats her aside with a concussive blast, hurling her into the wall as he coldly commands everyone to get out of his way. Serena watches the agents being violently hurled through the air, her face grim as she declares they cannot stop that thing. She warns that this man is going to single-handedly wipe out the entire association. Her words are proven true as another agent stammers in terror, only for Taehyung's shadowy figure with glowing red eyes to materialize directly behind him. Taehyung demands to know who dares go against his will, and Nuri tremblingly confesses she performed an awakening ritual to bind her soul to his in unbreakable loyalty. Taehyung pauses, genuinely stunned by her strength, and asks if he must kill her to crush this rebellion. Nuri pleads that the Awakener Society has good people, but a grim-faced agent confirms they will fight to the death, leaving no room for mercy. Taehyung watches mortals throw themselves into the fire to protect their enemies, and for the first time in centuries, the Demon Lord feels something dangerously close to guilt. Orange flames lick at the desperate fighters, dragging a buried memory to the surface. He questions why he ever came back to this fragile world, the ghost of his grandmother crashing down on him. A warm voice cuts through the ash, his grandmother gently patting his head, telling him to just be a good boy and help those in need. Her loving smile and simple words slice through hundreds of years of demonic isolation. In the present, adult Taehyung stands bathed in the fading light, the memory striking him harder than any blade. His hand reaches out, gently patting Nuri's head in a rare, startling display of tenderness. The fierce rage that just leveled a city block melts into quiet, pained gratitude as he murmurs his thanks. The reason for his return finally clicks into place, pulling his soul back to his grandmother's side. Bathed in the golden light of his past, Taehyung finally answers his own question. He vows to protect the weak, fulfilling his grandmother's dying wish. Nuri looks up, tears of pure relief streaming down her face as the Demon Lord's apocalyptic wrath finally subsides. But the softness vanishes the second he turns back to the Awakener Society. Taehyung's voice drops to a cold, non-negotiable absolute. He will cooperate, but only if they find his grandmother's killer. He gives them a brutal, unforgiving deadline of 3 days. The National Intelligence Service Seoul Regional Headquarters instantly descends into absolute chaos. Agents sprint through the halls in blind panic, desperately hunting for team leader Kang. Mary and Nuri stand silently in the rubble, the crushing weight of a 3-day death sentence hanging over them. Suited agents burst into the command room, frantically demanding answers about the apocalyptic destruction outside. The chief cuts through the pathetic apologies, furious, demanding to know how they actually managed to stop a walking natural disaster. His attention snaps to the dark-haired young man standing calmly beside Nuri. A desperate voice rises above the panic, proposing they actually test the Demon King's power. Taehyung's lips curl into a dangerous, predatory smirk, letting out a short, amused laugh at their sheer suicidal audacity. The room watches in stunned silence as the apex predator decides to humor them. The facility buzzes with hopeful candidates, but Taehyung's patience is already evaporating. He demands to know if these insects really intend to keep him waiting in line. Mary panics, stumbling over her words as she rushes to the reception desk, terrified of the massacre about to unfold. An oblivious agent waves a tablet, bluntly telling the literal Demon Lord he has to wait his turn like everyone else. Mary's face drains of color as she realizes the catastrophic mistake. Taehyung's red eyes blaze with barely contained fury, his voice dropping to a deadly, world-ending whisper. Mary desperately begs him not to kill anyone, but the agent in glasses blindly enforces procedure right up until the end of his life. A shocked gasp echoes through the hall just before Taehyung unleashes his wrath. Agents are sent flying through the air, bones shattering under the sheer concussive force of his anger. The air itself cracks under Taehyung's crushing pressure as Nuri and the others cower in pure, primal terror. Taehyung leans forward, his red eyes burning and his voice a low, lethal threat. He tells them to grade him, if they dare. The registration hall is reduced to a chaotic, smoking wreck, a massive crater marking exactly where Taehyung stood. An agent fumes over the wasted resources while Nuri and Mary quietly marvel at his terrifying restraint. The Demon Lord could have slaughtered every soul in the building, but he chose to just break the furniture. The chief is warned to brace himself as Taehyung steps into a high-tech testing chamber. A glowing blue measuring sphere sits on a pedestal, waiting to quantify a god's power. The remaining agents instruct the magical type to unleash his strongest attack on the orb. Taehyung scoffs at the idea of using his full power on a mere magic stone, knowing it would vaporize the entire facility. He decides to exercise restraint, extending his gloved hand and commanding the sphere to explode, but nothing happens. He stares at his hand in cold, uncomprehending shock. Taehyung repeats the command, his confident expression draining into pure disbelief as his magic flat-out refuses to work. A female agent patronizingly tells him not to be nervous, completely misreading the room. The absurdity shatters his composure, sending him into a furious physical rage. Taehyung's fist slams into the measuring sphere with brutal physical force, bypassing magic entirely. A violent shockwave erupts as the supposedly indestructible sphere shatters into fine dust, completely obliterated by a single punch. The agents stare in stunned disbelief at the sheer physical power of a man whose magic doesn't even work. Tae-young turns away from the dust, declaring the entire test pointless since no toy can measure his abilities. He rounds on the cowering agents, his red eyes burning with irritation as he demands the results. Nori chirps that he finished quickly, but his deadly glare warns the ordeal is far from over. The shaken agents huddle around a tablet, nervously discussing the catastrophic destruction of their billion-dollar equipment. A trembling finger taps the screen, bringing up the final, glowing verdict. Kim Tae-hung is officially approved and registered as a Class S Awakener. Tae-hung slumps back at a dingy internet cafe, completely unimpressed by his new S-Class title. He takes a sip of green tea and grimaces at the bitter taste, muttering his displeasure. Nori immediately perks up, offering him her own drink and insisting she can order another. Nuri cheerfully asks what type of magic user he is, but Tae-young just sips his tea in quiet irritation. His internal monologue reveals a staggering truth. He hasn't used a single shred of his real power since arriving. He shattered their ultimate test while deliberately holding back. Tae-hyung realizes his magic wasn't just lost, but actively sealed by a spell in the dimension of between. Nori completely misses his dark revelation, cheerfully imagining him as a whimsical mage pulling doves and balloons out of a hat. Tae-hyung's deadpan voice snaps her out of it, reminding her he can read her thoughts. Tae-hyung muses that the seal is an infuriating inconvenience, but it won't kill him. Nuri spots the bespectacled agent approaching and calls his name, her tone bright and oblivious to his dark thoughts. The agent steps forward with a nervous grin, officially announcing him as the country's first S-Class Awakener. Tae-hyung instantly shuts down Nuri's praise, dismissing the S-Class title as obvious and beneath acknowledgement. His red eyes lock onto the sweating agent across from him, cutting straight through every bureaucratic pretense. He demands the man speak his mind and stop wasting his time. Tae-hyung's cold command echoes in the room, telling the agent to stop stalling and just speak. The agent's composure cracks, a bead of sweat tracing his temple as he stammers. He adjusts his glasses with a trembling hand and finally begins his explanation. Tae-hyung flatly refuses the agent's proposition, dismissing the offer of government funds and support as annoying. He leans back with disdain, stating he can get money whenever he wants, and they should just be grateful for his help. Nuri chimes in with a simple request for coffee, breaking the suffocating tension. The bespectacled agent speaks into his phone, his voice tight with urgency as he hunts for a criminal. Miles away, a man with slicked-back blue hair lounges with arrogant confidence. Kim Giltai chuckles darkly, boasting that no awakener of any class can stop his newfound power. The agent and Mary walk away, confirming they will keep Tae-hyung's S-Class status a complete secret from the media. Mary explains the grim reality. If the world finds out Korea has an S-Class, the international balance of power will shatter. Tae-hyung is no longer just a person, he is a geopolitical weapon they must hide. The agent warns that hiding an S-Class Awakener is a double-edged sword that could easily backfire. Tae-hyung and Nuri arrive at a lavish, sun-drenched estate that will serve as their new base. Tae-hyung glances around, conceding that while it's no demon castle, it's not a bad place to stay. 3 days later, Kang Sung-ho of the White Tiger team arrives at the fortified gates of the estate. He announces his presence with official calm, stepping onto the manicured grounds. Suddenly, violent, repeated crashing sounds shake the leaves, completely contradicting the peaceful exterior. Kang Sang-ho peers through the doorway, his professional calm shattering at the sight inside. A man lies crumpled on the debris-strewn floor, stunned in the silence. Tae-hyung stands over him, completely unbothered, and dismissively commands his fallen opponent to rise and fight. Tae-hyung effortlessly sidesteps a desperate downward slash, his face a mask of bored disdain. He grabs his opponent by the back of the neck, brutally smashing his face into the shattered floor. Kang Sung-ho crumples and groans, the absolute gap in their power suffocating the room. Kang Sung-ho's eyes widen in horror just as Tae-hyung's hand snaps forward. A devastating blow lands with a shattering crack, tearing through the floor and launching the White Tiger leader backward. He crashes hard into the wreckage, utterly defeated by a man who isn't even breathing hard. Tae-hyung stops his brutal sparring, ordering Nuri to continue her training while he's gone. He notes that despite her progress, she still needs to reach S-Class to truly surpass him. A memory of his 3-day deadline flashes in his mind, followed by Nuri's fearful question about killing them all. Tae-hyung's eyes go cold as he declares there will be no more mercy for his enemies. Mary's trembling voice cuts through the darkness, insisting that their lives are still precious. Tae-hyung echoes the phrase, his mind flashing back to the demon realm where life was cheap and mercy didn't exist. Tae-hyung clarifies to Nuri that this isn't meaningless slaughter but revenge for his grandmother. He coldly calculates that sacrificing some innocents will spare others, a twisted demonic logic. Nuri accepts his words with a quiet bow, while Tae-hyung reluctantly admits he's grown more lenient. The bespectacled agent arrives at the estate with a blue folder, insisting on delivering the intel in person. He notices Tae-young has transformed in just a few days, softening around his loyal subordinate. Nuri cheerfully pipes up, completely oblivious to the agent's scrutinizing gaze. The agent hands over a dossier on the Lion Guild, a criminal group led by the newly awakened Kim Gil-tae. They use their awakener status to torment ordinary citizens protected by the very system meant to stop them. Tae-hung listens quietly, a cold, dangerous smile spreading across his face. The agent suggests Tae-hung deal with the Lion Guild without dirtying his own hands. Tae-hung's expression darkens with immediate contempt. Finding the very idea of hesitation offensive, he commands Nuri to wait, walking away into the fading light with revenge on his mind. Kim Gil-tae, the Lion Guild leader, lounges in his chair and brags about taking over a massive plaza. He mocks the National Intelligence Service, his grin dripping with arrogant contempt for the law. His subordinates cheer around him, completely unaware of the storm heading their way. A shocked, enraged shout erupts from the hallway as something violently interrupts the meeting. The room shatters into chaos as panicked subordinates scramble to protect their boss. Amid the crumbling debris, a guild member desperately screams that they just want to make a living. The Lion Guild's bragging is shredded mid-sentence as figures outside are hurled through the air. Kim Gil-tae gapes in horror as the wall behind him explodes inward, dissolving into a hellscape of fire. His smug confidence is obliterated in an instant, replaced by pure, unadulterated dread. A terrified guild member stammers that there's something moving in the flames. Tae-hung emerges from the fiery ruin, a figure of utter dominance surrounded by floating debris. He scoffs at the so-called awakeners, dismissing them as pesky bugs and trash that deserve to die. Tae-hung's voice is a cold promise as he tells them he will make them grow through evolution. Mary stands amidst the ruined hall, her expression blank as she asks if she should kill them painlessly. The surviving Lion Guild members stare in horrified disbelief, realizing their world is ending. A surviving member sees the chaos as a ladder, lunging from the shadows with a drawn dagger. He screams a vulgar curse, driving the blade into Mary's back in a desperate bid for power. She cries out, her body jolting forward as the surprise attack sends her crashing into the debris. Tae-young's shadow falls over the shattered hall as he gives the broken guild leaders one last chance. He leans down, his voice a cold promise that his mercy is rapidly running out. Down the hall, two oblivious lower-level associates watch the commotion, completely confused by the violence. The two associates finally grasp the terror unfolding and try to flee the building. A cold voice cuts through the air from the shadows, asking who told them running was an option. The escaping man is violently hurled through the wreckage in a spray of blood, proving no one leaves. Kim Gil-tae stares with wide, blood-spattered eyes, his face frozen in pure terror as he realizes no one escapes. Tae-hyung crouches in the shadows, surrounded by floating wreckage, his voice dripping with cold irony. He tells them they could have died painlessly, but now they will suffer. Tae-young, wreathed in crackling red energy, questions if this scum even has the right to think of honor. Panic fractures the guild's ranks as survivors scream at each other to stop him. Kim Gil-tae snarls in fury, abandoning his subordinates and declaring that only the fit deserve to live. Tae-young's cold voice echoes as the guild leader flees, noting that abandoning subordinates is a uniquely human trait. He observes that the real world is no better than the demon realm, where loyalty means absolutely nothing. An explosion of red energy erupts, engulfing the abandoned subordinates in a cataclysm of fire. The impenetrable seals shatter into a web of glowing cracks. Two suited men stare at the fortified door in pure disbelief as their entire defense network collapses. One companion drops to his knees, gasping for air. A bespectacled man snarls in cold fury, realizing the enemy just bypassed everything. But down in the dimly lit lobby, Tae-hyung just smirks. He already ordered his people out, leaving a crowd of armed fighters to face him alone. A suited thug grins, beckoning his gang forward with a drawn knife. "Come on," he sneers, but the bravado dies the second Tae-young steps into the light. The mob's aggression flips to raw, screaming panic. They lunge in a desperate bid for survival, but it's pathetic. A blade swipes through empty air. Steel clatters uselessly to the floor as Tae-young sways aside with lazy precision, looking down at the cowering thugs with a faint, cold smile. "You really can't make it any easier for me to kill you," Tae-hyung mutters. Then he moves. He tears through the suited attackers in a blur of crimson violence. Blades flash, bodies crumple, and the corridor instantly becomes a slaughterhouse. Every strike is precise, mechanical, and utterly merciless. A man tries to parry and gets bisected. Another lunges from the shadows, finding only empty air before steel meets flesh. The coordinated assault dissolves into pure chaos, leaving only trails of red energy in his wake. Screams of help are violently cut short in a spray of crimson. A man begs his brother for salvation, only to be hurled through a reinforced window with bone-crushing force. Behind that very glass, two brothers watch the slaughter in stunned, paralyzed silence. The blond man turns to his sibling, his expression hollow with a horrifying realization, and whispers his name. The unrelenting thud of bodies hitting the floor continues as a fresh spray of red splatters across the glass. A desperate cry for help cuts through the thick smoke, instantly swallowed by the roar of another massive explosion. Taehyung stands amidst the smoking carnage, his red eyes burning with cold focus. "Rats always hide," he remarks. From the shadows, a voice replies in shocked disbelief, entirely unable to process that he just dismantled an entire guild of awakeners by himself. A blond man's face is a mask of pure terror as he screams at a reinforced shutter that refuses to open. A hand wreathed in dark energy materializes from the smoke and seizes the back of his head. "How can you take the lives of innocent people?" Taehyung's voice cuts like cold iron, "and then beg not to die?" The blond man goes limp as his skull caves in with a sickening crunch. A suited man watches from the side, frozen in a silent scream of absolute horror. The shattered remnants of the Lion Guild finally face their reckoning. Taehyung steps from the shadows, his red eyes glowing as he delivers his verdict: "Their guild dies today." A trembling man stammers that he doesn't understand why. Taehyung gives them exactly one chance to explain why he shouldn't slaughter them all right now. The man's mind cracks with dawning horror as the truth hits him. They aren't just facing a powerful awakener, they are facing a demon lord settling a centuries-old score. "You're lying," a man in a suit shouts, pointing a trembling finger. "We attacked first. The Cheongi Guild didn't even get a chance to fight back." His own words hang in the air as he realizes Taehyung already knew. A sudden searing pain shoots through his arm. He clutches the mangled limb, face twisted in fury, screaming that he'll kill Taehyung even if he has to use only one arm. "Is that so?" A taunting voice cuts through his rage. The last survivor of the Lion Guild screams a final, desperate insult and lunges with his weapon. Taehyung doesn't even flinch. His hand snaps up in a blur, catching the bare blade with effortless, terrifying precision. The man's eyes go wide with shock as his attack is completely neutralized. Taehyung's red eyes glow with cold amusement. He releases the blade and gives the terrified man a momentary reprieve, whispering that he'll give him exactly 1 minute to run. The man clutches his head, screaming that it's the last straw. His composure shatters completely as a raw, agonized wail tears from his throat. Multiple spectral arms erupt from his back, seizing and tearing at his own flesh in a frenzy of self-destruction. He collapses, broken and gasping. Taehyung steps over the twitching body, his eyes cold with weary contempt. He mutters that he can't believe he got so worked up over this heap of trash, especially when his true purpose in this world remains unfinished. Another man screams in agony, clutching his head and crying out for his grandmother. From a distance, a suited thug points a gun, promising this is going to hurt. His threat is cut brutally short. Taehyung catches the bullet bare-handed, closes the distance in a heartbeat, and slams the gunman headfirst into the concrete. Before the man can even process the shock, Taehyung unleashes a devastating flurry of blows, completely obliterating him. Taehyung stands over the remains, declaring that he's changed. Taehyung looms over a cowering man amidst a heap of fresh corpses, his shirt splattered with their blood. He delivers a cold verdict, promising to give him a taste of every pain imaginable. The man collapses, bleeding profusely and screaming in agony. With his last strength, he begs for help. Taehyung scoffs with weary contempt, asking why he should care if trash like them dies. The man's desperation peaks, frantically offering absolutely anything in exchange for his life. "Who's there?" A voice slices through the oppressive silence, shouting into the gloom. His call answers to a nightmare. The floor is a charnel house, littered with the mutilated corpses of the Lion Guild's elite enforcers. The sight shatters him. His eyes widen in pure, horrified recognition of the absolute carnage. Trembling, he collapses among the dead, his voice cracking as he begs for someone to help him, but only the echo of his own terror answers back. At the threshold of a taped-off doorway, a guard stands paralyzed, the air thick with the copper stench of the massacre. A man in glasses wipes his face with a towel, staring blankly at the butchery. "He really let it all out," he whispers, his voice hollow. His eyes drift upward, heavy with the promise of deeper consequences as the terrifying reality sets in. They are in serious, serious trouble. The room is completely wrecked, shards of glass and concrete littering the floor. Taehyung stands amidst the destruction, his sword held loosely in one hand, red eyes scanning the ruins. From the shadows beyond the shattered doorway, a voice delivers a grim warning. The Awakeners Association won't just stand by and do nothing. Taehyung doesn't even flinch. The threat of consequences is completely meaningless to a demon lord. The sleek tower of national intelligence looms under a clear sky, but the air inside is suffocating. Are we just going to pretend the Lion Guild massacre didn't happen? A voice cracks with disbelief. 52 people were killed. Footage plays on a holographic display showing Taehyung walking calmly through absolute destruction. A woman with glasses stares up at the carnage, her expression hard with fury, demanding to know how they can possibly punish an SSS-Class awakener who operates above every rule. A man with glasses slams his hand on the table, face twisted with fury. "We can't let this go unchecked in a country with laws," he shouts. A calm, silver-haired official beside him raises a hand, smoothly pivoting the argument away from the immediate political firestorm. Later, sitting alone at his desk, the man shifts the focus to a much darker problem, a massive surge in gates. His face shadows with a new kind of dread as he notes a terrifying spike in incidents. 12 incidents this week. 4 in Seoul alone, a voice reports, detailing a severe surge in crises. The officials admit their awakeners have failed to stop a single one, but they have a crucial advantage, an S-Class on their side. They express confidence that this S-Class can manage the threat. However, a massive caveat emerges. The general manager must step in to keep him in line, because an SSS-Class monster can't simply be allowed to act as he pleases. The suited general manager grips his head, spiraling in frustrated disbelief. How is he supposed to punish someone who isn't even a proper human? His anger drains, replaced by sudden, stark fear. He swallows hard, his voice dropping to a terrified stammer as he blurts out an apology. In the shadowed background, Taehyung sits perfectly calm. The official continues in a rushed, placating voice, desperately acknowledging their unprecedented situation. A wide, terrified eye dilates in pure fear as a deep rumble shakes the room like a coming quake. There are those who possess unrivaled power, and the fate of the country rests entirely in their hands. The grim tension shatters completely, cutting to a bright room where a cheerful blonde woman with a bow in her hair clenches her fists, a stark, hilarious contrast to the national crisis. In a bright domestic space, White gasps in frustration, throwing her hands up as she complains about her identical clothes. "Master!" she calls out. A moment later, she stands by the bathroom door, holding a neat stack of folded clothes. "I brought your clothes," she announces, her tone shifting to a firm command to finish his bath. Then, she lets out a sudden, shocked scream. The bathroom door slides open. Taehyung steps out, completely naked with just a towel slung low around his waist, utterly unbothered. White freezes, her face flushing crimson as her eyes go wide with pure panic. "Why are you screaming so loudly?" Taehyung asks flatly. She stammers through her shock, demanding to know why he came out naked. With desperate, fumbling hands, she shoves the stack of clothes forward, squealing her excuses while Taehyung just watches her lose her mind. "You're an imprudent subordinate," a shadowy, imposing figure accuses. The tension pulls back to a deceptively peaceful garden where Taehyung sits rigidly under a parasol while White's shoulders tense. She reflects on his chilling recent behavior. He's been utterly silent, staring blankly for entire evenings. A bespectacled agent drops to his knees, begging her to intervene and say something to break the silence, his panic raw and absolute. White lets out a small gasp, trying to break the suffocating silence with desperate, forced cheer. Leaning in with a faltering, nervous smile, she suggests they go shopping. "Shopping?" Taehyung questions with a flat tone. She quickly tries to sell it, pointing out they can get him better clothes and she needs some too. His expression seems to soften, and he gives a quiet agreement. Her face lights up with a huge, starry-eyed grin as her mind explodes into a floral fantasy of their shopping trip. "Yes, shopping, let's go," White declares, already lost in a daydream of floral dresses. Taehyung, his expression utterly deadpan, cuts straight through her fantasy. "There's a problem." She freezes as her cheerful bubble pops. Taehyung looks at her with calm, red eyes and delivers the killing blow with zero inflection. He has no money. Her fantasy shatters completely as the cold reality of their situation crashes down. White's face tightens with the sudden realization that her paycheck hasn't actually arrived yet. She turns to Taehyung, her voice small and hopeful, asking if she can borrow some cash. He responds with absolute calm, lifting a finger to lecture that a lord doesn't borrow money. Purple energy crackles, crystallizing in midair as Taehyung produces a brilliant, massive violet gem. He holds it up between his fingers, paying in something far more valuable than cash, leaving White completely stunned. Sunlight bathes a towering modern district as White practically bounces with excitement. "This is the exchange market run by the National Intelligence Service," she explains to Taehyung, "where hunters buy and sell magical items." Her excitement spills over as she continues her tour guide act, noting that the Awakeners Association trades here too. The source of her sudden shopping spree energy is finally revealed, the brilliant, massive violet gem Taehyung produced, glowing brightly in the sunlight. At a bustling exchange counter, an attendant gestures to the side, directing them to the gem trade. White and Tae-hung step up. The attendant welcomes them to the NIS exchange market with a polite, professional smile, explaining the procedure to measure their goods. White holds out the brilliant violet gem. The attendant reaches for it, but the moment her fingers brush the stone, her confident smile vanishes. Her eyes widen and her mouth goes slack in absolute shock. The attendant nervously calls over Mr. Park, announcing that someone wants to sell a gemstone. He scoffs, dismissing it as a low-level item not worth his time. But when the attendant stammers that this gem isn't normal-sized, Mr. Park's arrogant expression vanishes. He stares, his composure cracking as he realizes what he's looking at is something far beyond the ordinary. A heavy, shocked silence falls as the true, impossible weight of Tae-young's offering hits him. Park Song-hyuk, head of Sales Division 3, leans back with a smug, dismissive smile, clearly unimpressed by the visit. But as the attendant nervously explains that they brought a massive gemstone, Park's demeanor shatters. His glasses slip down his nose, his eye wide with dawning shock. The impossible value he's suddenly comprehending hits him like a physical blow, and the power dynamic in the room instantly flips. Tae-young stands with the massive, glowing violet gemstone, casually telling the attendant to handle it carefully. Her professional demeanor cracks as she stares at the impossible size, whispering in disbelief. Her panic intensifies as she realizes the gem is too enormous to process, stammering that they need a specialized counter. Park Sang-hyuk steps up, and when he sees the gem himself, his smug expression shatters completely. His eyes widen in pure shock as the violet light reflects in his glasses, dwarfing anything he's ever handled. Trying to regain his pride, Park Sang-hyuk lets out a dismissive scoff. Tae-hung just gives a faint, amused smirk and, with a casual flick of his finger, shatters the enormous violet gemstone into pieces on the table. Park's eyes snap open in pure shock as he scrambles to pick up a glowing shard. His voice cracks as he holds it up, realizing even a single piece is worth at least 10 million won. The attendant, sweating and frantic, admits they can buy it, but only if they scrape together all their available funds. Park Sang-hyuk's composure is completely gone, his voice tight with panic as he realizes the largest exchange market in the country can't afford this single gemstone. The attendant stammers while White leans forward, desperate, demanding at least a partial amount. Tae-hung sits calmly, utterly unfazed by the chaos. Park delivers the killing blow, admitting the bureau would never approve such a purchase, and the attendant confirms they simply don't have the funds. White slams her hand down, eyes blazing with sudden, aggressive confidence. "1 billion. If you pay us 1 billion won in advance, we'll accept it." Park Sang-hyuk recoils, sweating bullets, his face twisted in panic. His protest is interrupted by a terrifying presence as Tae-hung looms behind him, glowing red eyes piercing, flanked by spectral, monstrous beast apparitions. Park's composure shatters completely. White smirks, seeing her opening. Park, broken, stammers his acceptance, staring at the apparitions and realizing Tae-hung is a literal wild beast. A digital transfer initiates. The transfer lands, confirming 1 billion won on the screen. Outside, White turns back to Tae-hung with a bright smile, celebrating the deposit and immediately steering him toward the men's clothing district. Tae-hung offers a non-committal hum, but White keeps the momentum going as they cross the street. She tosses him a casual compliment on his ruthless bargaining. The Demon Lord, caught off guard by the genuine praise, stammers out a flustered thanks as they head off into the city. Miles away, Park Sang-hyuk sits alone in a dark, book-lined study, his face buried in his hand as his thoughts rage. He seethes over the humiliation of being strong-armed into a 1 billion won transfer. His posture shifts, the shock curdling into cold, calculated fury. He straightens, a dark promise forming behind his glare, vowing to show the real power of money to the scumbags who took advantage of him. He slams a phone onto a table, scrolling through contacts to call an elite strike group. Back on the street, White practically vibrates with excitement, clutching Tae-hung's arm and dragging him toward a high-end storefront. Tae-hung, hands in pockets, coolly brushes her off, telling her to buy what she needs first since he doesn't really need anything. White freezes in genuine shock. Then her expression hardens with stubborn conviction. She plants her feet and declares they are here for him now, refusing to let him deflect. The 1 billion won haul was always for him, and his detached indifference won't change that. Tae-hung's cold, composed face lingers for a moment, a silent echo of the exchange market's chaos. The mood softens as they step into a luxurious storefront called Mori. A shopkeeper in a sharp suit bows in welcome, asking if they are looking for anything specific. Tae-hung watches White, silently noting how utterly peculiar his subordinate is. White just looks up with a bright, eager smile, completely ready to shop. White bursts into the store, grabbing a tailor and barking orders with the authority of a general, demanding they dress her master from head to toe in the absolute best. Tae-hung sits calmly, utterly unbothered by her theatrics. but the relaxed shopping trip is shattered in an instant. A violent purple vortex of energy erupts outside the store, crackling with raw power and tearing through the street. The tailors step back, their work complete. Taehyung touches his chin, considering the result. He stands in a sharp dark suit, every line tailored to absolute perfection. White's reaction sells it. Her eyes widen, cheeks flushing as she stares, completely starstruck, admitting it looks incredibly flattering. Onlookers murmur their admiration. Taehyung looks down with a reserved, almost shy expression, the ancient demon lord utterly unused to such overt, sparkling praise. White's face is practically glowing as she stammers through her praise, imaginary sparkles erupting around her. Taehyung responds with a single, detached word, just acknowledging her role as a subordinate. But White isn't done. She bounces on her feet, voice climbing with genuine disbelief. Taehyung barely reacts, standing tall in his perfectly tailored suit. White explodes with enthusiasm, practically screaming that he looks amazing. She declares she can't wait to tell everyone he's her master, already planning how to show him off. Taehyung adjusts his collar with quiet self-assurance and turns away. Still buzzing from the suit fitting, White asks Taehyung if he wants to check himself in the mirror. He brushes it off flatly. Then he turns to her and delivers the line that short-circuits her brain. He says she said he looks good, and that's all that matters, so now let's get her what she needs. White freezes mid-step, her eyes widening. Absolute overload hits her. Her face erupts in a furious blush, sparkles flooding as she clasps her hands together, stammering through a teary, grateful thanks. Taehyung, utterly oblivious, scowls over his shoulder, telling her to stop smiling and come quickly. White clutches her shopping bags, beaming with joy as she gazes at Taehyung, a soft wow escaping her lips. The mood is light, the shopping trip a massive success, but the tranquility shatters in an instant. White's joyful expression freezes, her eyes widening in sharp shock as her gaze locks onto the sky. A violent purple vortex of energy erupts, tearing through the calm with a deafening roar, violently interrupting their peaceful interlude. The purple vortex crackles and tears open above the street, raw energy raining down as civilians scream and scatter in all directions. White and Taehyung stand at the center of the chaos. White's voice cracks as she recognizes what's forming overhead, her composure shattering completely. Taehyung's face shifts, something sharp and alert cutting through his expression as he stares up at the rift. He confirms the gate is opened, his voice carrying a heavy weight, adding that it's unfolding in a way he's never seen before. Inside the rift, a colossal purple eye crackles with energy, observing the strange, unannounced breach. On the street, White gasps, her face drained of color as her mind races with pure dread. The system confirms her worst fear, flashing urgent text across the air, warning of an unknown gate appearing immediately. The warning escalates instantly, cautioning that a cataclysmic or multi-level enemy is about to descend. A monstrous, shrieking roar erupts from the purple vortex, tearing open the sky. A colossal, fanged maw glows with malevolent violet light, bellowing with such force that the sound itself shakes the city. The crowd is frozen, staring upward in collective, paralyzed horror. White's composure is gone, her face a mask of dread. Taehyung, however, stands perfectly still, his sharp red eyes narrowing with cold assessment as he delivers a chilling verdict. Whatever is coming out will be stronger than any enemy she's ever faced. The chaotic energy from the sky vortex intensifies. White, her face a mask of sheer panic, fumbles for her communication device, her voice cracking as she tries to warn headquarters. She shouts into the static that they're in trouble, and an unknown gate is breaching. Her words cut off as her eyes widen, locking onto something horrific emerging from the swirling portal. A monstrous clawed appendage, slick with dark energy, reaches down from the rift, poised to descend upon the city. A massive red creature barrels through the rift, its maw splitting wide open to reveal rows of jagged, glistening fangs. Purple lightning crackles wildly across its hide as the gate vomits it into the world, its sheer scale dwarfing the buildings below. But Taehyung doesn't flinch. His sharp red eyes stare straight up at the descending nightmare, completely unblinking, and a single word escapes his lips with eerie calm. "Come!" The creature answers, a colossal red eye blazing open as it locks onto the street and roars, the sound hitting like a physical shockwave. The city groans and cracks as the colossal creature begins to tear its way through, chunks of building and debris raining down on the fleeing crowd. The panic is instant and total. Agents stare at their devices in horror, confirming the gate is open, their warnings to run swallowed by the general roar of the stampede. Amid the chaos, a little girl in a blue dress is shoved to the ground, crying out for her mother. Through it all, Taehyung stands utterly still, an island of calm, his red eyes fixed on the descending nightmare above. White's face is tight with growing terror as she screams into her communication device, demanding to know if Nuri is listening. Her voice cuts through the static, frantically reporting their location at the 3D department store, and that the monster is just about to fully emerge from the gate. She notes their master is handling the evacuation. Below, the street is a stampede of panicked citizens fleeing the colossal monster, their desperate cries rising as they beg their master for help. A colossal dragon tears through the dark clouds, its deafening rumble cutting off Taehyung's promise to evacuate the citizens. But the Demon Lord's red eyes don't show fear, they gleam with predatory anticipation. A brutal memory flashes through his mind, ripping the throat from a defiant dragon of the strongest species. He craves a worthy opponent who won't shatter under his full power, but White's raw, terrified scream of master snaps him back to reality. For the first time, the Demon Lord's composure cracks. White isn't asking for orders, she's on her knees, tears streaming down her face, begging him to save the innocent people. A little girl in a blue dress collapses in the rubble, sobbing uncontrollably. The sound pierces Taehyung's ancient attachment, drawing a single deliberate footstep toward her crying form. "This world is too weak," he mutters with ancient contempt, declaring nothing can touch him. A visceral, bloody strike instantly proves his point, tearing through flesh and leaving a shattered body in its wake. He dismisses the carnage around him, comparing humanity to a swarm of insignificant ants building a fragile castle. Bathed in eerie light, he turns his back on the terrified survivors without a second glance. Crimson drips from his mouth as genuine irritation finally pierces his calm. He remembers the ruthless law of his former world: the strong feast, the weak die, but the sight of a colossal dragon terrorizing a helpless child makes his expression harden. The dragon's booming roar declares its absolute invincibility, but White's desperate scream for her master cuts through the chaos. Taehyung's mouth twitches into a knowing smirk, and the Demon Lord finally moves to answer the call. White's tearful plea to save the people echoes across the ruined street as the colossal dragon descends, unleashing an earth-shattering roar of pure malice. In the center of the shockwave, Taehyung's eyes begin to glow with terrifying power. White screams that the department store is under direct assault, launching her purple energy to shatter the falling debris. On the street, a purple-haired woman and a red-eyed child watch the chaotic destruction unfold in stunned silence. White's composure shatters as she realizes she can't possibly stop the incoming destruction. A massive chunk of debris explodes directly above the little girl in the blue dress, throwing her small body backward in a shower of rock and purple energy. Taehyung finally acts, his hand igniting with swirling violet and crimson energy that cracks the sky itself. White barely dodges a massive concrete explosion, lifting her breathless gaze to the sky as a cataclysmic wave of red-black energy tears through the air. "Execute the plea," Taehyung declares, answering White's desperate beg with ruthless efficiency. Watching him, White realizes her own selfishness. She had ignored everyone but her subordinate, while Taehyung proudly vows he won't be an incompetent lord. Mary physically guides the terrified civilians through the debris, driven by a private vow to protect the subordinate who intrigues her. Streets away, a dark-haired figure strides calmly from the chaos, deciding that a few seconds of labor won't hurt. Taehyung looks up at the descending dragon with detached boredom, complaining that he doesn't like the thing above his head. Behind him, a colossal dark angel is utterly obliterated, erupting in a brutal spray of black feathers and crimson blood. The dragon roars its defiance, but Taehyung just smirks and tells the beast it looks stuck. His shadow stretches into a monstrous, demonic form, and a terrifying voice oozes from the darkness to offer its help, making the colossal dragon recoil in horror. A cataclysmic blast of red and pink energy slams into the dragon, tearing through its massive form. As civilians scream in terror below, Taehyung calmly declares they will take the fight to the sky to avoid collateral damage. Taehyung unleashes a towering column of prismatic energy that slams into the city streets like a divine spear. The concussive shockwave blows civilians and White off their feet, leaving a scar of light cutting through the clouds. High in the upper atmosphere, a colossal red demonic figure asks if he is awake. Taehyung's chains shatter in an explosion of purple energy, and massive black wings unfurl from his back as the Demon Lord finally unleashes his true power. Taehyung arrogantly sizes up the ancient dragon, hoping it won't make a fool of him. But his smirk vanishes when a status window reveals the truth. It's a draconian Karates, an SSS-Class dragon at level 8000. Blindsided by the staggering stats, Taehyung realizes the beast made a contract with the ruler of the Seven Realms. The dragon lunges with a guttural roar, and for the first time, the Demon Lord mutters that this isn't good. Taehyung spreads his wings, putting the entire earth at his back as the dragon unleashes a planet-killing beam of violet-white energy. He hesitates, realizing that blocking the attack directly would make the entire displacement pointless. The cataclysmic beam washes over him, but Taehyung withstands the full force, his black wings absorbing the blast. With a guttural roar, he fires a concentrated blue-white counterbeam that pierces straight through the dragon's attack and detonates inside its maw. Unmoved by the cataclysmic energy, Taehyung smirks and complains that he just bought these clothes. He unleashes a devastating counterblast that tears through the dragon's attack, leaving him floating serenely in the atmosphere while the beast screams in agony. Taehyung's dark energy surges, his expression cold and predatory as the dragon's ancient eye contracts in pure agony. Floating serenely against the star-dusted sky, the Demon Lord isn't even winded as he punishes the beast with another devastating impact. The dragon lets out a final scream as its massive form rips apart under the violet onslaught. Silence falls over the void, and Taehyung calmly adjusts his collar, satisfied to finally find something that doesn't break from his mere touch. Taehyung's dark energy slams into the reeling dragon, gathering more power as his red eyes burn with cold focus. He unleashes a final, brutal punch that shatters the ancient beast's form into a million crystalline hexagonal fragments. The cornered dragon bares its massive, serrated fangs in a primal roar of fury. Taehyung doesn't flinch, driving his fist into its face with seismic force that shatters the ancient beast's body like shattered glass. The dragon's tail whip is stopped cold by an unseen barrier, leading the beast to assume he's using magic that shouldn't work in this world. Taehyung corrects it, stating he relies on brute strength, but decides to use something else entirely. Taehyung's eyes ignite as he commands the Dragonhide Scion, summoning a colossal spectral dragon skull and a brilliant blade of light. He asks the defeated beast if it recognizes the weapon, revealing it was forged from the spine of its kindred, demon dragon Zogma. The dragon unleashes a colossal beam of pure dragon fire, but Taehyung blocks it with a brilliant barrier that splinters the attack into crystalline shards. Floating untouched in the maelstrom, he smirks and tells the beast that attacking him like this is the worst thing a dragonborn can do. The dragon's devastating breath attack crashes against Taehyung's shield of light in a blinding cascade of shattering energy. Without flinching, Taehyung counters with a concentrated beam that punches straight through the assault, detonating the dragon's own power inside its maw. In a desperate gambit, the dragon chomps down on Taehyung's blade, declaring it will seal his magic and stop his tricks. But Taehyung's bored smirk never fades, knowing this pathetic ploy is completely meaningless against his true strength as the beast collapses. "Alright, now it's my turn," Taehyung says, firing a searing beam of light that tears through the dragon's face in a silent scream of agony. From a high-altitude craft, two observers watch the impossible spectacle in slack-jawed shock as Taehyung descends like a falling star. The ancient dragon's body tears itself apart, its colossal form collapsing inward as fragments scatter across the void like burning meteors. Taehyung lands amidst the cooling debris and offers a quiet, respectful compliment to the corpse, acknowledging its skill before delivering cold finality. Adjusting his collar in the cosmic void, Taehyung is mocked by a crackling voice asking what trick he'll use next. He calmly names a level 6 explosive magic, and when a catastrophic purple sphere detonates, his voice cuts through the blast to say the attacker is very wrong. The dragon launches another desperate magic attack, but the blast splashes harmlessly against Taehyung's invisible barrier, confirming his magic resistance is at level max. The ancient beast's eye widens in sheer terror as it realizes its millennia of power are utterly meaningless. Taehyung drives forward with raw, overwhelming power, his strike tearing through ancient flesh and bone. Massive red cracks spiderweb through the dragon's body before a blinding explosion of white-hot light utterly obliterates the level 8000 apex predator. The battle's dust settles as Mary lands hard on a rooftop, watching the aftermath with grim determination. Below, White and a crowd of stunned civilians stare in collective disbelief, while Taehyung stands calmly, a faint green energy swirling around his hand and a satisfied smirk on his lips. The gate collapses inward, and a system alert confirms the situation is solved. But a suited agent arrives on his expression hard and suspicious, demanding to know where White's master and the enemy went. White looks at the purple-tinged sky and delivers a devastating truth: they went up. The agent clutches his head in frustration, struggling to parse the impossible reality that the enemy simply ascended into the sky. B-Class Awakener Chun Wooen slams his hand down, furiously screaming at White and calling her crazy for spouting nonsense. White meets his venomous glare with a flat, firm insistence that it's the truth, but he just scoffs at her National Intelligence Service affiliation. An angry official shouts that this has gone too far, defending the light purple-haired man who stands with a cold mask of authority. The confrontation physically escalates as a suited man grabs a belligerent agent by the collar, screaming over the threat of a formal complaint. The sky suddenly tears open, plunging massive, blazing orange projectiles toward the city in a deafening roar. Civilians freeze in collective horror before erupting into panic, screaming to take cover as a colossal fireball detonates against the street. The bombardment doesn't let up, tearing through the urban landscape in a relentless storm of fire and debris. An orange-haired figure is caught in a massive explosion while civilians scramble in terror, but White just stands frozen, staring up at the worsening destruction. White spots him through the flames and screams his name, sprinting toward Tae-young as he strolls through the inferno like a gentle breeze. His suit is pristine, his expression bored, casually muttering that he should defeat them more slowly next time. A civilian stammers in shock at something in the sky while White urgently tugs on Tae-young's arm to lead him away. But a suited man with a grim expression activates a shimmering blue system interface, blocking their path and demanding a moment of his time. The suited man summons Uriel, an angelic being that erupts into existence, and seals the area in a shimmering dome of blue energy. Tae-young's eyes narrow in appreciation, recognizing the immense feat of summoning a being from the upper fantasy realm. The agent explains that the world will soon learn a Korean awakener single-handedly defeated a level 7 enemy, shifting global power dynamics. Tae-young cuts him off with icy impatience, complaining that he talks too much and demanding he gets straight to the point. The agent drops a cold ultimatum: they might have to reveal Tae-young's existence to the world. White trembles in anxiety, but Tae-young just stares back with a dark, unreadable gaze, completely unaware of the political storm about to break, while civilians below record the aftermath. The agent's tough act evaporates into a stuttered apology, the exact second Tae-young actually agrees to his ultimatum. The Demon Lord doesn't just accept the terms, he rewrites them, unleashing a blinding cascade of pink and purple energy that forces the man to his knees. He offers his conditions with a thin, dangerous smile: sign the deal or be swallowed by the fallout. That unleashed power dwarfs the city skyline, leaving the agent in pure trembling shock while White stares up in fearful awe. Tae-young forces the compromise, trapping the official in a swirling vortex of crystalline purple energy until he has no choice but to accept. The blinding light finally dissipates into a clear sky, leaving the world forever changed. Miles away, Anderson's operation is abruptly cancelled when a breathless subordinate bursts through the doors with impossible news. The level 7 enemy that threatened to wipe out Korea has been single-handedly eradicated by their newest awakener. Across the purple-tinged dusk, the staggering truth of Tae-young's identity begins to ripple across the globe. Humanity's reaction to the impossible fractures instantly into two extremes. Some accept the terrifying reality of a new god walking among them, while others shatter into manic, disbelieving laughter. They call it a trick, a special effect, anything to avoid admitting a single man just annihilated a planet-killing threat. The denial is absolute and unhinged. A man in a blue jacket doubles over in manic laughter, screaming that a planet-killing dragon and a demon lord are nothing but high-end CGI. But beneath his hollow screams, the sweating officials know the terrifying truth: the world's hierarchy just broke. The National Defense Headquarters drops a bombshell on a room of stunned officials. The savior of Korea is a newly evaluated S-Class awakener. The denial turns violent as an enraged official slams the messenger against the wall, screaming that it's a lie. But pinned and bleeding, the subordinate gasps out the undeniable truth. The argument erupts into outright hostility as a scoffing official mocks the sheer absurdity of a level 7 enemy being reduced to just a head. White snaps back, her voice shaking with rage as she fiercely defends her master's S-Class status. The official sneers that without him, the city would be ash, calling Tae-young a fake and a fraud. A national intelligence official rants about dignity, completely blind to the apex predator standing right in front of him. Tae-young dismisses his shouting as the bite of an ant, until the man makes the fatal mistake of insulting White. The ground violently trembles as Tae-young's killing intent floods the room, freezing the bureaucrat in absolute terror. Tae-young moves with terrifying speed, grabbing the yelling official by the collar and lifting him clean off his feet. He leans in, his whisper carrying a murderous promise that strips away every ounce of the man's bravado. Speak ill of his subordinates again, and he will face the most painful death imaginable. The crackle of purple energy fades as Tae-young drops the official like a piece of trash. The man crumples to the ground, shaking uncontrollably, his arrogance entirely scoured away by pure, abject fear. Tae-young doesn't even look back, walking away through the ruined street as if the confrontation was nothing. The intelligence agents are left frozen in sheer dread, terrified of the geopolitical fallout they've just unleashed. The world watches in stunned silence as the National Intelligence Service formally announces a reality-shifting truth at a packed press conference. Kim Tae-young is officially registered as Korea's first S-Class awakener. Lounging in his new luxury residence, Tae-young dismisses the global shockwave with a simple sip of his drink. The official nervously confirms that as the world's only S-Class Awakener, no person or organization in the country would dare challenge him. The power dynamic has irrevocably shifted, leaving the government at his mercy. Japan and the United States tried to leverage the Unknown Gate incident to plunge Korea into debt, but their schemes evaporate the moment Taehyung's power is revealed. A massive cosmic display of green and blue energy tears across space, completely shattering their geopolitical leverage. White watches in triumphant awe as the tables turn entirely in their favor. The geopolitical victory is short-lived as the official warns that foreign powers will move to eliminate this new irregularity. The United States elite Wolf Team has already requested a visit to meet the new S-Class. Taehyung listens to the plea for a friendly alliance while sipping his drink and flatly refuses. Taehyung's simmering rage boils over in a quiet, violent crush, reducing a soda can to scrap metal in his grip. He mutters that this dull earth means nothing to him, his only annoyance being that his property was destroyed. He tosses the mangled aluminum aside, his cold fury a chilling warning to whoever dared cross him. The official desperately tries to pivot, bringing up the Wolf Team's top fighter, an S-Class named Atlas, who holds the title of the world's strongest awakener. Taehyung doesn't even bother turning his head to acknowledge the name. The suggestion that anyone else on this planet holds a title of strength simply doesn't register for him. The official drops the real name. Anderson the Almighty, the United States S-Class powerhouse, is demanding a face-to-face meeting. Taehyung keeps his eyes closed in pure, unbothered disinterest until the sheer audacity of the request finally sparks his curiosity. A sharp, intrigued smirk touches his lips as the boredom entirely evaporates. A private jet touches down on the tarmac, greeted by a grand red carpet welcome from rigid, anxious officials. Anderson the Almighty descends the stairs, basking in the spotlight with a smug, arrogant smirk at the sheer scale of his reception. The world's strongest awakener has arrived, entirely convinced of his own supremacy. Inside the jet, Anderson's subordinates chafe at the assignment, bitterly complaining about visiting such an insignificant country. Anderson cuts them off with a single authoritative command to stay quiet and not make a scene. But behind his calm exterior, a knowing smirk reveals that the Pentagon has far darker, specific goals for this trip. The countdown begins as Anderson adjusts his cuffs, his subordinates bristling with eager, violent anticipation. He gives them a cold, chilling promise that when the time comes, they are allowed to run completely wild. The United States' elite Wolf Team is officially unleashed. The briefing reveals the Pentagon's true agenda, laying out two distinct missions for their visit. The first is a simple recruitment pitch for Korea's new S-Class Awakener. But as the subordinate reveals the second, violently sinister objective, Anderson's eyes narrow with cold, murderous focus. The recruitment offer is nothing but a cover to evaluate Taehyung's actual strength and gauge the threat he poses. Anderson listens to the plan with a cold, arrogant smirk, declaring that if the Korean refuses to join them, he will thoroughly crush him. The sheer arrogance of the threat ignites a furious, crackling red energy in the shadows. Taehyung sips his drink in boredom until a news broadcast hypes up Ryan Anderson as the world's strongest awakener, wielding the legendary sword Excalibur. He scowls at the grandiose titles, thoroughly unimpressed by the mortal hype. But when White announces the Wolf Team has finally arrived, his boredom is instantly replaced by a sharp spark of interest. White practically vibrates with starstruck excitement, eager to meet the famous world's top-ranked awakener. She eagerly leads the way, completely oblivious to the dark, predatory smirk cutting across Taehyung's face. He follows her out, looking forward to testing his claws on the so-called strongest human alive. A visceral flashback of impaled bodies in the Yiwu realm reminds Taehyung of the brutal crucible that stripped away his humanity. He has faced gods and monsters in that bloody dimension, making the humans of this world feel like nothing more than fragile insects. Shaking off the dark memory, he follows White with a cool, analytical curiosity about the meeting ahead. Two predators size each other up through the glass, the air thick with unspoken challenges and quiet assessments. Taehyung reflects on the fragility of pure humans in this world, his thoughts interrupted as he finally comes face-to-face with Anderson. Their eyes lock in a silent, explosive collision of red and blue, instantly recognizing the lethal threat in the other. John Smith steps forward with a polished, welcoming smile, introducing himself as a representative of the United States Intelligence Service. Taehyung responds with a cold, dismissive hum, entirely unimpressed by the bureaucratic pleasantries. White glances nervously between the two men, feeling the suffocating weight of the standoff. Smith smoothly pivots past the awkwardness, gesturing to the entrance to introduce the true heavyweights of the United States. Three men in immaculate gold-trimmed suits step into the light, radiating quiet, predatory confidence. At their center stands Anderson, his blue eyes locked forward with the calm certainty of a man who already owns the room. Jensen steps forward with a polite introduction, his flawless Korean leaving White stunned and suspicious of a magic spell. But Taehyung doesn't even bother looking at him, his back half turned in bored disdain. The realization hits White like a physical blow. The world's strongest awakener isn't just unimpressed, he considers them entirely beneath his notice. Taehyung's red eye narrows as he silently assesses Anderson, recognizing the man is actually strong enough to have survived the dragon. The tension shatters when one of Anderson's own subordinates draws his gun, snarling an insult at the demon lord. Anderson moves with blinding speed to intercept his own man's arm, sharply reprimanding him for drawing unnecessary attention. The handshake becomes a silent, crushing battlefield as their grips lock in a collision of raw, unyielding wills. Anderson leans in with a sharp cultural taunt about Korean manners, trying to assert his dominance. Taehyung doesn't even blink, simply tightening his grip just enough to make the world's strongest awakener's confident smirk flicker in sudden doubt. One of Anderson's subordinates snaps, lunging forward to crush Taehyung himself, only to be frozen in place by his leader's lightning-fast grip. The room holds its breath as the two leaders lock hands, the sheer physical pressure of their clash threatening to shatter the air between them. Taehyung remains a picture of bored, predatory stillness, effortlessly matching the strength of the man hailed as humanity's peak. The confrontation erupts into violence as Brad, the subordinate who drew his weapon, is suddenly engulfed in searing, agonizing flames. Anderson stands perfectly still, his face a mask of cold fury as he snarls at his own idiotic man for picking a fight with a god. Half-shadowed and utterly serene, Taehyung speaks a single devastating word: disappear. A devastating slash of crimson energy tears through the air, launching Brad backward and sending him crashing through the window to plummet to his death. Anderson watches his team member fall, his arrogant smirk entirely replaced by a tight-jawed, calculating glare. The demonstration is over, and Taehyung has just drawn his line in blood. Taehyung casually calls a halt to the violence, instantly dissolving the wolf team's glowing auras and weapons into harmless golden particles. Anderson steps forward, his icy calm barely masking the threat in his blue eyes as he tries to reclaim some dignity. Taehyung ignores the jab completely, a faint, dismissive smirk playing on his lips as he asks a simple question. Anderson winces in pain from the crushing handshake, quietly ordering his subordinate to remove the lingering magical cloak from his arm. White panics, desperately trying to defuse the situation by offering their healers at headquarters. The wolf team watches her frantic scrambling, their expressions a mix of tension and cold calculation. Jensen coldly dismisses Brad's death, calling the fallen subordinate a little pest unworthy of his time. Anderson forces a thin, pained smile, swallowing the bitter humiliation of knowing Taehyung was right to swat him like a fly. In the dark shadows below, the wet tear of a blade confirms Brad's brutal, unceremonious end. Anderson leans in with a taunt about manners before smoothly pivoting to a formal offer to join the United States Awakener program. Taehyung cuts him off with a single, flat refusal that echoes through the room. Mary gasps in shock while Anderson blinks, his composure cracking at the sheer bluntness of the rejection. Anderson smirks, taunting that Taehyung secretly desires the challenger fighting him. Taehyung's eyes gleam with a predatory smile as he agrees, cutting through the diplomatic pretense to demand a fight right here and now. Anderson's blue eyes lock onto him, accepting the deadly challenge without a second thought. The office erupts into furious chaos as the wolf team's subordinates rage against Taehyung's blatant disrespect. Jensen snaps at a frozen White, demanding to know how anyone can stay calm after such a provocation. But a cold, dismissive voice cuts through the panic, reminding them that they are dealing with an S-Class monster whose arrogance is entirely justified. Anderson ruthlessly puts Jensen in his place, reminding him that he only belongs on the team because of a single lucky skill. The verbal crushing only fuels Jensen's explosive rage, sending him shooting to his feet with violent red energy crackling around him. He screams his absolute refusal to ever acknowledge the S-Class bastard who humiliated them. Jensen slams his fist on the table, bitterly screaming that they wouldn't have to bow down if the wolf team had another S-Class of their own. Anderson ignores the outburst entirely, his icy calm masking the unspoken truth that White sees clearly in his eyes. The world's strongest awakener is just as terrified of Taehyung as the rest of them. White stands her ground, declaring with defiant certainty that if her master truly wanted to, he would have ended all of them in an instant. Jensen erupts into wild, mocking laughter, violently grabbing her by the collar and screaming at her delusional loyalty. White doesn't flinch, staring him dead in the eye as she proclaims her absolute faith in her master. Another wolf team member leans back, guffawing at White's blind loyalty and sneering that she is free to be delusional all by herself. White's expression hardens into steely defiance, her blue eyes burning with absolute certainty as she fires back a sharp promise. She tells the creepy old man that his delusions of grandeur are about to crumble very soon. The confrontation moves to a vast, circular chamber, where Taehyung sits relaxed on a raised throne, looking down at a defiant Anderson. The American draws his sword, the blade erupting with a brilliant electric blue aura as he swears to kill the S-Class master himself. The two warriors stand as stark silhouettes against the blinding light, the pretense of diplomacy entirely shattered. Behind S, a suited observer watches the confrontation unfold on a wall of cascading data, realizing the entire clash was intentionally staged. He mutters that the goal was to test America's authority, watching the loading bars crawl across the screen. The analysis confirms a terrifying reality. The world is now locked in a standoff between two P-class monsters. Anderson questions Taehyung's decision to fight barehanded, acknowledging the vast power gap between them. A holographic system screen flickers to life, quantifying Taehyung's terrifying capabilities with heavenly swordsmanship and close combat skills. Anderson studies the data, his eyes narrowing as he mutters his ultimate goal under his breath: to defeat him. Anderson's own combat data materializes, revealing his level 5 weapon aura and slaughter skills as he insists they both fight with swords. Taehyung responds with casual menace, casually dropping that his heavenly swordsmanship is already at level 8. A galaxy of steel materializes around him, the blades spinning in the shadows as he playfully weighs his options. Taehyung sits upon a grand demonic throne, declaring his loyalty just as a massive, blinding portal erupts in the chamber. Anderson stares in absolute shock, his composure shattering as he recognizes the impossible magic system energy. A dark, caped silhouette steps through the rift, and Taehyung's voice cuts through the stunned silence as he presents a sword worthy of his opponent. Anderson proudly presents his beloved Thunderblade, smugly assuming Taehyung is just a melee fighter out of his depth. Taehyung smirks, flatly dismissing the observation by revealing his true nature as a Naga. His expression hardens into predatory focus as he declares he will handle the heavenly swordsmanship alone, the screen flashing the final, deadly confirmation he is ready. Anderson's patience finally snaps. He draws his Thunderblade and unleashes a devastating blue-white energy strike, roaring that he'll make Taehyung regret every arrogant word. Taehyung doesn't even flinch. He catches the full power strike with a single bare hand. The resulting shockwave shatters Anderson's sword and sends him ragdolling backward. The horrified onlookers realize the devastating truth. That wasn't an attack, it was just the passive pressure of Taehyung drawing his own blade. Staring at the hilt of his broken sword, Anderson realizes the horrifying gap in their power. Taehyung stands untouched in the rubble, offering a faint, condescending smirk as he murmurs that the strike was actually pretty good. Panic sets in. Anderson realizes Taehyung dodged his ultimate strike without even drawing his weapon. He launches a frenzied, desperate flurry of blue-white slashes, but Taehyung simply watches the display, completely unmoved. Battered and bleeding, Anderson grits his teeth and powers up, snarling that it's time to kick things up a notch. Taehyung watches the escalation with amused approval as Anderson unleashes a colossal, swirling wave of crimson energy. The crimson wave is instantly shredded by a torrent of vicious red slashes. Anderson is launched backward like a ragdoll, spitting blood in sheer agony as Taehyung coldly tells him not to let this be his end. The brutal counterslash annihilates the attack and slams Anderson into the earth with the force of thunder. He crashes into the rubble in a crumpled heap, his body completely broken as the sheer scale of his defeat is laid bare. Looking down at the shattered arena, Taehyung repeats his chilling warning, "Don't let this be his end." Anderson can only gasp out a broken plea, his eyes wide with the horrifying realization of the abyss between them as the ground crumbles beneath his weight. Spiraling into memory, Anderson recalls the level 5 monster known as the Bone Collector, a beast whose dense bones nearly killed him. He forged his current blade from that S-Class monster's remains, channeling its indestructible legacy into a final, desperate hope. Summoning the last shred of his will, Anderson materializes a blade of pure, pale blue light forged from his enemy's bones. Gripping the indestructible weapon with both hands, he declares that he who wields Excalibur should never be broken. Taehyung's casual amusement vanishes, replaced by a cold, suffocating killing intent. Recognizing the strength of the bone blade, his eyes burn with a sinister purple light as he declares he will now fight with the intent to kill. A frantic observer screams in terror as a brutal system message flashes across the monitors, "Slaughter." Anderson raises his vibrating bone blade, but Taehyung merely tilts his head, analyzing the dangerous frequency of the new weapon with cold curiosity. Anderson lunges with desperate force, but his strike is deflected with a single, effortless motion. A dark, predatory grin spreads across Taehyung's face as his eyes burn with twisted excitement, demanding that Anderson shill him more. Taehyung leans in, demanding to see every skill Anderson has as he effortlessly blocks another desperate strike. In the observation room, a suited official clutches his head in sheer panic, realizing this is no longer a duel, but a slaughter that could spark an international incident. Helpless to intervene, the agents can only watch the high-speed clash of red and blue energy, admitting that only an S-Class can stop another. Mary stares at the devastation, quietly insisting that Taehyung will be fine, though her eyes betray her underlying dread. Mary tries to convince herself that Taehyung will show restraint to protect the facility, but a massive impact splatters blood across the monitors. Her confidence evaporates instantly as John Smith nervously rationalizes the violence, while Mary remains visibly terrified. Smith's worst fears crystallize as the catastrophic clash between the two S-Class fighters threatens to bring the entire building down. Car-sized chunks of stone and twisted metal are hurled across the arena, the infrastructure crumbling under the sheer, unbridled violence of their exchange. Calmly noting that the building is about to collapse, Taehyung watches Anderson grit his teeth and roar that he is the strongest in mankind. Charging as a streak of blue light, Anderson pours every ounce of his defiance into a final, desperate strike. The collision sends them tumbling, but Taehyung straightens first, barely winded and openly enjoying the fight. He admits he'd love to keep going, but his tone turns deadly as his demonic form materializes, warning that the lesser beings in the building are in danger. Anderson collapses with a pained gasp, thrown back by a force he simply cannot withstand. Taehyung stands over him, wielding a blade of dark, swirling energy as his demonic aura flares, his glowing red eyes delivering a chilling final warning. Not here. Taehyung's demonic aura floods the arena, pressing down on Anderson with the weight of gravity itself. Primal terror overrides his pride as he raises his blade in a desperate guard, only for a colossal, crimson-eyed shadow to descend and unleash a blinding red slash. The attack slices through empty air as Taehyung dodges with fluid ease, casually mocking Anderson for his terrible, nervous swing. The self-proclaimed strongest man in mankind freezes in absolute horror, realizing to his own shock that his body is trembling. Screaming in disbelief, Anderson watches as Taehyung unleashes a devastating wind strike, a violent vortex of blue energy that slams into him mid-air. He crashes to the ground, his face a mask of utter shock as the overwhelming force completely shatters his remaining hope. The blue energy tears through Anderson, sending him to his knees as he chokes on his own blood. Looming over him with suffocating contempt, Taehyung delivers a crushing verdict. Arrogance is a privilege of the strong, and Anderson is just a weak man who got lucky. Taehyung's cold red eyes deliver a final, cutting sentence. Anderson can't even trust himself. A catastrophic explosion of blue energy blasts the broken man backward through the air as Taehyung lowers his blade and chillingly announces the finishing move. In a sterile medical bay, White clenches her fists, her golden-purple energy flaring with newfound resolve to defend her master. Her determination is immediately met with John Smith's dismissive sneer, mocking her for trying to fight an SSS-Class when she's only a B-Class. Remembering Taehyung's words to never let anyone look down on her, White's eyes blaze with blue light. She echoes her master's teachings with unwavering conviction, stepping forward to confront the seasoned intelligence agent who dares to insult him. Pointing a glowing finger directly at the U.S. agent, White steadily declares that he will regret insulting her master. Smith flinches back in genuine shock, his confidence cracking as the subordinate he dismissed actually moves to strike. Ignoring the tension, White agrees with her own resolve and unleashes a devastating blast of golden power. The impact slams into Smith with a thunderous crash, knocking the seasoned agent clean off his feet and sending him hurtling backward through the air. Smith crashes through a wall in a shower of debris, screaming in agony as Jensen calmly asks if he's really trying to slit a guest's throat. White watches the agents argue, her face a mask of cold fury, deciding that Jensen deserves to die for insulting her master. Slumping to the floor, White snarls at Brad to finish what he started, prompting the agent to erupt into a violent blaze of orange flame. Shaking off Jensen's attempt to stop him, Brad rockets forward in a streak of blue kinetic energy, screaming for a fight. Brad rockets backward with a thunderous crash, his body smashing through the corridor and slumping to the ground, utterly defeated. White stands tall amidst the rubble, a soft, satisfied breath escaping her lips as the reality of the Demon Lord's return burns into the aftermath. The bespectacled agent reassures a stunned Mary that Anderson survived, but is heading to medical, his voice cracking with awe at the realization that Taehyung just defeated America's greatest awakener. His shock quickly melts into unguarded hope, declaring that with Taehyung, their dreams are finally possible. Taehyung instantly shuts down the officials' excited whispers about using him to surpass the US and China, his voice dropping to a dangerous chill. He makes it brutally clear that he has zero interest in humanity's petty political games and warns them never to try and use him. In a ruined corridor, Nuri finds himself trapped as massive ice crystals erupt from the walls, freezing the hallway into a prison. He merely studies the towering ice with a thoughtful hum, completely unfazed by White, who launched the assault. Nuri conjures a shimmering blade of pure ice, deciding that White isn't a worthy enough fighter to warrant a full power strike. His calm calculation is shattered when White lunges with a furious scream, only to be instantly countered by a massive crystalline fist of ice slamming into her midsection. Nuri roars his command, unleashing a brutal wave of ice that completely engulfs White, locking her limbs and freezing the breath in her lungs. She crumples to the ground with a strangled gasp, her documents scattering as the relentless cold drains the fight from her completely. Gasping for air, White's fierce loyalty is crushed by the agonizing realization that she cannot win against such overwhelming power. Before Nuri can deliver a final blow, a suited agent strides in, ordering him to stop and warning that their fighting will only bring deeper trouble. The suited agent steps forward, his black-gloved hand shooting out to seize Nuri by the face, muffling his protests instantly. Without a word of ceremony, he hoists the ice wielder over his shoulder and drags him away, leaving nothing but the ruined hallway behind. Taehyung clamps his hand around Nuri's throat, his grip tightening with lethal ease as ice crystals freeze midair around them. A furious suited agent screams and lunges forward, but a brutal wave of ice suddenly explodes from below, engulfing the corridor in a blinding surge of frozen shards. White's hand clamps around Nuri's throat, choking off his breath as she slams him backward into the wall with bone-jarring force. She lifts him bodily and hurls him through the corridor, striding through the settling debris to stand over her decisively defeated opponent. Taehyung's presence dominates the space, his red eyes burning with a cold, unsettling intensity as the shadows bleed into deep crimson. A low, electric crackle cuts through the silence, his dark hair whipping around his face as an immense, coalescing power begins to stir within him. A violent clash of purple energy drives Taehyung backward, his feet carving deep grooves into the floor before he counters with a deafening blue-white energy shield. Sweat beads on his temple, but his gaze shifts to a cold, calculated fury as his aura explodes outward, turning a menacing dark red. Standing over White's bloody body, Taehyung's voice drops to a terrifying, possessive fury, roaring that they dared to touch what is his. He crushes his grip with a savage spray of blood, leaving a watching agent pale and stammering in disbelief. A chilling voice echoes through the blood-soaked aftermath, declaring that they will now pay with their lives. Amidst the settling dust, a battered White struggles to her feet, gasping out her unwavering loyalty to her master as Taehyung looms over her. Taehyung's presence becomes a crushing weight as he tells his bleeding subordinate that she did well, and he is here now. White tries to weakly report on the team's status, but he cuts her off with an absolute command, his red eyes promising utter destruction to whoever hurt her. A frantic radio report shatters the silence, screaming that Anderson is down as Jensen stammers in stunned disbelief. Holding the injured White close, Taehyung radiates a cold, final authority, decreeing that they must get the hell out of this country before he changes his mind. News broadcasts flicker to life, revealing that the Wolf team canceled all public events after their mysterious meeting with South Korea's S-Class Awakener. The bespectacled agent slumps against a wall in exhaustion, his frustration boiling over as he slams a fist into the couch, unable to pin down the shifting geopolitical reality. In a quiet room, Aries guild leader Kim Un-suk sighs, admitting they can no longer ignore the situation. A woman calmly suggests they meet him first, but a red-haired agent holding a gun turns with a cold, deliberate look, ordering them to move without room for argument. Mary recoils in exasperation as her colleagues casually joke about the situation, protesting that she just moved and can't leave now. Her frustration peaks as a massive crowd of photographers swarms outside, their flashing cameras aimed directly at their location. Flashbulbs blind the entrance as the world discovers the Demon Lord's location. A panicked agent stammers about Taehyung's hatred for attention, but Mary cuts him off with a desperate pitch, a fully furnished, completely isolated private island. She begs him to just look at it once. Taehyung stands with his arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. Taehyung closes his eyes, letting the silence stretch until the room's temperature plummets. The blonde agent eagerly paints a picture of their dream sanctuary, but a blunt, disinterested hum shatters the mood. She instantly recoils in terror while Mary's heart sinks. She just pushed a monster too far. Then, his voice cuts through the suffocating dread with a single, casual agreement. He accepts the island and orders them to move immediately, shattering Mary's panic into stunned relief. The suffocating city fades from their minds, replaced by the sun-drenched promise of their new sanctuary. The blonde agent proudly presents the isolated resort, while Mary rattles off an exhaustive list of amenities, including a secret underground dueling room. Taehyung surveys the lavish property with quiet, terrifying authority, his back turned to the breathtaking view. With the crisis averted, the agent pivots to official business, handing Mary a letter from the United States government. The proposal demands a formal defense cooperation agreement between their S-Class awakeners, but the real weight lies in the fine print, a mutual defense pact against enemies too massive for any single nation to handle. Taehyung dismisses the American proposal with chilling apathy, stating he wishes their enemies would just perish. But his casual curse becomes reality instantly as a colossal, menacing figure steps onto the rocky horizon. The turquoise waters ripple under the monster's ground-shaking stride, and Taehyung's shadow flares with dark, hungry energy. Taehyung's red eyes lock onto the colossal silhouette, his lips curving into a dangerous, predatory smile. Mary freezes in absolute terror as the new enemy takes a ground-shaking step forward. Taehyung's dark energy erupts, ready to slaughter the very threat he just invoked. The blonde agent frantically pitches a dedicated support team, but Taehyung cuts through the noise with cold authority. He agrees, but makes it clear he will personally choose the members, instantly seizing control of their game. The agent melts into frantic relief, eager to please the demon lord. The agent gushes that this is a dream come true, accidentally slipping that she wishes they had just bought the island for themselves. Taehyung flatly shuts down the greed, then seizes her around the waist in a blur of motion. The world streaks into a blur as he launches them both into the sky at breathtaking speed. Massive dark wings flare wide, and Taehyung launches them into the stratosphere, leaving the ground far behind. The agent's initial scream of terror melts into wide-eyed wonder as they streak over the brilliant turquoise ocean. He touches down on the island's edge with effortless, terrifying grace. A suited manager snaps to attention as Taehyung touches down, his massive dark wings folded behind him like a predator claiming territory. The sheer spectacle of his arrival silences the manicured gardens and the line of waiting staff. The blonde agent stumbles forward, still catching her breath from the aerial assault. Manager Gregory declares this their new home, his voice firm as he addresses the tense staff. Taehyung surveys the grounds with calm authority, asking if they arrived too early, but Gregory assures him the entire team has been waiting. The staff bows in deep unison as the demon lord walks past, accepting their absolute deference without a single glance. Taehyung offers a simple, satisfied approval as Gregory ushers them into the lavish villa. The blonde agent gapes at the hotel-like interior, but Taehyung's eyes sweep past the decor to lock onto a rigid, white-haired butler. He isn't here for the showroom, he demands to see what the butler has got. The butler snaps his gloves with crisp confidence, promising the demon lord will be pleased. The island's amenities are immediately put on display, from a lavish feast and expertly mixed drinks to women enthusiastically pounding away on traditional drums. Even the demon lord takes a moment to breathe, lounging in swim trunks while his agent splashes joyfully in the crystal blue water. Gregory poses the critical question of whether he is satisfied, and Taehyung finally lets a hint of approval break through his stoicism. He admits it's not bad, a rare moment of peace before the storm. That peace shatters as a helicopter's roar violently whips the palm fronds, descending onto the island. The blonde agent stares up in shock, but Gregory steps forward to meet the newcomer with a calm, loaded greeting. "It's been a while," he says, hiding a dangerous history beneath his casual tone. Gregory pivots to introductions, presenting Lee Eugene, a tall, sharp-eyed A-class awakener joining the support team. As Eugene steps forward with quiet confidence, the blonde agent's expression sours. She sizes up the new arrival with immediate, dripping suspicion, recognizing a rival for Taehyung's attention. The new arrivals stare at the S-Class awakener, utterly unimpressed by the kid sipping a drink. The brown-haired woman scoffs at his youth, but the blonde agent snaps back with a polite but firm smile, reminding them it's common sense to greet the master of the house. The brown-haired woman sneers that a kid has no place here, prompting a flustered, furious defense of her age from the blonde agent. Taehyung doesn't even look up from his drink. He delivers a flat, cutting ultimatum. If they're just gonna waste his time, they can leave. The man in the suit immediately bows and grovels, but Taehyung just finds it funny. He turns his clinical gaze to the arrogant A-class awakener, stating that while arrogance is a right, she should recognize the gap between them. The air shatters. A torrent of dark crimson energy explodes outward, blood-red tendrils whipping through the space. The oppressive weight of Taehyung's aura locks the brown-haired woman's muscles completely, reducing her A-class power to a child's toy. She can only gasp in sheer terror as her vision distorts under the crushing pressure. Taehyung dismisses her with a cold humph, leaving her collapsed and trembling on the ground. The brown-haired woman pants in raw terror, convinced she just froze to death, while her companion bows deeply to apologize. Gregory smoothly steps in, declaring he's intrigued and orders them to follow. The blonde agent turns to follow, a sudden thought catching in her throat. The blonde agent wheels on Lee Yoo-jin, furious at being treated like a child, and declares she is more than good enough to stand by her master's side. Energy crackles around her in a silent declaration of war against being dismissed. She turns away with sharp finality, leaving Yoo-jin to issue a cold, equally weighted farewell. The blonde agent issues a direct challenge, demanding they fight with all their strength to see who is truly stronger. The brown-haired awakener meets her gaze with quiet resolve, accepting the terms without hesitation. Crimson energy erupts around her as her system activates, red veins threading across her skin and her eye blazing with copied power. The blonde agent screams her command to change, and violent bursts of red light spiral around her body as she pushes her shape-shifting powers to the absolute limit. Taehyung watches the spectacle with a calm, confident smirk, his dark eyes gleaming with genuine intrigue. He quietly promises to give it his all, pleased to finally see something worth watching. The blonde agent freezes in shock as a violent explosion of crimson and black energy rips through the air. A suited observer watches with clinical curiosity, but the smoke clears to reveal a nightmare. Lee Yoo-jin emerges in a monstrous mid-transformation state, her body sprouting massive claws and a jaw full of razor teeth. A holographic system interface flashes across Taehyung's vision, dissecting her combat profile and skills with cold precision. He murmurs that her raw specs are nothing special, comparing her to the monstrous shapeshifters of the demon world, but he admits the ability itself is interesting, his red eyes narrowing as he searches for what makes her unique. Taehyung's smirk sharpens into genuine surprise as Lee Yoo-jin's monstrous form shifts and grows, limbs twisting with crackling red energy. He never expected her to copy another being, let alone a high-level entity. The blonde agent pales in horror as grotesque horns erupt from Lee Yoo-jin's skull, signaling a terrifying leap in power. The blonde agent's face goes slack as she recognizes the monster, Red Horn, the level 4 Dark Angel from the Korean University Gate. Taehyung confirms it with dark amusement, calling it an old nemesis returned. He turns to his subordinate and asks what she will do, watching silently as she steps forward into the confrontation. The blonde agent steps up to the monster that slaughtered her people, her blue eyes burning with a cold, happy fury. She isn't scared, she's thrilled to finally make it pay. She charges with her sword flashing, but the Dark Angel just chuckles at the attempt before a brutal, sickening crunch sends a figure crumpling to the ground. Refusing to stay down, the blonde agent surges forward in a blur, dodging a massive claw swipe with fluid precision. Her sword glints as she finds an opening, slashing upward before darting past its guard. She slams her shoulder into the colossal beast, using its own momentum to send the monster stumbling backward. The cliffside compound violently rumbles from the shockwaves, but Gregory just calmly sips his drink, assuring his staff they'll get used to it. Outside, the battlefield erupts in blinding light as Lee Yoo-jin, now fully transformed into a copied Dark Angel, clashes with Red Horn in a brutal, high-speed duel. The monster recoils in shock, baffled by the sheer strength packed into such a small body. The blonde agent's eyes burn with defiance as she locks onto Lee Yoo-jin's monstrous form, roaring that she possesses the power of an enemy too. She launches forward in a blur, her blade flashing with crimson light to cleave through the Dark Angel copy. But the monstrous Yoo-jin is faster, meeting the clash with a devastating shockwave that violently hurls the agent backward. Lee Yoo-jin's monstrous form descends with savage fury, her claws and horned limbs slamming into the agent with devastating force. Blood sprays from the blow as the raw power sends the blonde agent spiraling through the air like a rag doll. She crashes hard into the ground, skidding to a broken stop while her towering opponent lands triumphantly behind her. The blonde agent refuses to yield, her body a blur of red and blue energy as she meets the monstrous Red Horn head-on. Even when caught by a brutal strike of crimson power, she twists in midair, already launching a defiant counterattack. She descends from the sky like a streak of light, aiming a devastating blow straight at the heart of the enemy. Lee Yoo-jin's monstrous form crackles with stolen crimson energy, unleashing a devastating slash that blasts the blonde agent skyward. A suited observer stammers in shock, realizing the monster hasn't just copied the appearance, but the exact combat skills of the Dark Angel. The agent ragdolls through the air, utterly overpowered by her own mirrored strength. A suited man screams in panic as Lee Yoo-jin's monstrous form lunges forward, taunting the blonde agent with a confident grin. But the agent detonates a violent explosion of red energy right in the monster's face. The smoke clears to reveal Li Yujin's form cracked and splintered, dark fluid leaking from the gashes as her confident demeanor shatters. Plummeting from the sky, the blonde agent rights herself, her blade igniting with a blinding streak of crimson light. She smashes through Li Yujin's guard with a massive shockwave, the impact cracking and splintering the monstrous frame. Dark fluid erupts from the gashes as the colossal creature staggers and collapses, utterly defeated. The blonde agent stares down her opponent with seething fury, but a sharp, annoyed voice cuts through the air. Taehyung crosses his arms and declares the fight over, his tone leaving absolutely no room for argument. The monstrous red horn form instantly crumbles, its copy power dissolving as Li Yujin falls to the ground. Taehyung stands with absolute authority as the blonde agent kneels before him, declaring her fierce loyalty with a resounding "Yes, master." Behind her, a humiliated Li Yujin pants out a bitter admission, conceding that despite her superior specs, she lost because her opponent exploited her weaknesses. Taehyung's hand firmly grips the blonde agent's chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. Mary gazes upward with desperate determination, but Taehyung flatly refuses to take her under his wing, bluntly telling her she's still a newborn taking her first steps. The rejection hits her like a gut punch, but his gaze sharpens into a dangerous smile. He casually offers to be her sparring opponent instead, leaving Mary in absolute shock. Taehyung casually notes it's getting late and someone should have sensed it by now, leaving a bewildered Mary completely in the dark. The comms line erupts. A suited official screams into his phone, his face drained of color as he reports a catastrophe in Japan. The final gut punch lands. Osaka is gone, swallowed by an apocalyptic firestorm. Ashes drift across the ocean as the world holds its breath. High above the clouds, White watches her blonde companion casually devour a pastry, questioning why she always insists on running everywhere. The light mood shatters as a cold voice cuts in, reminding them that they are heading straight into a battle where they will risk their lives. A composed man in a black suit lays out the grim reality on his tablet. An unknown gate opened in Osaka an hour ago. Japan's elite awakeners were deployed to suppress the threat, but every single one of them was wiped out. The city and its defenders are simply gone. The suited man delivers the horrifying truth. The single enemy from the Osaka gate is a level 8, the strongest threat humanity has ever recorded. Mary's confident demeanor shatters into sheer horror, and she frantically blurts out a lie about motion sickness to hide her terror. White sees right through it, starkly reminding her of the nightmare they are flying toward. Mary forces a wavering smile, trying to convince herself that saving people makes the terror worth it, but White cuts through the fear with absolute, unshakable certainty, stating simply that they have their master. She sizes up the level 8 threat with cold calculation, completely unfazed by a monster stronger than the dragon she previously fought. The level 8 enemy reveals itself in the apocalyptic ruins of Osaka, a monstrous, spider-like nightmare with dozens of glowing red eyes and massive mandibles. It lets out a thunderous roar, its thoughts betraying a terrifying anticipation for a real fight. Below, the commercial jet streaks through a sky choked with red fire, carrying the only hope left. The plane cuts through the smoke-choked sky as they enter Japanese airspace, but Taehyung doesn't wait for the descent. Standing at the open hatch with the wind whipping his coat, he states he'll go first and drops into the crimson haze. A titanic crash tears through the ruins of Osaka, sending a massive shockwave of debris erupting outward. Inside the plane, Mary frantically fumbles with her parachute harness, clearly out of her depth. White steps in with amused exasperation, efficiently tightening the straps while reminding her they teach this at the Awakener Academy. She places a firm, steadying hand on Mary's shoulder, offering a quiet mix of reassurance and steel before the drop. Mary is about to jump out of a plane into a burning apocalypse, and she's terrified she can't even tie her own belt. Surrounded by calm, battle-hardened Awakeners, she feels utterly useless. Li Yujin flashes a reassuring smile, insisting Mary is strong enough. Yujin puffs out her chest, declaring herself the stronger one of the two, leaving Mary to nod in quiet agreement. Then, the order drops, jump on the count of 3. Yujin doesn't hesitate. She squeezes her eyes shut and drops straight into the crimson smoke below. Mary's face freezes in pure panic. She stammers a breathless protest, but gravity takes over. She's falling too, her scream tearing through the burning sky of Osaka all the way down. Mary plummets, her terrified scream echoing through the haze. The ground rushes up to meet her, except it isn't the ground. Her feet slam directly into the monstrous, multi-eyed head of the level 8 spider with a sickening crunch. Down below, Taehyung watches her crash into the beast and lets out a dismissive scoff. The spider unleashes a guttural, vibrating growl, its dozens of red eyes glowing with pure malice. Tae-young locks his gaze onto the colossal creature, noting its massive size with casual indifference. A massive blade of purple energy materializes in his grip. He smirks, deciding to give the monster a greeting worthy of its scale. The spider roars, enraged by the impact of Mary's landing, and Tae-young launches himself forward, his blade slicing through the ash-choked air. The purple energy blade cleaves down with deafening force. Amidst the rubble, a terrified Japanese awakener named Koharu sits surrounded by her fallen comrades. She stares up at the level 8 spiders, dozens of glowing red eyes frozen in horror. Resignation washes over her face as she accepts her death, only for a blinding pillar of white energy to erupt in the distance, shaking the very foundations of the battlefield. The spider creature's massive red eyes glare through the smoke, growling as it shakes off the impact. Debris scatters across the ruins. A purple-haired woman stares upward, her face locked in slack-jawed shock at the sheer scale of the monster. The dust and smoke part behind her, revealing a towering silhouette stepping through the apocalypse. Lee Yoo-jin rockets downward through the smoke, her dark wings and horns cutting through the crimson haze. She plummets at terrifying speed, landing hard in a controlled, deliberate stance, her white harness strapped tight. Behind her, the purple-haired woman is already on the ground, standing calmly in the wasteland as Yoo-jin rises, ready for war. A titanic shockwave of white energy scatters the debris. Mary lies on the ground, face scratched and dirty, eyes snapping open as Yoo-jin stands over her, declaring they are reinforcements from Korea. Mary turns her head, her gaze locking onto the monstrous level 8 spider. Its massive, jagged mandibles loom directly before her, a single glowing red eye burning with predatory focus. Tae-hung looks upward, his dark wings bristling as Yoo-jin stands tall, impressed by the anomaly before them. The colossal spider rumbles in disgust, calling Tae-hung ugly. Tae-hung agrees he's never seen anything like it either. The beast unleashes an earth-shattering roar as a system interface materializes, identifying the entity as Ken Ichijo Kaduoki. Tae-hung reads the scrolling system data, his eyes narrowing. The creature's unique spec is deity, boasting maxed-out poison and hidden powers. This isn't just a monster, it's a god. A smirk curls his lips as he hovers in the air, dark wings spread against the crimson sky. He mocks the beast, asking if it's an exiled god as its ancient fury boils to the surface. The spider god rumbles about the anomaly, but Tae-hyung's smirk only deepens. He spreads his dark wings and drops his own bombshell. He's an exiled god too. Without another word, he rockets forward, a streak of dark energy. His purple blade cleaves downward in a devastating arc, testing the ancient creature's might with a cataclysmic crash. Tae-young's dark wings snap wide as he plummets from the sky, diving straight toward the colossal spider. His strike crashes into Ken Ichijo Kaduoki with devastating force, erupting in a shockwave that sends debris flying. The creature's cluster of red eyes flickers and cracks from the sheer brutality of the hit, letting out a guttural roar of pain. Tae-young's energy blade strikes the spider god with cataclysmic force, cracking its eyes and sending violent shockwaves through its colossal body. The ancient creature is driven back, shuddering under the assault. Below, the ruined cityscape is pelted with falling debris, chunks of the beast and shattered buildings raining down as the god-tier clash tears through the air. Mary is seized from behind by a dark, clawed hand, letting out a terrified scream as she falls backward onto the rubble. The colossal spider god rears up with a furious cry. Lee Yoo-jin crouches in the ruins, looking up with a determined expression as Mary stares in slack-jawed shock at the monster. As the spider god roars, struck by a massive unseen attack, Yoo-jin calmly states that it's her master. Mary stammers in confusion as the translation magic clarifies Yoo-jin's words. Below, Tae-hyung is a whirlwind of dark energy, his purple blade clashing directly with the spider god. Mary asks in disbelief if he's an awakener, not an enemy. Yoo-jin beams with pride, confirming it and telling her not to worry about the disgusting spider. Her reassurance is cut short as a dark clawed hand seizes Mary from behind again. The blonde woman in the gothic dress spins on the pink-haired woman, furious, snapping that she's no better than the SSS-Classes. She swats the pink-haired woman's hand away, storming off and declaring she doesn't need help. The pink-haired woman's gaze sharpens, coldly calling her disrespectful to the people who saved her life, and mocking her as nothing more than an A-class whiner. The pink-haired woman's fury boils over, but she cuts herself off, warning that they shouldn't be chatting. A grotesque cracking sound rattles through the ruins as dark, chitinous legs split through the ground. Dozens of glowing red eyes materialize in the darkness. More legs burst through with relentless force, a monstrous spider-like entity rising from the shadows with terrible power. The grotesque cracking reaches a deafening pitch as dark, chitinous legs tear through the ground, exploding upward. Mary watches in frozen horror as the monstrous spider form fully materializes, its glowing red eyes glaring down. The pink-haired woman, now surrounded by the creature's terrifying limbs, turns to Mary with urgent defiance, declaring the argument over and insisting they fight for their lives. Taehyung's blade of dark energy drives straight through the spider god's massive head, erupting from the other side in a spray of sparks and ichor. He follows with a savage, energy-charged punch that collides directly with the creature's cluster of eyes. The sound of shattering chitin is deafening as Ken Ichijo Kataoki lets out an agonized roar, its ancient body battered and driven back. Something hurtles through the air at terrifying speed, tumbling with a choked gasp. Taehyung drives forward, energy crackling along his arm, and delivers a contemptuous strike that detonates against the spider creature's massive form. The shockwave tears across the ruined cityscape, carving a violent trench through the streets as the colossal body crashes into the ground. The spider god mocks Taehyung, noting his agitation. Taehyung's fists clench, his face a mask of fury as he draws his dark steel blade. He admits his frustration, confessing his sword can't reach the colossal beast. The ground erupts with a deafening alien shriek as dozens of glowing red eyes surge from the shadows, cutting his tactical honesty short. Taehyung's eyes blaze red with resolve. He decides to show the god what he's made of. Cracks of energy spiderweb across his body as a monstrous transformation begins. Labels flash around him. Behemoth's heart, dragon's blood, magic dragon's bone, giant's skin. With a ground-shaking roar, he erupts into his true, colossal, demonic dragon form, declaring he's appearing in his true form for the first time in this world. The spider god's counterattack descends like a living avalanche of malevolent red orbs. The pink-haired woman's monstrous spider form crouches in frozen terror as the glowing cluster fills the sky. A violent storm of red energy tears through the area, whip-like tendrils lashing downward with brutal impacts. Mary and the pink-haired woman huddle together amidst the devastation, blood spattering as they shield themselves from the onslaught. A massive, red, chitinous leg scratches against the rubble. The pink-haired woman, fully transformed into a monstrous spider entity, stands her ground against the looming god. She spreads her limbs wide, challenging the deity to leave Mary and survive. The air erupts in a titanic clash of energy, raw force smashing together and shattering the ground, sending a storm of debris and blinding light exploding outward. Taehyung's demon wings erupt with a raw, guttural roar as he dives into a blur of motion. The world becomes a streak of red and black as he plummets downward, a comet of pure destructive force. He screams through the air, his furious battle cry tearing ahead of him, aimed directly at the spider god below. Taehyung's demonic dragon form screams downward, plunging straight into the swarm of malevolent red orbs. The spider god shrieks as the two forces meet head-on. Taehyung punches straight through the barrage, his transformed body tearing through the floating eyes like paper. The orbs shatter and burst around him as he carves a path straight through the counterattack, crashing into the battlefield below in a pillar of smoke and dark energy. Taehyung, locked in his colossal demonic dragon form, lets his fist do the talking. He lunges, his red glowing fist connecting with the spider god's massive head with a brutal, skull-cracking impact. He rains down blow after blow, each punch landing with the force of a collapsing mountain. The creature's eyes dim and crack under the sustained barrage, driven backward by the onslaught of this other exiled god. Taehyung keeps up the relentless assault in his true demonic dragon form. The spider god's remaining eyes unleash a desperate barrage of energy blasts, but Taehyung doesn't slow down. He punches straight through the glowing projectiles, his fist shattering them with explosive force. With a final, ground-shaking roar, he breaks completely through the last line of defense, descending directly upon the overwhelmed god. Mary screams in terror as debris rains down. The pink-haired woman takes a brutal hit meant for her, jolting from the impact as she tries to shield the blonde. From above, Taehyung descends like a meteor, wings blazing. He obliterates the spider god's remaining defenses, his dive tearing through energy blasts with sheer force. His final, diving strike crashes into Ken Ichijo Kataoki with a deafening roar, signaling absolute destruction. Taehyung's demonic dragon form lands punishing, echoing blows against the spider god. Between strikes, he growls a cold, absolute truth. Everyone has a weakness. His eyes burn with conviction as he rears back, wings flaring wide in a terrifying display of power. He promises to see if the god can take what comes next, the threat hanging heavy in the charged air. Taehyung's colossal demonic dragon head slams forward, his single glowing red eye burning with divine fury. The impact shatters the spider god's defenses with a sickening crunch. His full titanic form looms behind, a nightmare of white hair, horns, and massive wings. His fist, dripping with ichor, punches clean through the creature's body. His red eyes flash with cold certainty as the spider god's life force visibly drains. purple energy erupts from the impact site as the spider god's cluster of eyes floods with shock and disbelief. Through the swirling dark smoke, Taehyung's monstrous form emerges like a nightmare-given flesh, his single burning red eye locked on his prey. Someone gasps in horrified recognition, but the words die in their throat. Taehyung drives forward through the chaos, the spider god's shattered defenses crumbling before him. The spider god's swarm of red eyes floods the sky with malevolent, pulsating energy. But Taehyung doesn't flinch. In his colossal demonic dragon form, he slams forward, his massive arm driving through the barrage. His fist shatters the glowing orbs like glass. With a sickening wet crunch, the spider god's cluster of eyes explodes outward in a shower of ichor, its life force draining under his unrelenting assault. Taehyung's monstrous form suddenly halts. His single red eye widens in shock as a thick, purple-black energy seeps into him. He mutters that it's no ordinary venom, groaning in deep, guttural pain as the all-annihilating poison engulfs him. Miles away, White's expression turns fierce as she brandishes a massive dark blade, slicing through a swarm of red spider creatures and declaring she'll have to handle it. White's blade whistles through the air as she slices through another red creature, shouting for her subordinate to get as far away as possible. Below, Mary flees in absolute terror, a monstrous red-clawed hand reaching for her from the darkness. She screams as she runs, the spider god's glowing red eyes burning from the shadows, its colossal form surrounded by a menacing purple aura. The all-annihilating venom courses through Taehyung, and his demonic dragon form buckles. He snarls at White for not mentioning the poison sooner, as the corruption spreads visibly through his monstrous body. Below, Mary looks up in terrified confusion, stammering that she didn't do anything, only to be seized from behind by a massive red-clawed spider limb erupting from the shadows, lifting her violently off the ground. White screams at Mary to run for her life, shoving the terrified girl towards safety. Her blade, already straining, is visibly corroded by the venom's touch, a clear sign of the annihilating power at work. Taehyung, through gritted teeth, acknowledges the divine force coursing through him, but even as he speaks, the corruption spreads. He roars in defiance, beginning to fight back against the poison's grip. Taehyung's demonic dragon form blazes with defiant fury. He roars that no poison can withstand the breath of a fire dragon. His body erupts in an inferno, scales glowing white-hot as he unleashes a cataclysmic stream of fire. Searing orange and yellow consume the battlefield, the flames coiling into a vortex of raw power. He snarls that a beast once called a god will be consumed by fire, unleashing the full force of his breath. Taehyung's fire breath meets the spider god head-on, a cataclysmic collision of golden inferno and pulsing purple divine energy. The two forces tear into each other, roaring flames clashing against the spider god's malevolent red eyes. The impact warps reality itself, energy rippling outward in waves of destruction as the divine fire dragon's breath attempts to consume the ancient deity whole. The fiery torrent collides with the spider god's pulsating purple energy. For a moment, it seems the inferno will consume the god whole, but the ancient deity's will is absolute, the malevolent energy surging and refusing to die. However, the corrosive venom deep within Taehyung finds its opening. His monstrous body begins to glow with a sickening internal heat, the poison searing through his scales as White watches in dawning horror. The all-annihilating poison tears through Taehyung's body, purple corruption seeping deep into his demonic dragon flesh. He grits his teeth, acknowledging it's the poison of a god that kills everything. White confirms very few beings have ever survived it. But Taehyung's lips curl into a defiant grin. His eyes blaze through the corruption as he tells the spider god he's a special case, his body erupting with green and purple lightning. Taehyung's body erupts with virulent green energy, streams of it pouring from his monstrous form. He declares he has the Hydra's blood within him, a power that can negate any poison since it originally contains poison itself. The spider god's cluster of red eyes floods with shock as its ultimate weapon meets a power born from poison. The corruption devouring Taehyung begins to reverse, the green Hydra's blood winning. The spider god lets out a furious, guttural roar, its red eyes burning with rage and disbelief as its divine venom is actively negated. A cataclysmic explosion of energy erupts across the battlefield. Taehyung's demonic dragon form, now empowered by the Hydra's blood, slams through the god's body with devastating force, shredding chitin and spraying ichor. White watches with a fierce grin as Taehyung declares it's time to finish this. Taehyung's demonic dragon form blazes with absolute authority, his red wings unfurling like the petals of a hellscape. He steps forward, and the world cracks. A devastating barrage of impacts tears through the spider god, each strike landing with cataclysmic force. The ancient deity is being dismantled, its red eyes flickering in terror. Mary watches from below, a fierce, relieved smile breaking across her face as her master erases a god from existence. The spider god's massive form comes apart under Taehyung's relentless assault, its chitin shattering and ichor spraying across the battlefield. White watches from the ground below, a fierce triumphant grin spreading across her face. The final strike lands with cataclysmic force, and Ken Ichijo Kataoki's body erupts in a shower of crimson, its colossal frame disintegrating into nothingness. The god is erased, leaving only splattered remains. The massive red eyes of Taehyung's demonic dragon form blaze with finality as he hovers above the shattered body. His wings spread wide, crimson energy radiating at a pulsing burst. He speaks with cold finality, saying it's been fun. Then the killing blow lands, a cataclysmic detonation of force that rips through the battlefield. His voice cuts through the destruction like a death sentence, erasing the ancient deity from existence. Violent impacts tear through the air, shattering the spider god's remains, a glowing pinkish-purple crystal, a magic gem formed from the deity's crystallized mana falls from the destruction. White catches it, her red eyes widening in surprise as she examines the strange, faceted object, murmuring that something about it is strange. Taehyung holds the glowing magic gem aloft, his demonic form radiating a dark aura. He remarks that while the gem isn't surprising given his power, its origin is strange. A god of that caliber would never create such a relic on its own. His expression hardens as he states the truth. This gem exists because of a contract with someone else, warning that it's not something to be taken lightly. Purple energy beams erupt from the ground, striking down the gathered crowd in a scene of chaos. Panicked shouts fill the air as bodies are thrown back by the blasts. A blade is drawn, catching the light. A pink-haired woman and a man in a suit stand together, the man's hand resting on his sword. He states coldly that if it becomes known and Awaken or help them, Japan's standing will suffer. The woman delivers the final verdict: they need to die here and now. The betrayal hits hard. The suited man states that Japan's standing will suffer if the world learns a Japanese Awaken or help them. The pink-haired woman delivers the verdict with chilling clarity: they need to die here and now. White's voice cuts through the silence, raw with fury, reminding them they said the same thing when they were being attacked. The dust settles to reveal White, Mary, and the others completely surrounded by Japanese forces, swords drawn and ready. Survival of the fittest, the pink-haired Awakener sneers, dismissing honor entirely. Mary plants her feet against the circle of drawn blades, refusing to die for their hypocrisy. But the woman's self-righteous smirk twists into pure fury. She lunges. A brutal, silent strike flashes through the air, catching Mary completely off guard. Purple energy beams erupt from the earth, slamming into Taehyung's demonic dragon form and staggering even him. The suited official sneers, calculating the perfect decapitation strike. But in that split second of chaos, the pink-haired woman's blade finds its mark. Mary takes the slash across her torso, blood erupting in a violent spray as she crumples into the rubble. A bone-jarring impact sends the suited official flying, his body tearing apart midair. The pink-haired woman stares in slack-jawed terror as Taehyung lands in human form amidst the carnage. His gaze is cold, analytical, and utterly lethal. He's going to make this quick and simple. The betrayal ends right now. Standing over Mary's motionless body, the pink-haired woman screams at her reinforcements. The suited man coldly justifies the slaughter, claiming they saved these civilians first. She demands to know how it feels to be so weak. Taehyung drops among them, eyes sharp and lethal, and commands them to lower their weapons. A chilling whisper cuts through the air as the attackers freeze, locked in place by an invisible, crushing pressure. A terrifying demonic presence descends, casting 3 burning red eyes over the trembling fools. Taehyung mocks their pathetic attempt, and their confidence shatters. They beg to back off, but Chidori desperately barks that reinforcements are still coming. Taehyung's demonic aura looms as the Japanese forces panic. Chidori snarls at her trembling allies, trying to buy time. Taehyung's voice cuts through, cold and pitying. He was actually going to let them live. But before his threat lands, White slices in, offering to grab Mary and run. A sickening wet stab erupts, freezing the battlefield in a spray of crimson. White calls out to Taehyung, telling him he doesn't have to stain his hands. She turns to Chidori, gaze ice cold, and proposes a deal. One-on-one combat. If White wins, they leave and file a formal complaint. If she loses, they keep their mouths shut. It's a lifeline thrown for a reckoning, while Mary remains crumpled in the rubble behind her. White stands firm, declaring she'll handle this herself so her master doesn't have to dirty his hands. She questions if they should even care about these traitors. Taehyung's demonic form radiates raw power as a faint, approving smirk crosses his features. He finds her resolve interesting and gives his permission. Taehyung delivers his verdict with cold finality, promising to strike down the Japanese awakeners in the name of the Demon King. Chidori snarls at his audacity. The suited man steps forward, drawing his blade and declaring he won't be defeated by a foreigner. White meets the challenge without hesitation, her own sword flashing into the light. The suited man and White lock into their duel. He barely registers the movement before a blinding flurry of sword strikes erupts. His specially etched blade never even finds its mark. White's slashes tear through his guard in a brutal cascade of cutting force, dismantling the man who swore he wouldn't lose. White's assault continues in an absolute storm of steel. The suited man tries to guard, but his defenses are paper. White's sword finds flesh instead. Blood erupts in a violent spray as steel punches clean through him. The man crumples, eyes wide with disbelief, dead before he even hits the ground. Chidori stares in pure shock. Taehyung's smirk fades into a calm expression as he tells her they're even, warning her to leave before he changes his mind. But her shock curdles into furious defiance. She screams that they're just low-class Japanese awakeners and dares him to fight, right as a massive crowd of reinforcements materializes behind her. The attackers surge forward in a bloodthirsty mob. The violence is cut short as Taehyung's true demonic form erupts, a towering massive shadow and 3 burning red eyes. The crowd screams in raw terror. Then, dead silence. Taehyung stands in human form, telling White she's done enough. She looks up at him, her composure finally cracking. Taehyung's voice echoes, dismissing the fight entirely. A massive wave of swirling red and black demonic energy erupts from his body, engulfing the entire battlefield. The Japanese awakeners stumble back, faces twisted in pure terror. Chidori stares upward, frozen in horrified disbelief, as the true apocalyptic scale of the Demon Lord's power is revealed. Taehyung's demonic energy tears through the urban landscape in a catastrophic wave. Buildings crumble to dust as the sheer force of his power consumes everything. The chaos settles, and Taehyung stands tall in human form, White beside him. His towering demonic silhouette hovers overhead, surveying the absolute ruin. The Japanese awakeners are simply gone. Taehyung's demonic form recedes, the 3 burning eyes winking out of existence. He stands amidst the smoldering ruin, casually brushing ash off his shoulder. He declares the area clear and tells White they're going back. She steps up beside him, expression unreadable as she stares at the sheer scale of the devastation. White breathes in awe, profoundly glad to be on his side. The aftermath is apocalyptic. Osaka lies in ruins, reduced to a massive cratered wasteland. The staggering cost is revealed: 2 million dead, 2 million injured. News broadcasts confirm Japan's top awakeners were killed or vanished. Taehyung didn't just win a fight, he leveled an entire city. News reports claim the losses will take decades to recover from, with Japan publicly thanking South Korea for their help. In a quiet room, a servant presents a tribute box from the Japanese Awakener HQ. But as the lid is lifted, a massive object crashes down from the sky into the courtyard, startling Taehyung, Mary, and White. The crashed object is a crystalline sword encased in jagged ice, radiating an otherworldly frost. Mary and White are captivated by the legendary item. Taehyung studies the offering, his face completely unreadable. White delivers the final assessment with dry finality. He has absolutely no use for it, except maybe as a refrigerator. White scoffs at the ice sword, telling Taehyung to demand something edible instead. Taehyung casually agrees to let them know. Suddenly, an older man bursts in with grave urgency, warning that something is approaching the island. Taehyung's expression shifts to sharp interest, and they move to intercept it. A luxury ship cuts through the blue water toward a lush, isolated island. A man in a sharp suit and sunglasses adjusts his shades, grinning at the sight of an entire landmass serving as a private estate. He turns to the imposing figure beside him, marveling at the S-Class Awakener and declaring he risked his life just to find them. 3 men in black suits stride onto the island. White immediately bows to Taehyung, apologizing and explaining they are from the Ares Guild. She claims she already told them Taehyung was on vacation, but before she can smooth it over, Taehyung's voice cuts through the air, telling her an apology won't be necessary. Taehyung's expression hardens with cold fury. This man used his name against someone stronger and doesn't deserve to live, but he admits he's intrigued. The Ares Guild envoys stare up at Taehyung's island domain, their arrogant swagger completely shattered by the looming sight of a Demon King's castle. Surrounded by a vicious, suffocating aura, Taehyung states the visitor doesn't seem like a normal awakener. He sizes the man up, asking if he's the one who came to see him. The guild representative, sweating profusely, confirms his identity. Taehyung smiles faintly, a dangerous glint in his eye, and commands him to state his purpose. White casually offers Taehyung an iced chocolate. The sweating guild representative internally panics, crushed by the sheer aura of a demon lord. Taehyung sips his drink, completely unfazed, and delivers an ultimatum. Say it quickly, because he hates wasting time. The rep's composure shatters entirely, stammering under the chilling pressure. The guild representative drops to his hands and knees, his facade completely destroyed. He presses his forehead to the floor, desperately begging Taehyung to accept the invitation to join the Ares Guild. Taehyung doesn't even look up. His response is a single flat syllable, no. Miles away at the Awakeners Association headquarters, a senior official casually dismisses the Ares Guild as a C-class outfit. His subordinate leans in, tone turning dead serious. He warns the official to pay attention because he is involved. The official's face drains of color, his tablet clattering from his grip as the weight of that name hits him. The senior official's shock hardens into intense focus. His subordinate explains the Ares Guild leader has been obsessively chasing the S-Class Awakener. The official's eyes widen in dawning horror as he realizes the crazy guy who metamorphosed is involved. He leans forward, demanding more information, the room's atmosphere shifting to urgent fear. The official claims they've been monitoring the target closely. His subordinate interrupts with urgent news. Kim Un-seok and his men headed to the west coast this morning. The official realizes they went after the guy on the island. He grabs his head in stressed disbelief, muttering that the fool has no idea what he's getting into. The official snaps into damage control mode, ordering an immediate investigation into what Kim Un-seok said. As the subordinate walks away, his composure cracks, visibly shaken by the impossible danger. Back in the office, the senior official rubs his face in exhausted stress, muttering that the association will take heavy losses no matter what happens. Meanwhile, a phone call connects. Mr. Chen leans back in his car seat, calm and calculating. He drops the hook. He's willing to reconsider the offer he previously turned down on one condition. The other party has to take the job. A long pause follows, then a measured agreement. The deal is in motion. Back on the island, the guild representative is sprawled on the floor, trembling as he processes the flat rejection. Taehyung sits relaxed against the night sky, watching him with quiet indifference. The rep's voice cracks as he whispers, "Why?" scraping his fingers against the stone. He simply can't comprehend the absolute dismissal. Taehyung sips his drink, his expression cold. He tells the rep he is worthless, comparing his value to the pebbles he just crushed under his heel. Leaning back, he delivers the final insult, "Go away," because he hates wasting time. The rep lies on the floor, his mind flashing back to the first terrifying moment he saw Taehyung. The realization crashes over him. Without that monster on their side, the guild has no future. He scrambles upward, sweat pouring down his face, and shouts his desperate conclusion. The rep screams that they can be useful as fighters, field agents, or cleaners. Mary watches with concern as his companions chime in with pathetic offers. The representative collapses to his knees, tears streaming behind his glasses, begging for any chance at all and promising to do absolutely anything. Taehyung's lips curl into a slow, predatory smile. He turns his back, then leans forward with cold amusement, telling the rep it's interesting and giving them a chance. He drops his voice to a deadly whisper, asking if they'll really do whatever he asks. The broken man throws himself to the floor, screaming, "Yes!" Taehyung smiles with cold amusement and gives their first order: take down the Awakener Association. The rep and his men freeze, faces draining of color as the impossible weight sinks in. The rep can only stammer in shock. The rep reels from the impossible command. His subordinates panic, pointing out the sheer absurdity of declaring war on the establishment. But the rep's shock curdles into frantic resolve. He shouts, "They have no choice. If they refuse, they're finished." He barks orders to investigate the three major guilds immediately as their car speeds away. Back on the island, White asks why he gave such an impossible order. Taehyung just leans back, giving no reason. White lays out the brutal reality. The association is backed by three top powers: Red Dragon, Valkyrie, and Sword Emperor. She points out that even the weakest of the top three is far beyond a C-class guild like Ares. Taehyung calmly admits he never actually expected them to succeed. If they do, they'll be useful. But their real value is their uselessness, creating the perfect excuse to take on the association. White's eyes widen in dawning horror, finally grasping the terrifying depth of his manipulation. Taehyung's red eye glints as he asks if she thinks he forgot how they harmed his only loved one. His fury builds, shadows writhing around him as he vows to make the association pay in blood. White gasps in pure horror, realizing this entire setup was never just a test, it was the spark for his righteous vengeance. A blonde woman states coldly that someone deserves their fate. In a modern office, Taehyung, disguised in a sharp suit, sits across from Park Sivin, leader of the Valkyrie Guild. She identifies herself with a confident smirk, acknowledging his search and tying it to the powerful guilds she represents. Taehyung feigns ignorance, but Park Sivin cuts him off. She reveals they've uncovered all the evidence and the people behind his schemes. Leaning forward, she delivers the killing blow. He started operating behind their backs after visiting the S-Class Awakener. Taehyung's facade shatters, his eyes widening in pure shock. Taehyung's composure crumbles internally, spiraling into pure panic. Park Sivan calls out to him, telling him to calm down. She reassures him they won't do anything, then strings with institutional pride. She identifies the Valkyrie Guild as the true guardians of the Korean public, taking a subtle, arrogant dig at the Red Dragon Guild. Taehyung presses her on what deal she struck with the S-Class Awakener, his voice betraying his panic. Park Sivan doesn't flinch. Instead, she lays out the worst-case scenario. What if that S-Class Awakener ends up targeted by all of Korea? Taehyung goes silent, realizing the full suffocating scope of the trap she's laying. Taehyung smirks, starting to say, actually, but the reality snaps to a Jim. Park Sivan is powering through heavy squats. She pauses, confused, staring at her own hands as a foreign power pulses through her veins. She realizes with chilling clarity that Taehyung's energy is somehow inside her. Lee Yoo-jin begs into her phone, desperate and abandoned after the NIS took her sister. At Taehyung's domain, a woman bursts through the door, breathless, shouting she just received a call from the NIS. Taehyung turns, his expression sharp and calculating as the urgency settles over the room. A young man stares at his phone, alarmed by urgent news about the Ares guild leader. Outside, the guild leader arrives with his entourage of suited men. He steps directly into someone's path, his presence imposing, and asks if they are the guild leader. The person stammers in complete confusion. Park Sivan sits calmly sipping coffee in her office. Her sharp eyes suddenly widen in shock. A massive explosion of fire and debris tears through the space, engulfing everything in fiery chaos. Meanwhile, in a smoldering room, a man demands to know who dared to join hands and stab him in the back. A man in a car is confronted and taunted about surviving thanks to that jerk. A phone displays breaking news: a terrorist awakener attack in Seoul, with the victims believed to be members of the Ares Guild. Taehyung, disguised in a pristine white suit, reads the news with a satisfied smile, murmuring that his pawn has proven his worth. I will accept the Ares Guild. The words drop like a guillotine. Taehyung isn't negotiating, he's seizing the very pawn his enemies thought they could use to break him. A private jet tears through the clouds. Taehyung descends the tarmac steps, his dark red cloak billowing behind him. Miles away, a frantic voice shatters the silence of a dimly lit office. Taehyung is marching on the Awakened Association, and the Demon Lord is already here. A grim report bleeds into the room. Kim Unseok of the Ares Guild was ambushed in the heart of Seoul. Guildmaster Park Sivan threw herself in the way to stop the bleeding, but the damage is catastrophic. One member dead, another clinging to life, and the investigators have absolutely no idea who pulled the trigger. The devastating truth hits like a physical blow. The Ares Guild is now entirely under Taehyung's thumb. Through their intelligence network, Mary pieces together the Demon Lord's motive. He believes the association attacked his subordinate, and he isn't just retaliating against the shooters, he's coming for the entire institution. A suited man clings to desperate denial, demanding to know who was actually responsible. Mary lays it out with clinical, ruthless precision. The attack on his own subordinate was a manufactured crisis, a smokescreen to achieve his true goal, absolute revenge against the association for his grandmother's death. Inside a speeding black car, a tense voice asks if they're heading to the National Intelligence Service. Taehyung's reply is sharp and final: they're going to the Valkyrie Guild instead. Mary wipes a bead of sweat from her temple, while White's quiet gaze suggests she already understands the suicidal game they're driving into. White hesitates, reminding him that not everyone in the association is evil. Taehyung's gaze remains steady. He concedes the point, admitting there's no need to slaughter them all, but his voice drops to a glacial chill. He has zero intention of letting his grandmother's murder go unavenged. Taehyung lays out his endgame. He will bring the entire Awakened Association to its knees and take control. He's heading to the Valkyrie Guild first to see if they're worth sparing. White stares at him, her composure finally cracking as she breathes his true, terrifying title into the quiet car. The car pulls up to the imposing Valkyrie Guild headquarters. Inside, absolute chaos erupts. A commander bellows for his people to prepare in 30 seconds, screaming that an S-rank Awakener is here to slaughter them and they need to risk everything. A commanding voice cuts through the panic like a knife. Guild leader Park Si-yeon stands firm, reasoning that if Taehyung truly wanted them dead, the building would already be rubble. She immediately orders a tactical evacuation, clearing out the non-combatants and leaving only the fighters. Taehyung steps into the lobby, his voice low and absolute. His gaze locks onto the woman stepping forward to meet him. When he asks if she leads the Valkyrie Guild, she holds his stare without flinching, confirming she is Park Si-yeon. Taehyung coolly evaluates one of their members, noting her B-rank classification is a gross underestimation for her Norse elemental magic. Park Si-yeon steps forward to defend her guild, insisting they never attacked Kim Un-seok. She only confronted him for digging into the affairs of the top 3 guilds. Tae-young's voice turns to cold iron, pointing out the glaring omission in her defense. He connects the assault directly to the Ilsim Guild massacre, seeing right through her denial. Park Si-yeon's composure shatters into panic as she frantically denies any involvement in that old slaughter. Tae-young demands an explanation. Park Si-yeon's words tumble out in a desperate rush. She insists her guild wasn't even at, and actually tried to hold the perpetrators publicly accountable until Chairman Cheon Ha-jin took a massive bribe to bury the truth. Park Si-yeon admits she tried to protest, but as the leader of just one guild, she couldn't stand against the Dragon Guild alone. She argues that if the association fractured, defending South Korea from monsters would become impossible. White stands silently, processing the cold, flawed logic of self-preservation. Tae-hyung slices through her plea, asking if turning a blind eye absolves her of responsibility. He presses the relentless logic: silence is just silent approval. The guildmaster's composure shatters completely as she realizes he isn't here to listen to excuses, he's here to pass sentence. Cornered and desperate, Park Si-yeon screams at her people to stop him. Tae-hyung doesn't even break stride, walking past her as if she's nothing. In the next breath, his hand closes like a vice around her throat, lifting her off the ground in a brutal display of absolute power. An enraged guild member screams and hurls a desperate punch at his own leader. Park Si-yeon blocks the strike and meets the charge with a devastating counter. A blinding burst of energy erupts, sending the mutinous man flying backward to the floor. Tae-hyung holds her suspended, warning her to stay still or her face will get scratched. She manages a choked appeal for the greater good. Tae-hyung listens, his grip unyielding, and coldly states he'll respect her attitude, but respect doesn't mean mercy. Tae-hyung's voice drops to a chilling calm, reframing the entire confrontation as a deeply personal matter of avenging his blood. Park Si-yeon's defiance shatters into tears and terror. Gasping for air, she offers the only thing she has left, her own life, begging him to spare her guild. Her voice cracks with raw desperation, pleading for the lives of her members. Tae-hyung responds with chilling calm, stating he didn't want to resort to this, but it's necessary. Beside him, White stands poised with her massive ice sword, ready to execute the verdict. Tae-hyung's crimson eye blazes through the shadows, red energy crackling across his face like living veins. His expression is carved from cold stone. One dismissive word escapes his lips: nonsense. Her desperate bargain means absolutely nothing to the Demon Lord. Miles away, a man stares at his phone in horror as a message shatters his composure. The assassination target at the summit is Kim Un-seok. He calls his handler, furious at the change of plans. The woman on the line coldly insists they must change targets again to claim a trophy, leaving him terrified by the catastrophic mistake they're about to make. The word nonsense hangs in the air like a death sentence, obliterating Park Si-yeon's last hope. White calmly reports she brushed off an unwelcome visitor, but a voice interrupts. The assassination plan is shifted again. The primary target at the summit is no longer Kim Un-seok, but Tae-hyung himself. Tae-hyung warns that continuing down this vengeful path risks losing himself entirely, drawing a defiant sneer from the broken guildmaster. Miles away, the engine of a car cuts off. Tae-hyung calmly questions White for leaving without telling him. They step out into the night, ready to handle a little job. Tae-hyung declares he will judge those who commit evil and eliminate the allies who shelter them. White confirms the order without hesitation. Meanwhile, a squad of assassins moves through the city, tasked with killing Kim Un-seok, but secretly ordered to claim Tae-hyung as a trophy. Tae-hyung and White arrive at the summit, stepping directly into the trap. The assassins mobilize, their leader drawing a crimson blade and claiming the kill for himself. They spot Kim Un-seok's convoy and surge forward, but as they move, a palpable wave of dread washes over them. One by one, the killers freeze, their bravado shattering into raw, choking terror as they realize they can't stop him. The Gangnam Guildmaster answers a phone call, coldly promising to eliminate the target and retrieve an additional item. A brutal strike slams someone into the ground. Tae-hyung watches the violence with utter indifference, letting out a quiet, unimpressed hum. Amidst the swirling dark energy and scattered bodies, White surveys the catastrophic destruction. Tae-hyung casually asks White if the strongest one might actually be someone else. A heavy footstep echoes. White instantly barks an order for Mary to stay back. A cataclysmic blast of searing orange fire erupts from the building, only to be met by a cascading barrier of razor-sharp ice crystals. A dark-haired woman wreathed in searing orange flames hurls a blazing projectile with lethal intent. Across the carnage, a man in an orange jacket stands completely unflinching. He calmly reveals he is also an S-Class awakener from this very country, declaring that their death has come. Tae-hyung and White stand over the defeated, the air thick with finality. White's voice tightens as a ghost of memory surfaces, recognizing a name from 1,000 years ago. The reprieve shatters as the Gangnam Guildmaster strides from the inferno, sneering that they can't possibly defeat a born S-Class. A guild leader coldly demands the man in the orange jacket kneel and apologize to save his life. The man just smirks, completely bored. As the threats escalate and the leader sneers that his turn to die has arrived, the man in orange drops the crushing reveal: he is an S rank. The guild leader's faces contort in pure, horrified shock. Taehyung glances at a glowing system window and dismisses the threat with a casual, "So what?" He reveals he's also an S rank. The guild leader snarls, demanding Taehyung kneel, but Taehyung just looks at him with bored contempt. As a dark-haired woman from Taehyung's side warns they won't leave anyone unharmed, the leader's blood drains, realizing the catastrophic mistake they've made. The man in the orange jacket strides forward, wreathed in raging flames, vowing to burn his target to ash. Taehyung doesn't even flinch, coldly ordering his companions to keep back. The man unleashes a devastating blast, screaming "Inferno!" as a wave of pure destruction surges forward, only to be met by a shimmering crystalline barrier of razor-sharp ice. A challenger in swirling pink flames sneers that the enemy's spell is too crude. A cold voice retorts from the other side, and a massive shockwave sends White and Mary staggering back. The inferno intensifies, and the enemy's voice cuts through the chaos with a final, absolute threat: if they don't surrender, they will all burn together. A man crackling with pink energy declares he'll make sure to kill, unleashing a violent, blinding blast. The shockwave hits Taehyung, but he stands utterly unmoved, his expression bored. Mary is caught in the crossfire, crying out in pain as she clutches her chest, while two men in suits calmly apologize to Director Taehyung for the collateral damage. The pink-haired challenger screams a furious vow to kill, his power erupting in a massive blast. Taehyung stands completely unfazed, while Mary staggers back, wounded and gasping. The challenger demands if Taehyung even saw the attack, boasting that no S rank can withstand his flames, but the man in the orange jacket just smirks. Mary questions how anyone can withstand flames that melt concrete. The dark-haired woman confirms the enemy's terrifying power, urging them to end it quickly. Mary orders an immediate evacuation, but before they can move, a cataclysmic blast of pink and red energy engulfs the space. When the light fades, Taehyung stands in the epicenter, utterly untouched. The enemy surges with crimson dark energy, declaring he'll eliminate Taehyung and watch his entire clan die next. Taehyung's face reveals nothing but cold, bored indifference. The threat of annihilation doesn't even register. White gasps as the sheer force presses down and the concentrated blast strikes a man in a suit, sending him recoiling in shock. The concentrated blast of crimson energy slams home, throwing a man in a suit backward. But as the smoke clears, Taehyung stands in the epicenter, his dark cloak settling, his expression unchanged. The attack that just leveled an S-Class opponent did absolutely nothing to him, leaving the enemy in stunned silence. A man in a suit grimly states they've arrived too late, and Mary quietly agrees. Knowing there's no way anyone could survive an inferno of this scale, she accepts that evacuating the Awakeners is all they can do. Through the center of the apocalyptic blaze, a lone figure walks forward, completely unfazed. A furious wall of fire screams toward Taehyung, but he stands utterly still. Glancing at a bleeding Mary, he mutters that it's not just about power. With a casual flick of his wrist, a wave of dark energy cleaves the inferno apart like smoke, and he steps forward, untouched. Taehyung deflects the roaring flames with a contemptuous flick of his hand, standing amidst the inferno in cold boredom. Mary clutches her injured chest, watching him move through the destruction with impossible ease. He turns his gaze to the female enemy, delivering a chilling ultimatum: stop resisting, or he will break her leg. A blonde enemy realizes the shadow descending before him is a mage, demanding to know what level of magic he possesses. Taehyung calmly explains that the magic from the dimension he was trapped in makes their current understanding look like a tiny pebble. When the man tells him to end it if he intends to destroy their magic system, Taehyung confirms that is exactly his purpose. The blonde enemy grins, noting that Dylan has been pushed to his absolute limit. Taehyung offers a measured apology for underestimating the flames, but his tone is a eulogy. The enemy erupts in manic laughter, channeling everything into a colossal firewall, but Taehyung just walks straight through it, completely untouched. A voice notes that Dylan's flames are stronger than expected, prompting Taehyung to tighten his fist in mild annoyance. A colossal eruption of fire explodes outward, but Taehyung stands at the epicenter, utterly unharmed. Another enemy screams in desperation, summoning a blazing flame wedge for a last-ditch attack, while Taehyung remains completely unfazed. Tae-young unleashes a devastating barrage of crimson and violet energy, tearing through the environment with deafening force. From the smoke, a blonde man steps forward in desperate defiance, screaming that Dylan won't fall. Pushed to the brink, he roars a final declaration: if Tae-young intends to destroy their magic system, he will end it himself. The blonde enemy's composure shatters, screaming, "Why won't you die?" as Tae-young stands engulfed in an inferno that would melt steel. Tae-young doesn't even blink. He reaches through the fire like it's fog, his hand closing around the man's face and lifting him off the ground in pure terror. A crimson arch slices through the dark. A desperate red energy blade is deflected with a casual flick, the magic turning back on its caster. The blonde enemy's face freezes in shock as his body begins to disintegrate, shattering into fragments of light and blood. Tae-young stands calmly over the remains, his boot grinding down on what's left of the man. Tae-young's boot crashes down with brutal, crunching force, blood spraying as he walks over the fallen. Dylan lies broken on the ground, a gaping wound on his chest pooling dark blood. Tae-young plants his boot heavily on the defeated mage, whose face twists in pure terror as he gasps out a single, horrified name: Kim Hyuk. Dylan gasps through shattered teeth. His own flames turned against him to melt his defenses from the inside out. He begs for mercy, insisting he still has mana, challenging the demon lord to show the fighting spirit of the world's strongest. Tae-young remains entirely unmoved. Below, Mary lies crumpled in the rubble, her voice weak and trembling as she pleads for his life. Tae-young's gaze sharpens. He sighs, dismissing the man's entertainment value, and declares this is as far as he goes. Tae-young's eyes go dead and cold. He states flatly that he will end the man with magic, a clean, efficient execution. The blonde enemy's composure shatters completely. Screaming in raw terror, he begs for his life, offering his magic, his loyalty, anything to survive. Beside the carnage, a severely wounded Mary echoes the plea, trembling as she offers to tell him anything. Tae-young ignores them both, repeating his final verdict. His boot lifts and comes down with a sickening, explosive crunch. Blood and gore erupt from beneath Tae-young's heel as he grinds Dylan's skull into nothing. A spray of red paints the air. White watches from the side, lips parted in silent shock at the sheer brutality. Tae-young straightens up, completely unspattered, his posture calm. He gives a dismissive flick of his foot, his stomp having cratered the very ground into a deep, smoking pit. In the distance, bystanders stare in stunned horror, unable to comprehend how a rank S enemy could be dismantled so effortlessly. The dust settles over the ruined streets. Mary reflects heavily on the sheer scale of Tae-young's vengeance, while a man beside her offers a dark pragmatism, suggesting they should be relieved the rampage didn't escalate further. White's sharp, urgent cry cuts through the somber mood, calling out for Chief Kang and Serene amidst the debris. A dark-haired man in a suit steps forward from the shadows, offering a stiff, formal apology on behalf of his master for the devastation left in the Demon Lord's wake. Mary shakes her head, her face etched with trauma. She refuses the apology, her voice trembling as she asks what would have happened if Tae-young hadn't been there to fight. The suited man sweats, stammering that an S-Class awakened heading the Red Dragon Guild shouldn't have even been considered a fair fight. Mary and a blonde woman freeze, the horrifying reality dawning on them. The man confirms the terrifying truth. There are only 10 S-Class Awakeners in the entire world. The suited man delivers the chilling punchline. Dylan wasn't the real enemy. He was merely a proxy sent by a shadowy organization known only as Another. Mary and White listen, their faces tightening with grim realization as the man stresses this is a severe matter of national security. The threat they just faced was just a distraction. Miles away, in a sleek corporate building, a man in a suit stares at a monitor, his face draining of color as he gasps the name. A blonde woman confirms the organization known as Another's is real, silencing the skepticism in the room. A holographic display flickers to life, projecting documents from the National Intelligence Agency that detail incidents of catastrophic destruction. The data pinpoints Another's as the common thread, a terrorist group composed of awakeners who have abandoned their duty to protect, becoming the very source of the world's devastation. The observers stare at the screens, grappling with the terrible irony of protectors turned destroyers. The suited man mutters that hiding this is like an ostrich burying its head in the sand. A blonde woman hardens her stance, declaring they can't keep the truth about Another's buried any longer. The plan solidifies with cold, pragmatic malice. They will destroy all the evidence, but to do that, they need a scapegoat. They will sacrifice their own Awakener agent, Chief Kang Woo-jin, framing him for treason and pinning his involvement with the terrorist group squarely on his shoulders. A suited man urgently reports to His Excellency about an incident involving Tae-young. Meanwhile, Taehyung is driving, receiving the call with a calm, knowing hum. Inside a holographic conference room, a red-haired woman delivers the news flatly: Gillen is dead. The others react with a mix of shock and bitter amusement. They had a bet on when the crazy bastard would finally die, and it looks like they're getting a nice yacht out of it. The shockwave of Dylan's death ripples through the room. A suited man confirms it with cold fury, the grim reality settling in. The question hangs in the air: who in South Korea wouldn't want Dylan Kim dead? He went there alone, forgetting he had no mana left, and paid the price. The fact that one of the strongest awakeners was taken down reveals a terrifying shift in power. A voice from the shadows cuts through the tension with a final order: contact that man down in South Korea and offer him whatever he wants. A cold, authoritative voice issues the order to head to South Korea personally. A sharp-featured man in a red suit holds a glass, smirking with predatory amusement at the news. He casually agrees to go. High above the city, a swirling vortex of purple-black energy tears open the sky. A man on a rooftop watches the portal churn, his thoughts locking onto the revelation: whoever killed Dylan is his target now. He smiles, looking forward to the meeting. The air suddenly carries a scent even humans can't ignore. A massive, pulsating purple gate hangs ominously in the sky, its energy crackling. Below, a group of men in suits stare upward, their expressions a mix of awe and deep concern, questioning what he's thinking. Miles away, a man sits calmly on a park bench, lost in thought. Beside him, a blonde woman in a suit kneels before a grotesque, red-fleshed monster in total submission. The monstrous, red-fleshed creature with multiple limbs grins down at White, its voice dripping with predatory amusement. It leans close with false warmth, informing her that it will be filling in for her lost organization. It asks what it should call her, spreading its grotesque form in a mocking display of power. It proposes they form a team, demanding a name with a sinister laugh that lands like a physical blow. The monstrous creature leans in close to a stunned White, chuckling at her reaction before declaring itself something no one can lay a hand on. Meanwhile, Taehyung sits quietly on a dock, his back turned. The creature's voice echoes in the distance, announcing the name White Division Team. White simply agrees. Side by side, White and the red-fleshed Lee Yujin stand as a united and terrifying front. The monstrous Lee Yujin proudly announces to Taehyung that she and White now operate under the banner Team Untouchable. Taehyung sits with his back to them, mulling it over with a calm hum, entirely unbothered. Then the sky cracks open. A violent surge of red energy tears through the air, catching everyone off guard. Overhead, a swirling purple-black gate rips into existence, pulsing with crackling energy. Suited agents stare upward in collective shock as something massive moves on the other side. White's eyes glisten with dread as memories of a department store surface, hitting her in the gut. She forces herself to breathe, glancing sideways with wide eyes as the reality of the situation settles in. Beside her, the grotesque form of Lee Yujin looms, while a man in sunglasses watches silently. Taehyung stands apart, his posture rigid, his expression sharp. A single word cuts through the moment: faster. Whatever's coming, they need to move now. Mary stands in the dissipating pink petals, quietly stating she has no reason to stay. A swirling purple-black gate tears open directly overhead, crackling with ominous energy. Taehyung immediately shouts for everyone to move back. A suited agent stares up at the churning vortex, realizing with cold clarity that this threat is way beyond their capabilities. The gate expands with a deafening roar, and seconds later, a squad of black-suited agents materializes around Taehyung, weapons drawn. The purple-black gate tears open with a guttural roar, and something massive erupts into the world. Cercel Darien, a war dragon over 1,200 years old, unfurls its monstrous form. Its stats flash with terrifying authority: strength over 5,000, mana at 7,000, endurance nearly 8,000. Taehyung stands small before it, completely dwarfed by the dragon's sheer size, but he doesn't flinch as the creature's glowing eyes fix on him. The monstrous Lee Yujin leans close to White as they stare upward. White's face twists with shock as she reads the War Dragon's stats, realizing it's rank 7. The creature beside her examines the data, noting its command and control capabilities. As the War Dragon spreads its colossal wings in a blaze of destructive energy, Lee Yujin demands to know if this is her copy. White has no better explanation, the heavy implication hanging that whoever summoned this dragon and whoever transformed Lee Yujin share the same forbidden power. The monstrous Lee Yujin declares with chilling confidence that she's never lost to one of Master's enemies. She commands White to watch closely as Taehyung steps forward. He moves with blinding speed, unleashing a devastating attack that tears into the dragon's massive frame, driving it back with explosive force. The dragon roars in pain as the impact shatters its defenses. Mary and White stare upward, their faces etched with awe and terror, crying out for their master. Taehyung stands over the colossal dragon's corpse, noting it's dead again. But as he examines the remains, his tone shifts to curiosity. It doesn't seem like mere undeath. His eyes lock onto the system data revealing the dragon's true state. Due to a contract with an unknown entity, it lost its sense of self and violated the laws of the Seven Realms. Taehyung pinpoints the issue. The mysterious contract is the root of everything. With a faint resolute smirk, he declares he'll handle it. Taehyung plants his boot forward with brutal finality, declaring he'll take care of the dragon first. He launches at Daryon without hesitation, his body a blur of motion. The dragon's massive form barely has time to react before Taehyung is already upon it. Mid-air, he rises against the open sky, drawing back for a killing blow. His declaration rings out with lethal certainty. He'll cut off its head once more. His strike connects with savage precision, tearing through the dragon's defenses. Taehyung leaps skyward, sword raised high as he arcs over the colossal war dragon's thrashing form. His voice rings out with force, commanding the beast to open its eyes. The blade descends in a blur of motion, crashing down with everything he has. The impact is cataclysmic, raw energy exploding outward in a blinding flash of blue-white light. Daryon's massive serpentine body shudders, its jaws gaping open in a silent roar of agony as Taehyung lands hard on the ground. Taehyung's blade ignites with a violent crimson aura, the air itself cracking around the edge as he drives it into the war dragon's flank. Daryon lets out a guttural roar, its massive body convulsing as the energy sears through scale and corrupted flesh. Taehyung presses the assault without pause, each strike pulsing with destructive light, his voice a cold promise to sever the contract binding this ancient beast. For a heartbeat, a glimmer of the true mind trapped beneath flickers in the dragon's gaze. Taehyung stands on a precipice, his arm outstretched as a beam of crimson energy lances into the war dragon's skull. Daryon recoils, its massive body convulsing with a guttural roar of agony as rocks shatter around its head. The dragon thrashes, its immense form twisting in pain as the energy sears through it. The shockwave tears the cityscape apart. The battle concludes with the dragon unleashing a final, earth-shaking roar directly at its attacker. Taehyung stands atop the defeated war dragon's severed neck, blood dripping from his blade as the massive body slumps. On the ground, the grotesque Li Yujin and a stunned White stare up, while Mary's eyes widen in disbelief. The dragon's head, still conscious despite its wounds, turns with a chilling, guttural voice, declaring a magician would be good. Its jaws then snap shut around a figure in the crowd, swallowing them whole in a sudden fiery explosion. Taehyung's sword ignites in a furious blaze as he answers the dragon's desperate roar. With a final, decisive swing, his voice rings out cold and absolute, ordering a cleanup. The war dragon's massive form convulses, its resistance shattered as Taehyung lands with brutal finality. The monstrous Li Yujin, now standing with other agents, snaps her fingers with sharp command, telling everyone to get it together. The immediate threat is neutralized, but the weight of the aftermath hangs heavy. The battle is over, and Taehyung stands before the massive, lifeless corpse of the war dragon. The monstrous Li Yujin addresses the stunned team with cold authority, postponing their training. She instructs Agent Park to return to National Defense Headquarters while she personally collects the enemy's head. Her final order rings with urgency: hurry up, and don't keep Master waiting. The agents snap into action, moving past Taehyung toward the dragon's enormous, severed head. A bolt of emerald lightning tears through the stormy sky, illuminating a hellish landscape of bubbling lava and jagged rock. Shadowy figures gather amid the ruin, their voices cutting through the tension. One asks if the so-called strongest ruler is responsible for this devastation, but another dismissively replies that rankings have changed lately. They reveal they've been aware of someone's presence for some time, citing the DCL's ominous note that humans are growing weaker. Mary's eyes narrow with frustration as she faces the hooded Taehyung. His voice cuts through the tension, demanding to know if she understands the importance of the mission. Mary pushes back, saying it'll be difficult, but she can handle it. He presses harder, refusing to accept uncertainty. Mary's expression hardens with resolve. She commits fully, declaring there will be no failure. Miles away, on a rocky, fire-lit landscape, agents stand in formation, taking their positions. Taehyung's voice rings out across the hellish, lava-streaked terrain, ordering Seirin to begin. Mary stands with arms crossed, her expression sharp with steely confidence. Chaos erupts as green energy tears across the battlefield. Mary lunges into the fray, her body a blur of motion alongside the dark hooded figure. Energy crackles between them as they drive their assault forward. Mary takes a hard hit, her face twisting in shock and pain as the combat takes its toll. Taehyung's face is lit with a cruel, confident grin as he declares his attack, Annihilation. The air around him instantly distorts, turning a sickly dark green as a wave of unstoppable, destructive energy erupts outward. His hand thrusts forward, guiding the chaotic power as it slams into its target with a violent, crashing force. Mary and the others look on with stunned, horrified expressions, Mary gasping as she witnesses the terrifying display of Taehyung's true power. The hooded figure's face emerges from darkness, a smug certainty in his eyes as he confirms his plan is already in motion. A vortex of chaotic, dark blue energy tears open the fabric of reality itself, spilling the ancient remnants of the abysses into the world. Back in the city, a peaceful skyline is shattered by the thunderous sound of running feet. A sharp warning cuts through the air as a blonde agent identifies a terrifying, rank 95 enemy. Inside a sleek, dimly lit room with glowing pink and blue panels, a stern-faced man stands with arms crossed, observing the monitors. A white-haired man gestures emphatically toward a seated blonde woman, exclaiming his awe. The group's attention is focused entirely on the seated woman, who appears defeated, hinting at the aftermath of Taehyung's devastating display of power. Mary, her pink hair catching the light, stands with a subtle, knowing smile. She turns slightly toward her companion in a tailored suit and delivers a quiet bombshell. The person they're observing is Jane from England, an A-rank awakener who specializes in a summoning-type ability. The man listens, his expression unreadable but attentive, as the implications of a summoner of that caliber sink in. The revelation lands like a thunderbolt. Jane's summoned creature is powerful enough to rival even S-rank awakened beings. The blonde woman beside the dark-haired man gasps with starry-eyed excitement, her hands clasped in giddy awe. The dark-haired man remains stoic, the serious implications of this intelligence hanging heavy in the air between them. Two figures stand in a sterile corridor, their attention locked on the hallway ahead. A sharp gasp escapes the blonde woman, while a brown-haired woman in a suit looks on with wide-eyed alarm. Their stunned silence is broken by a new arrival. A tall, dark-haired man in a tailored suit steps forward with an air of calm authority. The observers spring into action, whispering urgently as they identify the newcomer, Benjamin Proud, an A-rank healer-type awakener, known as a saint. A tense hush fills the sleek, dimly lit corridor. A voice cuts through the quiet, addressing someone as master before asking who the person over there is. Standing with arms crossed in a dark hoodie, Taehyung's expression remains completely unreadable. Surrounded by other personnel in the brightly lit hallway, all attention is directed toward this mysterious newcomer. The atmosphere crackles with unspoken tension and curiosity. Black dress shoes stride deliberately down a polished corridor. Two figures watch from the shadows behind, their gazes locked on the departing form. One murmurs that he's seeing him for the first time. Then the recognition hits, sharp and almost disbelieving. Isn't he the S-rank awakened from Korea? The shoes keep moving, unhurried, as if the weight of that title means nothing to him. A black shoe with white laces steps forward with deliberate, silent precision. A low, amused voice cuts through the tension, calling the situation interesting. The man in the dark-tailored suit stands tall, his posture radiating calm authority. He takes in the room, his powerful presence leaving everyone watching with bated breath. A system display coldly reveals a one-hit kill skill at level 5, with a stark note of nothing beneath it. A whisper cuts through the tension as an observer pieces together the horrifying truth about body modification surgery. Taehyung, overhearing, tilts his head with a smirk, his red eyes glinting with amusement. He repeats the word interesting, his subtle smile suggesting this secret only fuels his confidence. A cool, challenging voice cuts through the tense silence, asking if they know who he is. Taehyung, the S-rank awakener from Korea, stands with an unreadable expression as he confronts two stunned observers. A dark-haired man and a blonde woman in formal suits stare back at him. The blonde, her face pale with shock, can only stammer the question back to him. A stunned blonde woman in a suit recoils, her mouth agape in shock, as a sharp-featured brown-haired man in a tailored suit steps forward. He cuts directly in front of her, his voice cold with authority as he tells an unseen figure to step aside because he's having a conversation. His posture remains rigid as he finishes his line, his focus absolute, ready to engage the newcomer. The observing group whispers, their curiosity sharp as they wonder who the S-rank Korean is. But Taehyung isn't playing their game. His voice cuts back, sharp and edged with genuine annoyance, declaring he is not a kid. The rebuke hangs in the air, a direct challenge to Benjamin Proud, who had just stepped forward. The power dynamic in the room visibly shifts as the newcomer refuses to be dismissed. The whispering cuts through the tense hallway as someone mentions a new S-rank awakened from China, adding they have no idea who the other one is. Then they appear. A dark-haired man in a hoodie strides forward, his expression hard and focused. Beside him walks a brown-haired man in a suit, equally intense, with a woman trailing just behind. Their purposeful movement makes the air crackle, radiating a silent, undeniable power. Gao Lin stands in the corridor, his posture rigid with tension. His intense, focused gaze locks onto Lei Feng, who stands with his back turned, his dark hair falling over his collar. The air between them is thick with unspoken challenge. Gao Lin's voice cuts through the silence, sharp and demanding, repeating his name and asking what's going on. Gao Lin strides up to Tae Hyung, his expression carrying a practiced calm that doesn't quite reach his eyes. The sound of his heavy footsteps fills the corridor as he closes the distance. A sharp sound of irritation escapes someone. Then Gao Lin speaks, his voice measured and courteous, apologizing for causing an unnecessary commotion. The words flow smooth as silk, but there's steel underneath as his gaze locks onto Tae Hyung's back. The question hangs in the air, cold and direct. Are you the S-Rank awakened from Korea? Gao Lin steps forward, his expression sharp and probing as he locks eyes with the man in the hoodie. Tae Hyung doesn't answer with words. Instead, he turns his head just slightly, his red eyes cutting toward the speaker with a silent, chilling weight. Tae Hyung doesn't flinch. Instead, he fires back with a venomous counter-question, asking if Gao Lin is just a coward who gets ignored and doesn't even have the guts to get angry. His expression is pure, cold contempt. He delivers one final line, dismissive as a door closing, saying they'll meet again later. The words land like a slap as Tae Hyung turns his back on the confrontation entirely, walking away as if the exchange wasn't even worth his time. A cold, dismissive voice slices through the tension, stating he has things to attend to and will take his leave. The dismissal grows sharper as he adds that Korean awakened beings won't be much help, telling them not to waste their time on petty distractions. Gao Lin and the observing agents watch in stunned shock at the sheer arrogance. Without another glance, Tae Hyung turns his back on all of them, hands shoved casually into his pockets, and walks away down the corridor. Tae Hyung's dismissal leaves a suffocating silence in the corridor, but the real shock is the secret his system just uncovered. A sharp voice cuts through the tension, laying out the brutal math of survival. They can't rely on small fry from minor nations anymore. If they want to survive the nightmare waiting in the ruins, they need real heavyweights. Tae Hyung walks away, his crimson eyes calm and utterly unbothered. A blonde agent watches his retreating back, frustration tightening her jaw as the bitter truth sinks in. "Shh," she mutters, "they aren't even in his league." He continues down the empty hall, hands shoved in his pockets, radiating complete indifference. But he isn't alone. From the shadows of a doorway, a silent observer tracks his every step. He wasn't just ignoring them out of arrogance. A shimmering blue system screen erupts in his vision, scanning Gao Lin and Benjamin Proud and laying their stats bare. Tae Hyung's crimson eye burns with analytical light. He sees everything, and he's already moved on. The system locks onto Benjamin Proud, coldly listing his true titles, Dark Sorcerer, the 10th Apostle, and the False Saint. The contrast between his relaxed, idol-perfect smile and those terrifying credentials is downright sickening. Oblivious to the nightmare standing beside her, a blonde, cat-eared girl bubbles over with excitement. She proudly declares Benjamin an A-rank healing awakened, a saint who has healed countless patients, completely blind to the dark truth his profile just revealed. Tae Hyung locks his gaze onto Benjamin with unmistakable disdain. Oblivious to the lethal judgment hanging over him, Benjamin lets out a confused murmur, sweat beading on his face as he tries to connect the dots. A cold system note materializes over Benjamin's chest, labeling him a servant of. Tae Hyung's eyes widen with recognition as the pattern clicks into place, linking the smiling fraud to a past enemy of the same mysterious allegiance. The scan shifts to Dylan Lane, an S-rank combat mage boasting massive magic power. But beneath his impressive stats, a chilling label hangs, follower of? Sensing the shift in the air, the brown-haired man steps forward, a bead of sweat betraying the tension beneath his casual smile. He tilts his head, eyes narrowing with quiet intensity, as he asks if Tae Hyung has business with him. The blonde girl can barely contain herself, tugging at her master's sleeve to announce that this is the Saint of Manchester. Tae Hyung's expression doesn't shift, his red eyes remaining cold and utterly unimpressed by her excited revelation. Benjamin smoothly plays the part of the gracious idol, thanking a fawning fan for their support. Then Tae Hyung cuts through the noise, his tone flat and interrogative. "A saint, huh? You're a healing type awakened, right?" Tae Hyung stands with his arms crossed, waiting for the lie to fumble itself. Benjamin forces a closed-eye smile, sweat beating down his temple as his flawless saint persona begins to crack under the weight of that piercing stare. Benjamin smoothly confirms he specializes in status effect healing, desperately clinging to his public persona. Taehyung's lips curl into a knowing smile as he begins to respond. I see. I thought you were a... Letting the accusation hang thick and heavy in the air. Benjamin's eyes go wide, his composure shattering under the weight of the unfinished sentence. His breath turns shaky in the dead silence, realizing whatever identity Taehyung just hinted at is far worse than not knowing. Throwing his head back with a hearty, practiced laugh, Benjamin denies the very magic that made him famous. As far as I know, healing magic doesn't exist, he claims, his forced casualness betraying a man desperately trying to keep his lie from shattering. Taehyung remains silent, his gaze steady as a cold system note materializes. Healing can only be performed by healing. Type awakened beings. The fundamental law shatters Benjamin's denial, exposing the rot at the heart of his saint persona. Taehyung repeats the denial back to him, his voice dripping with knowing sarcasm. So, healing magic isn't a thing, he scoffs, turning away with a faint, dangerous smile that promises this confrontation is far from over. Dylan turns to the others with a nervous smile, trying to smooth over the tension after Taehyung's cold departure. Don't mind that guy, he dismisses, but the nervous sheen of sweat on his temple betrays his desperate attempt to play it cool. Taehyung walks away without another word, leaving the exposed lies behind. Mary falls into step beside him, her expression hardening into absolute resolve as she quietly affirms, "Yes, master." 3 onlookers watch the confrontation from the shadows, their faces tight with shock and anticipation. A blonde woman breathes out, her voice low and heavy. It seems like things are about to begin. The word hell is scrawled across the ceiling in stark, glowing letters, landing with the weight of a death sentence. Taehyung stands beneath it, arms crossed and utterly unmoved, his sharp gaze calculating their next move. 3 figures turn in unison, their attention locking onto the approaching threat with heady, focused silence. The blonde leader in an ornate vest takes the point, his expression sharp and calculating as the real game begins. Taehyung stands with his arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips as he looks directly ahead. The single word, "Hey," hangs in the air, heavy with unspoken challenge and absolute certainty. The man in the gray hoodie breaks first, his fist clenching at his side as the weight of the exposed trap crashes down. Taehyung just shifted the board, and standing still isn't an option anymore. He shouts the only move left, "Let's get moving." The group arrives at what's left of Osaka, staring in silence at the absolute ruin. Buildings lean at impossible angles, and a low, eerie sound drifts across the wreckage. Whatever tore through this city isn't done yet. Elsewhere, 2 agents stare ahead in sudden, sharp alarm as they realize a critical member of their team is missing. Anderson is nowhere to be seen. One questions, her voice cutting through the tension with growing dread. A blonde agent pieces together the enemy's strategy, her voice steady as she explains that Anderson is being held in reserve. They intend to use S-ranks like Taehyung to soften the threat first, saving Anderson to deliver the final, killing blow. The blonde leader delivers a chilling update, naming Lei Feng and Gao Lin as the ones positioned with the hidden operative. They aren't just holding Anderson back, they've orchestrated a coordinated final strike, and everyone is already inside the trap. A sharp, tactical question hangs in the air. Why hold back their strongest piece? The answer reveals a staggering political cost. China has completely surrendered the rights to the magic stones and enemy corpses to the United States, proving their sheer desperation. A voice breaks the eerie silence of the ruins, warning that it might be dangerous. Below them, the shattered skyline of Osaka stretches out, a skeletal monument to a city that never stood a chance. The sheer scale of China's concession hangs heavy. For a prideful nation to relinquish that much material and ownership signifies a level of fear that goes beyond strategy. It confirms a level 8 enemy isn't just a target, it's an existential nightmare they are willing to pay any price to escape. A blonde woman stares ahead, sweat beading on her temples as she processes the weight of the surrender. It feels like they're really desperate, she admits quietly, realizing China has already calculated the cost and concluded this monster might be the end of them all. A dark-haired figure delivers a quiet, firm command. "I see," he says, before the order comes down with cold finality. "All of you, fall back." A lone figure stands with their back to the ruins, staring down the rubble-choked street. The word "stop" hangs in the air, freezing the moment in stark tension. A blonde woman grins, reassuring her superior that as B ranks, they're already resigned to rear placement. But her smile is met with a sharp, authoritative refusal. "Number, right now." Taehyung's eyes snap open, glowing with a fierce, unnatural blue light. "Retreat from the battlefield entirely," he commands, his tone absolute and final, leaving no room for argument. The command echoes with terrifying urgency, ordering everyone to get as far away as possible. The warning carries across the battlefield as a massive, unseen presence begins to manifest in the sky above the ruins. A violent explosion of red and blue energy erupts from the level 8 enemy, tearing the air apart. The shockwave slams into an unseen figure, drawing a pained grunt as they are violently thrown back, shocked by the sheer severity of the blast. Panic erupts as a voice shouts in wide-eyed terror, pointing at the sky. Below, the shattered cityscape of Osaka stretches out in total devastation, while two figures stand in silent dread, staring down at the apocalypse. A whispered question hangs in the air: is it starting? The answer comes not in words but in a violent eruption of crimson energy. A massive swirling portal of red light rips through the darkness, painting the ruins in a bloody glow. Taehyung grips the Crimson Fall Demon Sword, red lightning arcing from the monstrous blade. It's a weapon of destruction that consumes its wielder's vitality with every swing, turning this into a deadly gamble with his own life. Dark energy curls off his shoulder as he addresses the hungry blade. "Don't mess with me. I'm your master." The sword's eye blazes in response, but a high, giggling sound echoes from the ruins. The level 8 enemy is watching, and it isn't afraid. A colossal single eye fills the sky above the panicked streets of Osaka, its amused gaze locking onto the tiny figure below. Taehyung stands amidst the ruin, gripping the life-draining blade as the monster's chirping laughter drowns out the silence. The bloodshot iris dilates in amusement, a deep, resonant groan vibrating through the air. Every heartbeat Taehyung spends holding the life-draining sword, he can feel the monster watching, laughing, and waiting for him to crumble. While the men behind him stumble backward in raw panic, Taehyung stands motionless, his expression almost bored. He isn't running, he's measuring the distance between himself and oblivion and finding it acceptable. Taehyung's eyes burn with a fierce crimson glow as he settles into a ready stance. The massive sword hums with sinister, eager energy, its red surface reflecting the devastation of Osaka as he prepares to wield it. Taehyung's boot steps forward with decisive finality. His voice cuts across the ruined city with a sharp, non-negotiable order. B-rank awakeners, fall back! Leaving a brown-haired awakener frozen in stark terror. Dust billows as the B-rank awakener grabs his comrade, his voice cracking with desperate urgency. "Quickly, retreat!" he screams, scrambling away from the devastation as the level 8 enemy looms over them. The awakener's face twists with raw disbelief. "Damn, it's too strong," he mutters, staring at the destruction. Then a cold voice cuts through the tension, aimed squarely at whoever dares to face what's coming next. "Do you think you can handle this?" Sweat trails down the blonde awakener's temple as his face tightens with strain. He looks up, his expression a mask of profound uncertainty, and murmurs, "I'm not sure." He repeats it, voice barely a whisper. It isn't a hesitation, it's a confession of total, paralyzing indecision. A cold, systemic decree echoes across the battlefield. Enemies are categorized by rank. The fleeing B-rank awakeners freeze. A brown-haired man glances back, face twisted in raw panic. Others stumble beside him, eyes fixed on a silhouette emerging from the shadows. The edge of his sword gleams with a hungry red light. Taehyung is coming, and they can only stare in frozen terror as the gap between them and the catastrophic power they were ordered to escape rapidly closes. A voice cuts through the tension, cold and analytical. If the enemies are commoners, the thought hangs unfinished. Then, with dawning horror, the realization drops. That one. It's like a noblesse. A single human eye widens in frozen terror, the pale blue iris webbed with angry red veins. This isn't just a strong monster, this is royalty among monsters, and it's looking right at them. The brown-haired awakener stares at Taehyung's retreating back, his eyes wide with pure, paralyzed horror. Above them, the massive veined eye of the level 8 enemy blots out the sky. His voice shudders, broken, dropping the realization like a death sentence. "I don't think I can defeat it." It isn't just fear, it's a soul-crushing surrender, watching a power he can't comprehend walk away to face a threat he can't imagine. Still reeling, the brown-haired awakener turns to his blonde comrade in the ruins. "What are you saying?" he demands, voice tight with disbelief. The blonde man simply chuckles, a faint, eerie smile playing on his lips. "Ha ha, nothing at all." The casual, dismissive tone hangs in the air like a bad omen, a stark contrast to the catastrophic battle unfolding just beyond their sight. Desperate to cling to hope, the brown-haired awakener forces out an affirmation, "I still believe we can win." The voice next to him drips with chilling doubt, asking the gut-wrenching question, "Do you really think you can defeat that monster?" His face, beaded with sweat and twisted in raw terror, says everything his words don't. He's not even trying to convince himself. The agonized question hangs in the air, aimed at the overwhelming silhouette of Taehyung against the monster. Is the gap between us really that vast? A firm, determined voice answers the unspoken doubt. "That's why we're here." The dark-haired awakener stares ahead, expression set with grim resolve, ready to stand in the shadow of that impossible fight. The blonde man watches the brown-haired awakener, who is sweating and clearly terrified. The blonde's expression is one of grave, analytical calm. The brown-haired man forces out a shaky admission, voice thick with doubt. Well, that is true, but alone, it might be too much for me. He's confessing his utter inadequacy, his courage crumbling as he stares at the impossible level 8 threat looming over them. Face slick with sweat and eyes wide with despair, the blonde awakener finally voices the terrifying truth. Even with other S-rank awakeners, it will be a tough fight. His voice cracks, the admission hanging like a death sentence. Ahead of him, Tae-hyung stands motionless, back turned, gripping the blood-red handle of the demon sword. A silent, towering silhouette ready to walk into a fight the others have already conceded is impossible. Then, a new voice cuts through, heavy with the need for a plan. Then how do you propose? He's here. A sharp, definitive declaration slices through the tension. The moment hangs, then a violent surge of crimson energy erupts, tearing through the air with crackling, destructive force. Tae-hyung doesn't listen. He leaps from the ruined building, the crimson fall demon sword blazing with red energy, his expression a mask of fierce, reckless determination. Below him, the other awakeners watch in horror. That lunatic! One shouts. Another pleads desperately. Hey, don't charge in alone! But Tae-hyung is already midair, a lone silhouette hurtling toward the colossal, eye-like level 8 enemy, utterly ignoring their cries. Tae-hyung hurtles through the open air, the crimson fall demon sword blazing red in his grip as he plummets toward the level 8 enemy. And then the true scale of the horror reveals itself. A single, massive eyeball, pale blue iris ringed by bloodshot white, fills the sky like a grotesque moon. Tendrils of raw, muscular red flesh coil around the skeletal remains of skyscrapers. Tae-hyung's silhouette is a speck against it, a single human figure, sword drawn, falling straight into the maw of something that dwarfs entire city blocks. The eye tracks him with cold, deliberate focus. There is no hesitation in his descent, only the quiet, terrible certainty of a man who chose this. Tae-hyung's descent is a blur of violence and speed. The crimson fall demon sword tears through the air, leaving a blazing red trail as he plummets toward the colossal enemy. Red energy spirals around him, the sound of his fall building to a deafening crescendo. Then the impact. The sword crashes into the monster's surface with a thunderous crack, shattering stone and flesh alike, debris erupting outward in a burst of crimson and gray. The force of the collision sends shockwaves rippling through the air. Tae-hyung has made contact with the impossible. Tae-hyung plummets downward, eyes blazing crimson, the demon sword held tight as city ruins rush up around him. Debris spirals in his wake, the sheer force of his descent tearing through the air. A voice from the shaken B-rank awakeners rings out with dawning hope, even if it's too much alone, with him here. The unspoken question hangs, is Tae-hyung's arrival enough to shift the impossible odds? The blonde figure's mouth opens, voice cutting through the chaos with a sharp, decisive declaration, then I'll have to do it, a beat of silence. His expression settles, the raw tension hardening into something colder, more resolved. With a final, chilling certainty, he states, I'll crush it. The faint light in his eyes broadcasts a terrifying shift in the battle's momentum. The blonde awakener's arm shoots skyward, golden sword catching the light as it blazes against the ruined skyline. A single, battle-crying declaration erupts from his lips, charge! The blade gleams with deadly precision, aimed at the colossal enemy above. No more hesitation, no more doubt. After declaring he'd crush it himself, the golden weapon is raised high, a signal to every terrified awakener watching that this fight has truly begun. The battle against the level 8 horror is no longer Tae-hyung's alone. The blonde awakener's golden sword cuts through the ruined skyline as his battle cry rips through the air. For a split second, the other awakeners stare, electrified by his raw defiance. Below them, the silent, devastated city blocks stretch out in ruin. The massive level 8 enemy has torn through everything, leaving only skeletal structures in its wake. The air hangs heavy with the aftermath of its passage, a desolate, empty battleground waiting for their charge. The charged atmosphere of doubt and fear shatters. A clenched fist pumps toward the sky, rising to reveal a crowd of awakeners, all facing the same direction. A figure in a dark coat stands before them. This is Anderson, the world's strongest. His arrival is the spark. A roar erupts from the group. Yes, the world's strongest witch US! The shout splits into a single reverent name, and then a unified, thunderous battle cry. The collective charge is no longer a suicide pact, it's a rally. Hope floods the ranks as they surge forward together. The blonde awakener's face twists with awe and disbelief, a bead of sweat trailing down his temple as he processes the arrival of the legend. The sheer weight of the moment hangs in the air. The man who was once called the strongest in the world, Anderson, is here, and his presence alone reshapes the entire battlefield. A heavy, ominous promise cuts through the air, and the one who defeated me, as if I were just a child, will now show their true strength. The statement signals a terrifying escalation. A system display floods the air, revealing the identity of the colossal threat. Name, Tusra, Nose. Title, the one who gazes into the abyss, Lord of Destruction. Origin, Divine Realm. Its listed skills are maxed or high level, including Army of Destruction and Gaze of Madness. The monstrous entity they face is no mere beast. It's a named ancient Lord of Annihilation, and it's finally holding nothing back. The colossal bloodshot eyeball of Tusra Nose pulses with an eerie pale blue light, its iris a vortex of unnatural energy. Its pale blue iris becomes a mesmerizing alien pattern of pure destruction. This is the Gaze of Madness given form, a window into a realm of pure annihilation. A system display overlays the horror, confirming the nightmare's tangible might. Its strength stat alone is an astronomical 7,000, a number that makes the previous threats feel like a prelude. The eye remains watching, unblinking, as the true scale of the abyss is laid bare. The system overlay freezes the battlefield, quantifying the abyss: strength, 7,000, agility, 5,500, magic, 6,300, endurance, 8,300, vitality, a staggering 9,000. Below the numbers, its classification solidifies: unique spec, primordial species. Then, a chilling footnote appears, a detail that twists the knife of despair: loyal follower of an unknown master. This monster isn't just a force of nature, it's a servant. And its master is still a terrifying unknown. The ruined city street stretches out behind Taehyung as he stands amidst the rubble, his sharp red eyes fixed upward on the colossal Tusra Nose. His expression is hard, focused, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. The Crimson Fall demon sword hangs at his side, its red glow a stark contrast to his dark suit. Then, a crucial realization crystallizes in his mind: the enemy has higher strength and endurance than he does. He knows the terrifying math of the fight ahead. The massive, bloodshot eyeball of Tusra Nose looms over the ruined city, its pale blue iris a cold, unblinking disk of alien consciousness. It watches, utterly still, as if the entire charge of Awakeners is nothing more than a minor irritation. Its pale blue iris becomes a swirling vortex of blue, pulling the light and sanity from the world itself. This isn't just sight, it's a weapon. The Gaze of Madness is active. A final chilling realization resonates across the battlefield, defining the horror in terms beyond stats and levels. A true god in the flesh, completely adorned with divinity. Taehyung stands in the ruins, his sharp gaze locked upward. A warning cuts through his thoughts. The enemy's power is divine, and even contact with it is lethally dangerous. The colossal, unblinking eye of Tusra Nose continues its silent watch above, the threat of its Gaze of Madness a constant, perilous weight. Taehyun's silhouette cuts through the ruined cityscape, his body tense as he moves through the devastation. His dark suit catches the grim light as he plants his stance. Then the power erupts. Red lightning crackles along his forearm, searing through the fabric, each pulse of crimson energy sharper than the last. His red eyes blaze with focus, teeth gritted, every muscle coiled. He's not just fighting anymore, he's unleashing something ancient, something that burns from the inside out. His hand reaches forward, fingers splayed against the force building in his body, the demon sword trailing behind in a streak of blood-red light. A sharp, violent crack of power shakes the very air. Whatever comes next, Taehyung has crossed the line. The energy coursing through him isn't controlled, it's hungry. A sharp gasp tears through the air as the battlefield explodes into motion. Taehyung unleashes a devastating slash. A colossal arc of crimson energy, like a demonic blade made solid, erupts from his swing, tearing through the space before him. The impact is cataclysmic, spawning a blinding starburst of red light at its core while shards of blue crystalline matter shatter and scatter violently in the shockwave. He's put everything into this strike, pushing his body and his cursed sword to the absolute limit against the divine horror looming above. Taehyung's crimson tears through the air, a brutal arc of demonic energy aimed straight at the colossal eye of Tusra Nose. The impact is cataclysmic. Blue crystalline shards shatter and scatter in the shockwave as the divine beast's power rains down in the form of dark blue droplets, crashing into the ruined city below. The buildings crumble further under the barrage, the sky dark with debris as the battle between the demon lord and the primordial god reaches a fever pitch. Young's massive crimson tears through the air and connects with the colossal eye of Tushra nose. The gash rips across its sclera, a jagged black wound against the bloodshot white. A sickening whir echoes as the pupil contracts violently. Then, from the wound, a thick, dark fluid begins to ooze downwards. Below, the assembled awakeners stare upward, a collective gasp of confusion escaping them. They can't process what they're seeing. The blonde awakener's expression hardens into grim concern as he watches the divine beast's injury. Taehyung's face twists with pure revulsion. His red eyes narrow, teeth bared, and one word escapes his lips: disgusting. Dark, wing-like shards tear away from something above, spiraling downward through the blue sky. Blood sprays in a violent burst as the sound of shredding cuts through the air, the divine beast's corrupted essence ripping apart under the force of whatever Taehyung just unleashed. The impact lands with a visceral crack. Blood and dark fluid spray across the fractured surface of Tuzra Nose's eye, black veins of damage spreading like a shattered screen. For a split second, it seems like Taehyung's attack actually worked. But the divine beast's response is instantaneous and terrifying. A system notification blazes to life over its wounded iris, declaring the activation of its max-level skill, Army of Destruction. The pupil constricts, and the iris begins to glow with an intense, building light, channeling catastrophic power. This wasn't a killing blow, it just woke the monster up. The colossal eye of Tuzra Nose pulses, its wounded sclera still leaking dark fluid as a new, terrifying energy begins to build within it. Taehyung is already moving forward, a determined silhouette against the looming threat. His hand grips the hilt of the Crimson Fall Demon Sword, its blade a jagged, blood-red arc against the fractured ground. Then, a deep, resonant rumble shakes the very air, the sound of the divine beast channeling its max skill, preparing to unleash annihilation from its iris. Tuzra Nose's Army of Destruction skill activates, and dark winged shapes begin plummeting from the wounded eye like a nightmare rain. They slam into the ruined city streets, each impact cratering the ground with sickening force. These aren't abstract energy blasts, they're creatures, blue-black, horned beasts with glowing orange eyes and jaws full of razor teeth, scrambling to their feet with predatory hunger. The wounded divine eye above has spawned an entire horde, and they're already spreading across the battlefield, snarling, ready to tear through everything in their path. Taehyung didn't just wake the monster up, he unleashed its army. Taehyung plants himself low and wide, his dark suit whipping as he swings the Crimson Fall Demon Sword in a vicious horizontal arc. The red blade cuts through the air with a harsh crack, and the aftermath ripples outward. Debris and shattered concrete spray in concentric waves around his stance as the shockwave from his slash tears across the ruined street. His red eyes burn with focus, teeth set, every line of his body coiled with intent. He's not fighting the eye anymore. He's fighting its army now, and he's cutting through them like they're made of paper. Fine, let's see who wins. Bring it on. Taehyung's defiant roar cuts through the chaos of the ruined battlefield. His silhouette is a dark streak against the apocalyptic sky as he launches himself into the air, the Crimson Fall Demon Sword blazing with hungry red light. He's diving straight into the writhing swarm of Tuzra Nose's spawned horrors, his body wreathed in crackling energy as he brings his blade down in a devastating, sweeping arc. A colossal dark slash tears through the mass of creatures, carving a path of violent annihilation. The dark creatures pour from above with a sinister fluttering sound, their orange eyes blazing with predatory hunger. Mary stands alone in the ruined street, sword drawn, her body coiled with tension as one of the horned beasts lunges toward her with raking claws. Its glowing eye locks onto her. This thing is fast, and it's right on top of her. A creature from the swarm screams as it lunges forward, but the attack never lands. A golden arc of energy slashes through the air, carving clean through the beast's dark form. The blade leaves a trail of brilliant yellow light in its wake. A blonde awakener stands right there, watching with jaw clenched, his red eyes sharp and focused. His expression says everything. He's not done fighting, and he's not losing anyone today. A blinding flash of golden light explodes as a devastating strike connects with one of the horned creatures, the impact tearing through the air with a deafening crash. In the aftermath, a chilling realization cuts through the chaos. Every scrap of flesh that falls from the colossal eye doesn't just die. It mutates into a new rank 4 enemy, turning the battlefield into a nightmare that multiplies with every blow. White's sharp red eyes blaze with command as he rallies the strongest fighters on the battlefield. He shouts for all S-rank awakeners to step forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. The directive is clear. They need to hold the line against these multiplying minions before they're completely overwhelmed. Mary's sword whistles downward, cleaving through the air to strike the lunging horned beast. Her expression reveals pure, focused determination. The creature's glowing orange eye locks onto her, alien and hungry. A hand clenches tight around a sword hilt, energy crackling at the ready. White's sharp profile appears, his gaze assessing the chaotic battlefield. The S-rank awakeners hold the line, but the relentless swarm from the colossal eye shows no sign of ending. A brutal, clawed hand rips into a fighter's throat, the sickening impact punctuated by a sharp tear. The victim chokes out a shocked, guttural cry, his body going rigid with pain and surprise. Below, White's furious command to hold the line cuts through the chaos, a desperate rally as the defense fractures from within. The colossal eye of Tusra nose dominates the sky, its iris contracted, the wound from Taeyong's crimson slash still fresh. Then the dark, corrupted fluid begins to drip. Thick, viscous drops of the divine beast's essence slide down from the wounded sclera, each one a testament to the fact that Taeyong's blade actually drew blood from a god. The dripping continues, a small but seismic moment. The first real damage inflicted on something that was supposed to be untouchable. Taehyung is midair, a dark silhouette against a swirling purple sky. His crimson fall demon sword is a blazing vertical slash of red light, a brutal line cleaving through the air. Below him, the sound of sharp, slicing impacts rings out as he lands. He's surrounded now by a rain of dissolving black shards, the remains of the creatures he just obliterated. The sword's energy arcs around him in a sweeping, destructive wave, tearing apart anything in its path as he fights to stay above the swarm. A massive crimson energy wave tears through the air in a blur of red and pink, raw, devastating force cutting at impossible speed. Below, the ruined street becomes a kill zone. The dark, horned creatures that swarm from Tusra Nose's wounded eye get caught in the sweeping arc of destruction. Taehyung's blade carves a path through the horde, the energy wave obliterating everything in its wake. The swarm doesn't stand a chance against that kind of power. Whatever's left is getting swept away like dust. A massive, screaming surge of purple energy erupts, tearing through the air. At the center of the blast, a head of dark hair whips violently as glowing red veins ignite across the scalp, pulsing with raw, demonic power. The energy crackles and intensifies, the red lines spreading like circuitry coming online, a terrifying transformation taking hold. The glowing red veins pulse across Taehyung's scalp as his demonic transformation intensifies. He raises the Crimson Fall demon sword, its crimson gem blazing, his red eyes sharp with cold focus. Then a voice cuts through the air from a distant building. Isn't that awakener from that small country messing everything up without a proper plan? The criticism hangs over the battlefield as Taehyung stands poised to strike. A dark-horned creature with glowing orange eyes snarls, its maw open as it lunges from the shadows. The brown-haired awakener stands firm in a ruined street, golden daggers in hand, surrounded by the snarling swarm of Tusra Nose's minions. He deflects a clawed swipe with one blade, his posture tense but controlled. Frustration boils over as he shouts, "WH, we're dealing with the minions!" His voice echoes the growing desperation of the battlefield, where S-rank fighters are being bogged down by the endless multiplying fodder instead of striking at the colossal eye itself. White stands surrounded by Tusra Nose's dark-horned minions in the ruined streets. With a furious snarl, he unleashes a torrent of brilliant yellow energy from his blade, the slashes tearing through the air and cleaving lunging creatures in half. Each strike disintegrates the beasts, but the swarm keeps coming, their glowing orange eyes fixed on him. White's face is a mask of grim determination as he cuts a path through the horde, the yellow light of his attacks illuminating the desperate stand against an endless tide. The words hit like a physical blow, spoken by someone watching Taehyung carve through the divine army. That person is the strongest among us. A pause, then a correction that redefines the scale entirely. No, stronger than all of us combined. The blonde-haired awakener's eyes go wide with horrified, awestruck realization. He's not just watching a powerful ally, he's witnessing a force that dwarfs every S-rank on the field put together, and the terror of that truth is etched into his face. The question cuts through the chaos, a voice filled with despair and awe. Is there anyone here who can fight that monster like him? As the words hang in the air, a massive, swirling tendril of dark and red energy lashes out, smashing through the facade of a city building. The sheer scale of the destruction is laid bare. Then, the colossal bloodshot eye of Tusra Nose dominates the sky, its iris cold and unblinking. A silent, terrifying answer. The battlefield falls silent for a beat. Taehyung is fighting alone against a god, and the rest of them are just struggling to survive its leftovers. High above the slaughter, two women watch a god dismantle their world, paralyzed by the sheer scale of the disaster. The blonde awakener's voice drops, hollow with resignation. They can't stop a god, but they can at least keep the B ranks alive. Panic finally cracks her composure. Eyes wide with alarm, she screams over the distant roars, begging Park Si-yeon to request backup immediately. She shoves a heavy metallic weapon into her colleague's hands, ordering her to be careful, but the woman in the business suit just strides toward the slaughter without a second of hesitation. High above, the colossal iris of Tusra nose contracts. Dark, corrupted veins spread across the wounded sclera like a living web, pulsing with sinister energy as the god gathers itself. Down below, a massive clawed limb slams into a brown-haired awakener's back, sending him stumbling into a trap. He whips around, daggers raised, only to be completely swallowed by a fresh wave of glowing orange-eyed minions. A horned minion's claw rips through another awakener's side, drawing a choked gasp of pain. He staggers back, dodging one lunge only to take another, surrounded by a horde of gaping maws ready to tear him apart. An S-rank awakener screams as dark creatures latch onto him, ripping flesh in an endless tide of fodder. A watcher spits out the bitter absurdity of it all. The strongest fighter on the field is battling a god alone, while the rest of them drown in disposable monsters. A man in a hoodie stares in sheer awe at Tae-young effortlessly handling the colossal enemy. He mutters about the overwhelming power of the Korean awakener, his thoughts trailing off as he watches the impossible display. A concussive blast sends a man in a business suit flying backward, his shout about the Korean awakener's overconfidence lost in the explosion. Dark minions swarm him instantly, a shadowy beast lunging with jaws agape to close in for the kill. Frustration boils over as a blond man watches Tae-hyung charge the colossal god alone. He curses the man for ignoring his team and going berserk, his gaze dropping to the ornate crimson-gemmed sword hilt in his own grip. From behind a ruined building, a black-haired man grips his ornate sword as its crimson gem pulses faintly. A grim realization dawns on him: the unstoppable Tae-hyung is actually starting to get pushed back. A watcher in the shadows grips an ornate blade, wondering what happens to everyone else if Tae-hyung actually gets overwhelmed. Crimson energy pulses along the dark steel like a living wound, the weapon practically vibrating with hunger. Tae-hyung's dark sword emits a low, vibrating hum, crimson energy writhing around the blade like living smoke. He drops into a low, ready stance, every muscle coiled to unleash a cataclysmic strike against the god he's been fighting alone. The disintegration starts at his fingertips. Tae-hyung's hand crumbles into drifting particles of ash and dust, the brutal price of wielding that hungry sword paid in his own flesh and bone. The decay spreads rapidly up his hand and wrist, turning his fingers to ash. Tae-hyung stares in shock as his own body comes apart, realizing the cursed sword is consuming him. The monstrous eye of Tusra nose dominates the sky, massive, bloodshot, and unblinking. Crimson flame-like protrusions crown the orb, and while the capillaries are burst and bleeding from Tae-hyung's assault, the god isn't retreating, it's staring right back. Tae-hyung's face twists into a strained, defiant smirk, smiling right through the decay, eating his body alive. Below him, Tusra Nose's crimson feathered appendages rustle heavily, the god stirring in response to the damage. Massive red wings erupt from Tae-hyung's back with a deafening crackle of crimson lightning. His body is literally coming apart, but he just spreads his wings wide and whispers a furious curse at the colossal eye. Dark energy crackles around the newly formed crimson wings as his power surges to staggering new heights. His gaze of madness skill hits level 5, and the colossal wounded eye of Tusra Nose shudders, locking onto the escalating threat. Tae-hyung locks eyes with the colossal god, an insane smirk twisting his lips. He taunts the bleeding orb, asking if it really wants to go mad against the madman, as dark energy intensifies around his crumbling form. The crimson wings surge with a deafening roar of red lightning, veins bulging as Tae-hyung channels his breaking body into a single charge. His berserk state hits level 9, pushing through the disintegration to strike. A crimson wing slices downward, tearing into the colossal eye with a vicious, grinding impact. The pale sclera shatters, black cracks spiderwebbing outward as a brilliant, four-pointed star burns directly within the punctured pupil. Tae-hyung's wings slice down again, connecting with a blinding starburst of golden light and a resonant clang. He hovers against the blue sky, wings spread wide, staring down the bleeding god. He just blinded even further. Tae-hyung hurtles downward like a guided missile, crimson wings slicing the air apart as he dives with everything he has. Despite his hand crumbling and his body fighting him, he accelerates straight toward a massive explosion of golden hexagonal energy. He halts at point-blank range, hovering mere feet from the colossal eye. The god's sclera is fractured and bleeding from his strikes, but Tae-hyung just stares directly into the massive, wounded iris, completely unflinching as his body disintegrates. Taehyung plunges his sword deep into the fractured eye, driving it home as golden hexagonal energy shatters outward. Every muscle locks with exertion, a guttural cry of rage and agony tearing from his throat as he commits to blinding the god. The battle erupts into a blinding collision of golden, honeycomb-patterned energy. Taehyung is silhouetted in the center of the inferno, his crimson wing flashing as the god's overwhelming power meets his own head-on. The golden explosion tears across the surface of the colossal eye, shattering the hexagonal barrier in a brilliant starburst. Black fractures spread like fault lines through stone as the eye's structure begins to collapse inward, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Taehyung roars, channeling every last shred of strength into a desperate upward slash. His crimson wings flare violently as the dark sword connects with a deafening explosion of white and golden energy, carving into the colossal mass above him. The divine barrier shatters with a deafening crack, exploding outward in a starburst of white light. From the god's own perspective, the world spins violently as chunks of its armored form are blasted away, raining down over Osaka. Tusranos' colossal eye finally cracks open, splitting apart from the inside as golden energy bursts across the fractures. Taehyung hovers amid the destruction, staring at the devastation in raw disbelief, muttering that the guy must be crazy. Down in the rubble, a cursed sword's jeweled hilt pulses with hungry energy. A man in a green hoodie staggers in stunned shock, while White sits calmly in the debris, completely unfazed by the destruction raining down around her. The tactical truth becomes clear. Focusing on the eye stops the monster from multiplying. Mary, the man in the green hoodie, and White stand in the wreckage, realizing they can't just sit back while Taehyung tries to blind a god alone. They're moving in. White's blue eye sharpens, utterly focused. The calm is gone, replaced by a cold, predatory intensity as she locks her gaze forward, ready for the real fight to start. Mary barely dodges a swiping claw, reversing her grip to cleave a horned beast in a burst of blue light. Right beside her, the man in the green hoodie connects with a brutal, bone-crushing punch to another beast's face, his raw power leaving Mary wide-eyed. A sharp tactical worry cuts through the street fight. If they join the fray, won't the monsters just start multiplying again? The unspoken answer hangs heavy over the rubble-choked street, a calculation that freezes them for a split second. The man in the green hoodie drives his fist home, crumpling a horned beast to the ground with a devastating impact. The creature's glowing eyes flicker out, leaving the street quiet for a heartbeat as he stands over his kill, breathing hard. The debate ends. A brown-haired man grips his sword, jaw set and eyes burning, and declares he's joining Taehyung at the front line. They are done watching from the sidelines. The group assembles in the rubble-strewn street, battered but standing. Taehyung takes the front, gripping his cursed sword, and issues a sharp command for everyone to adjust their movements and push forward. A blond man surges forward, his body a blur of motion as he launches himself directly into the chaos. He tears through the air like a comet, marking his path from the rubble straight to the heart of the fight. The blonde warrior crashes into a knot of beasts, his golden sword sending dark fur and sparks flying, but the monsters multiply faster than they can be cut. Mary and White fight back to back, dispatching lunging beasts, while Taehyung hovers above on crimson wings, eyeing the cracked expanse of the god's eye. Despite the relentless assault, Tusranos' colossal eye remains largely unscathed. The massive iris dilates with a chilling, amused sound, shifting from mere observation to a growing, predatory focus. It's preparing. Taehyung soars upward, only to confront a terrible sight. The god's honeycomb-patterned divine barrier has fully reformed. He hangs suspended before the blazing shield, realizing his most devastating attacks only bought them a momentary pause. The realization hits Taehyung like a physical blow, and the cost of his assault finally catches up. He crashes down onto the rubble in agony, the cursed sword drinking him alive as his body buckles under the searing strain. White raises her sword high, shouting for a wind slash as she summons a massive glowing crescent of wind. The ethereal blade tears through the smoky sky, slamming directly into the blazing golden barrier and making the honeycomb pattern flare violently. Boots crunch over broken concrete as another fighter steps forward, unleashing a massive attack that slams into the golden barrier. The impact tears through the honeycomb pattern with a deafening crack, making the colossal eye shudder and web with fresh fractures. But the barrier's golden light isn't fading. Taehyung stands in the street, staring up at the unbroken, blazing shield in sheer, crushing disbelief, tearing a hollow, no ways from his throat. Taehyung descends on massive crimson wings, landing with a guttural shout that shakes the air. His gaze is empty and defeated as he looks at his cursed sword, uttering the final, crushing verdict that their entire assault was pointless. A man's muscles coil as he brings a massive white pillar crashing down in a brutal overhead swing. The impact explodes dark, bat-like creatures into a shower of blood and black feathers, cracking the very ground beneath him. A fighter in a vest launches himself from the ruins, plummeting down to drive his full force into the rubble. The blow erupts in a cataclysmic explosion of shattered rock and purple energy, the sound of devastation ringing across the battlefield. Violet lightning shatters the asphalt, erupting upward with brutal, piercing intent. High above, the colossal eye of Tusra Nose shudders as the beams carve fresh, jagged fractures across its bloodshot surface. The god is bleeding, but it's far from dead. A fighter in a dark suit plummets from the sky, dual swords trailing a comet of violent purple energy. The blast tears through the cityscape, but the killing blow comes from a single, elegant pink blade that plunges with absolute precision, piercing the god's cracked surface and breaching its divine defenses. The pink blade vanishes, but its work is done. Glowing shards of shattered divine armor rain from the heavens, followed by a relentless barrage of searing energy beams that tear through the god's form with brutal, thundering impacts. Taehyung rises from the rubble, a pillar of violet energy erupting behind him as his red eyes blaze with renewed determination. He grips his cursed swords, the golden hilts gleaming with ominous red gems, and drops into a low stance. He's far from finished. The colossal eye of Tusra Nose fills the sky, its pale blue iris dilated with cold, predatory amusement. A mocking giggle echoes from the unseen god, dripping with cruel contempt for the desperate ants below. A colossal, sinewy red tendril crashes through the ruined cityscape, aimed directly at Taehyung. He twists desperately to evade the overwhelming strike, but the massive appendage sweeps lower, throbbing with dark energy. Taehyung hovers in the devastated street, cursed swords drawn wide as the god's colossal red tendrils crash down around him like the coils of a titanic beast. The sheer scale of the attack dwarfs him completely. Tusra Nose isn't just fighting back, it's trying to smother him alive. A brutal beam of concentrated purple energy slams into White, catching her completely off guard and throwing her backward with devastating force. Taehyung can only stare upward, his face a mask of pure shock as the overwhelming power strikes his ally. Taehyung lands hard on the cracked rubble, planting his feet for another assault despite the exhaustion etched into every line of his body. Below him, Mary's face is tight with grim exasperation as she screams over the chaos, demanding to know where the hell the front line is. Taehyung's muscles tremble under the strain of his cursed swords as something vital shatters under the divine assault. A scream rips through the smoke-choked battlefield. White, her body broken from the blast, cries out in agony as a stunned comrade catches her. Taehyung gasps in raw agony as searing pain tears through his chest. He clutches the wound, the sound of ripping flesh echoing as his fingers dig into his own chest. The cursed swords are eating him alive. Mary's guttural scream tears through the air as dark tendrils find their mark, pinning her to the rubble. Taehyung's voice cuts through the chaos, harsh and fraying as he screams at her to get up and help him kill this thing. Searing pain flares in Taehyung's shoulder. His eyes widen with the horrifying realization that if the strike had hit his neck, he'd be dead. With raw urgency, he screams at Mary to dodge. Taehyung stands amidst the shattered, pink-hazed ruins, his cursed sword still humming in his grip as he surveys the devastation. Below him, Mary has crumpled to the broken asphalt, clutching her wounded shoulder as she looks up at the looming threat. A massive, sinewy red tendril erupts from the chaos with deafening force, striking Mary completely off guard. The monstrous limb wraps around her, lifting her from the ground as Taehyung's horrified scream of her name tears through the air, a warning that came a second too late. Taehyung slams back into the shattered street, his landing cracking the pavement and sending out a radial shockwave of violent violet energy. The sky itself seems to split with a furious crimson roar as he unleashes the full, lethal potential of the blades that are killing him. A man in gray reaches out in desperation as dark feathers scatter through the air. Beside him, Taehyung's hand clenches around a cursed dagger, his foot planting firmly on the cracked asphalt as he shouts a final, desperate command, "Mulligan!" Taehyung stares upward, his red eyes tight with grim determination as he locks onto his target. The colossal eye of Tusra Nose fills his vision, dark tendrils writhing at the edges as the god watches the one human foolish enough to fight back. Taehyung stands alone on the ruined crosswalk, a small figure facing down an impossible foe under a bruised, pink-hazed sky. A hollow voice echoes through the devastation, asking if there is any way to win. Just then, massive, bloody red wings unfurl at the edge of the battlefield. A blonde warrior's face drains of color, sweat beading on his jaw as pure fear shatters his composure. On a ruined rooftop, he and a bare-faced Taehyung stand back to back, gripping their cursed swords beneath the terrifying scale of colossal blood-red wings looming right behind them. The god's golden barrier remains intact, save for a single glowing X-shaped crack burning across its surface. A cold voice delivers the grim assessment that it will take a century to destroy it. The crushing realization follows: humanity will go extinct by then. The blonde warrior demands to know if there is truly no way to stop the god. Taehyung turns his head slightly, his hand tightening on his collar as he delivers a slow, heavy answer that feels like a death sentence. There isn't. Taehyung's voice cuts through the silence with flat, absolute finality. After everything they've sacrificed, the math is simple and the answer is absolute. There is no way to stop this, and humanity is going to die. The blonde warrior refuses to accept the death sentence, vowing to do whatever he can even in the face of extinction. Taehyung's expression hardens into cold focus as he turns toward the looming threat and tells him they need to move. The calm sky shatters as massive, blood-red wings unfurl from the backs of Taehyung and his companion, mirroring the god they fight. They have embraced the very power of the demon realm to face the impossible, stepping into the arena as monsters themselves. The colossal eye of Tuster Nose fills the sky, its void-like pupil watching them with absolute, soul-crushing focus. Below that impossible gaze, the two winged warriors stare upward, one roaring in primal terror, while the other grips his blade, sweating as they face the monster they've become. A sharp, authoritative cry shatters the tense standoff as reinforcements finally arrive. A group of awakeners, led by a determined blonde woman, marches into the ruined street with tight formations and grimly resolved expressions. The reinforcements arrive, but the fight doesn't wait for formalities. Taehyung and his companion are already in the thick of it, their golden blades flashing as they carve through the creeping, red-veined shadows spreading across the ruined city. The god's grotesque, veined eyeball pulses amidst the nest of writhing dark tendrils, spreading a corrupting energy across the sky. Then, the eye locks on, a glowing red crosshair blooming in its black pupil. The god stops watching and starts aiming. A deep, guttural rumble shakes the air as the god's colossal blood-red wing shifts, blotting out the sky. Below, the newly arrived awakeners stand shoulder to shoulder, holding their fragile human line as the very earth beneath them begins to crack and tremble. Taehyung's face emerges from the shadows, his sharp red eyes cutting sideways with a mix of fury and exhaustion. He mutters a venomous curse as blue streaks slash across the sky, his attention locking hard onto something moving impossibly fast. A blonde awakener hefts a massive glowing hammer and smashes it into a writhing mass of shadowy tendrils, sending blue energy crackling through the dark mass. Above her, Taehyung descends, his massive blood-red wings beating against the sky as he plummets toward the battlefield like a falling meteor. Taehyung's massive blood-red wings snap open as he rockets downward, screaming at the awakeners below to dodge. The fighters scramble as the shadow mass splits apart, red light erupting from the point of impact where Taehyung crashes straight into the heart of the nightmare. White's eyes go wide with shock as she witnesses the destruction unfolding before her. She turns, caught mid-motion, her mouth falling open in sheer terror as the battlefield chaos threatens to swallow everything in its path. The sky erupts in a blinding, chaotic burst of crimson energy, a swirling vortex of destructive force that obliterates the shadowy tendrils. It's the cataclysmic impact of Taehyung's dive, a shockwave of violence that catches the awakeners he warned directly in the blast radius. White's eyes flutter open, catching the light as she sees Taehyung standing there, his blood-red wings still smoldering behind him. She whispers his name in shock, only for his voice to cut through the silence, low and edged with fury, as he reminds her he told her to move. The fury drains from Taehyung's face, replaced by a quiet vulnerability as he cradles White against his chest. His massive blood-red wings fold inward, wrapping around both of them like a desperate shield to protect the one person he couldn't afford to lose. White's face is pale and streaked with tears as she gasps his name, her voice breaking in a desperate, fractured plea. Taehyung holds her tight, his smoldering wings curling inward to shield her as crimson feathers settle like snow around the ruins of Osaka. Taehyung's eyes burn with red-hot frustration as he holds White, his jaw clenched against the agony of his limitations. If he could just use his magic, he would crush Tuzuranos, like the insignificant deity it is. But he's forced to rely on cursed blades that are killing him. A sharp, dark flash blazes into existence against the bright blue sky, cutting through the clouds. Taehyung's profile sharpens, his red eye catching the movement as his expression shifts from exhaustion to cold, focused attention. A sharp metallic ring slices through the air and Taehyung's head snaps to attention with predatory focus. A dark ring pulses with crimson energy against the rubble as his blood-red wings surge upward, fanning out against the sky in a declaration of war. Taehyung's blood-red wings erupt outward in a massive spread, the crimson plumage filling the ruined sky. A low, knowing voice echoes through the air, declaring that their anticipated arrival has finally come. Taehyung's face is strained with grim focus as he declares that it has returned. Below him, a hand erupts from the rubble, fingers splayed against shattered concrete as ethereal green energy crackles and coils around it with unnatural life. White's blue eyes blow wide, her breath catching as shock and dawning horror register on her face. She gasps, asking what this is, only for a calm, knowing voice beside her to tell her she'll see in a bit. White clutches Taehyung's arm in desperate hope, just as the teleportation sequence flickers to life. Tealfire coils up his arms and chest, his blood-red wings flaring wide as a terrifying smile crosses his face. He finally has his weapon back, declaring his magic has returned. Terror ripples through the ruined city as massive, pulsing red tendrils slam through the urban wreckage like living battering rams. Civilians scramble in blind panic, a blond man leading a desperate sprint as they flee from the unstoppable monster's advance. The red tendrils tear through Osaka's streets with sickening force, whipping through the air and crushing buildings like paper. Silhouetted figures collapse beneath the writhing crimson mass, the city standing no chance against the raw, unstoppable destruction. Brutal close-quarters violence erupts as a dark-cloaked figure slams into an opponent, white energy exploding from the impact. The dark figure writhes with purple-black energy, demonic appendages tipped with glowing orange eyes spreading across the blood-red ground like a spider's legs. The colossal, bloodshot eye of the level 8 enemy dominates the sky, its blue iris pulsing with malevolent light as cracks spiderweb across the sclera. The full, horrifying scale is revealed as a massive horned shadow looms in the red sky, watching over a swarming army of glowing-eyed creatures that floods the streets. A man in a brown jacket stands frozen, completely surrounded by an ocean of black, wolf-like creatures with burning yellow eyes. But a silver-haired swordsman surges forward instead, his blade tearing through the horde in a trail of violent purple energy as the monsters keep coming. Mary and the survivors freeze mid-sprint. A demonic shadow eclipses the blood-red sky and a colossal clawed hand reaches down to crush them. Mary's eyes go glassy. They are out of time. A sword tip strikes the wet pavement, splashing water just as a colossal pale blue eye tears open in the heavens. Two figures stand in the quiet devastation, taking in the nightmare with unreadable focus. The level 8 god's eye splits wide, firing a beam of searing light that crowns the sky in pure malice. Below, White stands frozen as two beasts sink their claws deep into her shoulders, pinning her against the swarm. Blue-scaled hands with razor talons clamp onto her, hauling White backward as she gasps in agony. She is completely trapped, pinned between a ravenous swarm and the starving god above. The world erupts in tearing flame. Taehyung steps in, his massive blood-red wings flaring to shield White from the inferno. He pulls her close with one arm, teal magic blazing in his other hand, to incinerate the shadowy horrors. From the shadows, a massive blue-scaled beast observes them. Its glowing yellow eyes lock onto Taehyung with a reverent guttural growl, the creature suddenly realizing exactly what it's looking at. Taehyung remains utterly calm, his dark hair falling across his eyes. The sky tears open with the word teleportation, just as massive, red-striped tentacles shatter the pavement below. White whips her head around in fresh terror as the new horror drops right on top of her. A monstrous blue-furred wolf throws its head back, its form violently shifting into a sleek, lethal shape. The brutal transformation cracks through the air, final and unstoppable. A massive blue-scaled entity growls with predatory focus, its burning eyes fixed on the unseen. Beneath the crushing debris, a desperate hand reaches out for salvation before a dark-cloaked figure collapses limp onto the shattered ground. A massive shadowy form looms forward with a wet, slicing sound tearing through the air. White's eye blows wide in blank, shattered horror as she witnesses something truly irreversible happen right in front of her. Razor-sharp talons slice downward, slick and dark, closing around their target with a sickening wet grip. The deadly claws clamp shut, framing a wide-open eye, and the world goes dark. The level 8 enemy's veined eye blots out the sky, cracking like aged porcelain as an ocean of wolf-like horrors presses forward. Taehyung stands firm amidst the swarm, his blood-red wings flaring as a barrier against the encroaching annihilation. The colossal eye delivers a chilling observation, acknowledging Taehyung's strength with a horizontal slit pupil. Taehyung just smirks, teal energy swirling at his neck, treating the level 8 god like an amusing game. Teal energy spirals around Taehyung's outstretched hand, crackling with building force. Below, a blue-furred wolf stands watch, completely unaware of the apocalyptic storm forming in the Demon Lord's palm. The blue-furred horrors lunge forward in a synchronized, hungry roar. Taehyung doesn't flinch. He stands his ground, blood-red wings flared and teal energy pooling at his feet, utterly calm in the eye of the storm. A calm smirk crosses Taehyung's face as a system directive burns in the dark, locking onto the enemy. His focus narrows to a single point of annihilation, ignoring everything else. Taehyung's blood-red wings erupt in a violent surge of dark energy, each feather crackling with power. He stands alone in the shattered street, every muscle coiled to strike the colossal god above. The word eclipse burns red in the air as a vortex of absolute darkness erupts from Taehyung. It's a void of pure annihilation, aimed straight at the level 8 enemy's heart. The violent chaos dissolves into an overwhelming, serene light, revealing a brilliant blue sky and a perfect sun. Taehyung's silhouette stands against the heavenly glow, looking up into the blinding brightness. A massive, dark limb slams down with crushing force, shattering the ruined street. A desperate hand claws upward from the wreckage, only to be met by the snarling, fire-lit maw of a monstrous creature. Dark, clawed limbs slash downward, with a sickening tear, wreaking havoc as a figure collapses. White's face is a mask of frozen horror, her eye reflecting the brutal, irreversible slaughter as a dark shape looms over everything. Taehyung's eclipse plunges into the swarm, dissolving the monsters into billowing golden flames. But from the heart of the fiery disintegration, a colossal blue-scaled beast roars, dark-clawed hands erupting from the destruction and refusing to be burned away. The blue-scaled beast dissolves into golden particles, its roar cut short as the divine light purges the entire swarm. Taehyung lands softly amidst the ash, his red wings folding as he stands over the smoldering dust with a bored expression. A deep rumbling growl shakes the ground, followed by a tense vibration in the air. A dark figure emerges from the skeletal remains of a building, unleashing a deafening roar that paints the sky in a menacing red glow. The level 8 enemy's cracked eye fixes on Taehyung, projecting a chilling question. Where does a creature without a mouth roar from? Taehyung's wings flare in defiance. The silence of the god underscores one terrifying fact: the eclipse didn't finish the job. Taehyung stands with his hands casually shoved in his pockets, his red wings unfurled like a demon's mantle. He smirks at the colossal monstrosity, his red eyes holding a quiet, predatory amusement, as if the god just told him a joke. Teal energy crackles around Taehyung's legs as dark tendrils stretch toward him from the rubble. He stands completely unfazed, his voice booming a cold, final command: die. The cracked ground violently splits apart as massive blue characters scream with physical force. The earth shatters under the weight of his power, becoming the literal ground zero of his annihilating will. The level 8 enemy's eye lays Taehyung bare under a divine, annihilating gaze. Taehyung freezes, his red wings twitching as black tendrils erupt from his own body. The gaze of madness is rewriting his will to resist. The serene light shatters as a perfect black void erupts into the sky, crowned by a burning corona of red and orange flame. The level 8 god answers the attack by creating a miniature, annihilating sun to swallow everything in its path. The dark sky glitters with scattered blue and red motes drifting through an endless void. The battlefield vanishes, replaced by a desolate, snow-capped peak rising against the cold blue darkness. Taehyung stands with his back to the void, his massive blood-red wings casting jagged shadows on the reflective surface below. A burst of blue and purple energy erupts upward from beneath him, the world itself responding to his presence. Civilians plummet into a swirling vortex of violent purple and blue energy, their desperate hands clawing at nothing. The level 8 enemy's counter isn't just aimed at Taehyung, it's dragging everyone nearby into a dimensional rift. White's voice cracks with desperate urgency as she screams for her master, scanning the devastation with wide, terrified eyes. Her search is shattered by a new, alarmed shout from below, calling out Park Seon's name. A blonde woman whips around in a panic, calling out Seon's name as she reaches toward her. Her face twists into raw confusion, breathless with the sheer impossibility of reality rewriting itself around them. An older blonde woman cuts through the gloom, sharply stating their destination is 100 kilometers west. A younger girl in a dark uniform listens with wide, attentive eyes as the woman turns, ready to move. A man cries out in raw disbelief at the impossible 100-kilometer distance. But that panic is instantly eclipsed by a deeper terror. A voice asks where Taehyung is, realizing their last line of defense is simply gone. The blonde woman stands beside a hooded man, her expression tightening into grim resolve as they stare ahead. Seon's blonde head is visible below, her attention fixed upward on the dire situation as they prepare to move. A bead of sweat rolls down White's face as she whispers a fragile, terrifying hope that Taehyung is still there. The hope is immediately undercut by a brown-haired man's wide-eyed terror, asking if he's actually dead. An urgent shout pierces the chaos, directed at a brown-haired man named Brad, who looks up in sharp, startled attention. Sion's face twists in shot from below, crying out in raw disbelief at whatever he just revealed. A blond man observes with grim, calculating focus while White stares in raw terror, her hope evaporating. A massive, flat-bladed sword suddenly slices through the air with a sharp ring, making a survivor scream in horror. The blond man's blue eyes are cold and utterly devoid of panic, fixed with grim focus on the chaos. He cuts through the din with a low, sharp warning, "Fall in line, or be left behind." The blond man closes his eyes, letting out a sharp sigh as he offers a stark apology to Sion. His demeanor instantly shifts to cold command, ordering them to move on without another glance. A voice cuts through the silence with desperate hope, asking if Tae-hing is still there. The blond man confirms he saw him, his gaze drifting down to reveal the stark, red-feathered wings of Tae-hing's fallen form below. Tae-hyung's massive red wings spread wide over White as his calm voice explains he used magic to heal himself and sent them away. White delivers the final blow to their terror, stating softly that Master told them to meet again shortly. Sion's face freezes, her mouth slightly agape and eyes wide with raw, disbelieving shock. The sheer weight of the revelation about Tae-hyung crashes into her all at once. White states with quiet conviction that Master always refers to himself as a mage. Behind her, Tae-hyung hovers with a brilliant teal arc of raw magic blazing across the sky, prompting a blond man to skeptically question the title. Mary cuts through the exhaustion, firmly stating she wants to head back to the nightmare they just escaped. Sion twists in pure disbelief at the suicidal suggestion, but Mary's eyes blaze with desperate resolve, asking if there's a way. A calm, decisive voice cuts through the stunned silence, stating that helicopters are coming and he plans to use them. The man in the gray hoodie looks ahead with grim focus, his eyes fixed on a plan already taking shape. White demands to go with them to confirm how Master is doing, her expression hard with barely contained urgency. Gao Lin stands silently with his hands in his pockets, his calculating stillness speaking volumes as neither of them is willing to leave Tae-hyung behind. Sion's knees hit the rubble hard, her head bowing so low it nearly scrapes the stone. "Please!" she screams, her voice shattering as her entire body trembles with sheer desperation. She is completely at their mercy, but she's begging the wrong people. Gao Lin stares into the void, his mind racing. An awakener from such a small country wielding that kind of power? Forming a connection with a monster like that might just be the smartest move he could make. His eyes narrow with cold calculation. All right, prepare for departure. The debate is dead, and they are marching right back into the nightmare. Gao Lin freezes mid-step as the realization hits him like a physical blow. That isn't just an ability, that is magic. Below him, Mary and White stand in absolute silence, their desperation forged into a deadly, unbreakable resolve. Miles away, a dark eclipse hangs in a bruised purple sky, flaring with otherworldly energy. Below it, a hooded figure in a deep red cloak stands alone among shattered buildings, staring up at the anomaly in dead silence. "Benjamin contacted us." A calm voice cuts through the gloom. "He mentioned that things in China have gone a bit awry." The news drops like a lead weight, adding a massive, ominous layer to their desperate survival. "Gone awry, huh?" The hooded figure echoes, absorbing the sheer scale of the chaos. Behind him, Mary stands in tense silence, realizing this crisis is far from contained. "No matter. We've achieved our original objective anyway," the hooded figure declares. "What's crucial now is finding out who used that grand magic." He delivers a chilling assessment. It's someone wielding power his specially created beings couldn't possibly withstand. They think they're hunting a rogue mage, but they have no idea what's actually hunting them. His eyes burn with cold intensity. "Contact Benjamin immediately. It's no longer just about survival, it's a desperate, non-negotiable hunt to expose the mage behind the magic." "Understood. What should we do about Gandharva?" a voice asks over the comms. The question hangs in the air, immediately met with a sharp, pressing follow-up. "Is there an issue?" Static crackles with pure fury as an older man snarls about the S-rank awakener from Korea. "That monster killed Dylan and bolted to China, completely wasting his time." Mary listens in tense silence, realizing the board just got exponentially more dangerous. "Tell him to wait," the hooded figure commands, his red eyes glinting with dangerous intelligence. He deduces the situation in China has likely resolved, and if the Korean awakener is still alive, he'll return soon. Until then, Gandharva has permission to act at his own discretion. "Understood." Mary turns and walks away, her red coat receding into the devastation. But just as the silence settles, a new voice cuts in from below, pushing back against his iron will. "Don't mess up his plans now," the hooded figure dismisses, shutting down the descent instantly. We need to move more swiftly. A distant, brilliant light flares in the sky, signaling that the time for hesitation is dead. Taehyung stands alone on a desolate, rocky slope, his posture tense and focused. He looks down, silently assessing the absolute ruins stretching out before him. His voice cuts through the silent wasteland like a blade. "Show yourself." He scans the desolate ground, his gaze snapping upward to the bright, clear sky. A tall, sharp-suited figure stands with casual dominance over a kneeling, armored form. Glowing arcane symbols flicker in the air around him, the lingering proof of an effortless, absolute subjugation. The horned figure sits amidst the rubble, his glowing eyes burning with eerie light. "I greet the king," he echoes with solemn authority, a deep, resonant thrum sealing his absolute submission. "You may raise your head." The horned figure obeys, lifting his dark, armored form to reveal glowing white eyes. A faint tremor runs through him, an involuntary sound of pure terror escaping as he fully beholds his king. Taehyung stands amid the devastation, hands tucked casually into his pockets. "Where are the others?" he asks, his voice cutting clean through the silence. He isn't desperate, he's bored, radiating the quiet certainty that his missing stragglers will answer to him next. The dark-armored subordinate bows his head. "Your Majesty, after using the grand dimensional transfer magic, the others were nowhere to be seen. The powerful spell has scattered the group, leaving only this one follower to track the king down in the ruins." Taehyung processes the report with a single cold syllable. "I see. Open the gate." The horned figure remains on one knee, beginning his obedience before the sentence even finishes. The air thrums with raw, gathering power as the subordinate prepares to obey. A deep, resonant vibration fills the space, echoing not in sound, but in the very fabric of magic. He doesn't speak, his compliance is absolute, silently tearing the gate open. The broken ground splits open, tearing a massive swirling vortex of deep blue energy through the earth. The portal spirals outward, pulsing with raw dimensional force. Taehyung doesn't flinch, simply watching reality bend at his feet. The gate is open, and Taehyung is already gone. He doesn't just step through, he explodes forward, a blur of overwhelming force hurtling straight into the swirling dimensional energy. Purple energy streaks tear across the void like a warp-speed tunnel. Taehyung hurtles through the dimensional corridor at impossible velocity, the sound of reality splitting apart trailing behind him. Vertical streaks of purple energy are the last echoes of the corridor as Taehyung bursts out of the gate. His momentum carries him forward in a blinding flash, erupting in a burst of raw light and force. The violent arrival shatters the silence, golden light bursting across the room like a thunderclap. He lands in a lavish, empty throne room, the high-backed red chair sitting beneath a glittering chandelier in stark contrast to the chaotic entry. Taehyung walks forward, his sharp suit immaculate amidst the opulence. He turns and lowers himself into the high-backed chair with a relaxed, deliberate motion, a faint, knowing smirk touching his lips. The Demon Lord is finally home. But an empty throne room is never empty for long. And that's where this part leaves us. If you want to see whether Taehyung's story really ends here, hit subscribe and check back for the next part.